Hey guys, well, I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. This was a impromptu stream that I decided to do today. I haven't even had my coffee yet. I haven't even had my breakfast yet. We're going to be doing this all together. But the reason that I decided to kind of go live with this impromptu stream is because I got to tell you, okay, so those of you who know and watch my content regularly, that I don't actually really watch other shows and other creators at all anymore. I used to a while ago, but about a year and a half ago, I just stopped watching YouTube pretty much entirely, with the exception of there's a few people I like. I watch religiously Karen Ann Harlow's Pink Flame of Liberty for libertarian content and drama and stuff like that. But really, most of what I watch I do not watch other creators almost at all. And so I really don't pay attention to Tim Pool's show at all, except when I'm occasionally mentioned in a super chat challenging Lydia to a charity boxing match. But I have to tell you, I yesterday, after this show with Daryl Davis, I basically got a metric ton of requests saying, Karlyn, can you please react to what just happened? And I said, why? And they said, because it was crazy. And I was like, okay. And normally on Saturdays, if I'm doing a stream, I do a Sassy Saturday stream later in the day, like around 6 o'clock or so. Sadly, on this particular Saturday, I can't do that because I have an event for Jeremy Kauffman for Senate tonight. That's at, by the way, if you're in New Hampshire, come out to Strange Brew in Manchester around 6 o'clock tonight. Jeremy Kauffman will be there. We're having an awesome event. Anyway, so I wasn't going to be able to do Sassy Saturday tonight. So I thought, you know what? Why not just, I slept in this morning, was laying in bed until, around 11:30, 11:45-ish. And I was like, you know what? Why not take my breakfast and coffee with a little bit of, I guess, Tim Pool and Daryl Davis arguing about critical race theory. I really have absolutely no idea what I'm walking into with this. I don't have any idea. So I'll say this, generally speaking, my perception of Daryl Davis is good. My perception of Daryl Davis is that he is a guy who has done the unthankful task of, being a black man who has worked with an awful lot of men who were in the KKK to get them out of that lifestyle and out of that situation and to attempt to find some common ground, right? So I have a really good perception of Daryl Davis. I hear that people think that he went off the rails and maybe said some things they considered to be, I'll use quotes, racist in this. I have no idea what was said, so I guess I will be reacting to it in real time. My perception of Tim Pool is, so I think that Tim Pool is an extremely smart person. His work ethic, I think, is unparalleled. I've always thought that the way Tim Pool puts information together it's almost rather beautiful in the way that he's able to process and put together information from a variety of sources to come to conclusions, which many times are pretty accurate. Sometimes I think he goes a little bit off the rails, but I have a lot of respect for him. In regards to Tim's on critical race theory, I'm going to be honest, I have not always been impressed with what I've seen in regards to Tim discussing critical race theory with Vosh and Charlie Kirk. I think he did it a little bit better the second time than I saw the first time, but I also didn't really watch those shows from start to finish because I think that Vosh is ridiculous and Vosh should not be platformed at all by anyone. And now I'll start the Karlyn's calling for Vosh's deplatforming. No, I'm not. I think Vosh should be able to have his YouTube channel and his Twitch channel, whatever the fuck else he does. I don't really care. I just think that Vosh weaponizes his audience to attack people. And I don't think that's cool. And so I do have a very big problem with Vosh being introduced to this larger audience. But you know what? Tim makes the editorial decisions for his show and he decided to do it. And he got on the show and didn't know what he was talking about with critical race theory when he did it. So I really, and that was a while ago though. That was like a year and a half ago. That was a long time ago. So I don't know, maybe he's learned some stuff since then. I hope he has. I think that Tim has a big enough audience that he should be responsible when he's talking about these things. Um, And to be quite frank, I feel like so I do not expect conservative influencers at all to be responsible in how they're communicating to their audience. So I fully expect people like Charlie Kirk not to know what the F they're talking about when it comes to critical race theory because they're grossly irresponsible in how they communicate with their audience. I fully expect people at the Daily Wire to not be responsible when they're talking about critical race theory and communicating it with their audience. I fully expect that. The reason I expect more from Tim is because I think so much more of his ability and his intellect than I do of the average conservative influencer. So if I'm hard on Tim Pool for how he's talking about critical race theory, it's because I actually have significantly higher expectations for him based on how smart I believe he is. All right, we got a couple super chats coming in. Of course, guys, super chats do support the channel, so I appreciate them. Dragon Water says, Happy Saturday. Thank you, Dragon Water. Emphasize says, if you don't watch anyone else, how do you reconcile? I'm not sure what you're asking, Emphasize. How do I reconcile what? Like, I don't, there's no need for me to watch anyone else. Like, when I'm making judgments about things, I am looking at news sources myself. I look at mostly primary sources. I put information together for myself and I make a conclusion. I don't particularly have a desire to watch anyone else or interact with anyone else or any of these things. So I guess I don't have to. Anyway, so before we get into it, guys, I do just want to remind you, since I have you all here and you're a captive audience, I have a book coming out next week. It is called Actively Unwoke: The Ultimate Guide for Fighting Back. See, I still haven't had my coffee yet. The Ultimate Guide for Fighting Back Against Woke Insanity in Your Life. It is a book that is filled with actionable information and strategies for fighting back against the woke insanity that we are all inundated with every single day. The first part of the book, I am breaking down the woke ideology in a way that is just plain English, really, really simple to understand. And then part of the reason I'm doing this is because so many people have been lied to about what this is. It's actually much worse than what you've been told it is. Except by people by James Lindsay, who is fucking awesome. So I break down the woke ideology in plain English, and then I get into actionable case studies and strategies. I talk about Gabrielle Clark in the book and her lawsuit with schools in Nevada. I talk about the work that Chris Rufo has done. I talk about the work Jody Shaw has done. I talk about all the different whistleblowers that have popped up out of the woodworks, real people that have fought back against woke insanity just by using their voice and speaking up because it was the right thing to do. I end the book with ways that you can take care of yourself when you're fighting back against the woke because it is an extremely stressful thing to do. I also talk about what to do if you get canceled, which I have a little bit of experience with. This book goes on sale. Well, I guess you can actually already get the Kindle version. The hardcover is actually starting to get mailed out. I keep hearing because apparently launch dates mean nothing. So, but you can order your hardcover and Kindle version on Amazon right now. You can also head over to activelyunwoke.com if you would like some non-Amazon options. There will be an audiobook at some point in the future, probably. That's a whole other story for a whole other day. All right, guys, let's dig into it now. I know that I'm going to have some new viewers on the channel watching today. If you are in the chat on my channel, I have one rule about the chat. Don't be a dick. You can express your opinions. You can disagree with me. But the minute that you insult me or you starting drama in my chat or you start being disruptive is the minute that you're going to get banned. Just don't be a dick. That is the only rule that I have. I have not had coffee yet today, so I might be a little bit more persnickety than usual, but I will be drinking coffee as we work our way through this stream. But do not be a dick, and we'll get along just fine. The minute that nuclear, I've got my eye on you. Nuclear knows the rules, though. All right, guys, let's dig into it and get started. Let me just get this all set up. Do, 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 do. And please make sure you mount that like button for me as we're getting started. Listen, my intention with this reaction is I don't really feel I just want to see what happened. And I'm just going to give you my thoughts, and I'm going to try to give a nuanced and reasonable perspective about what I'm seeing. I'm not trying to own anyone. I'm not trying to destroy anyone. I don't really care about doing that. So we're just, I guess, going to see how this goes. And I have at the ready my giant cup of coffee that I will be consuming. I also have a muffin that I will be eating. Oh, yes, Brian, this is correct. If you send in a $100 super chat, then you are allowed to be a dick. You have bought your dick pass for the entire stream with a 100 or more, if you're inclined, dollar super chat. All right, let's get started.
It's been a crazy week. We have this story out of Maryland and Portland where pregnancy centers, they're centers for helping women who are pregnant and are, having doubts or having issues or need support. Because they're pro-life, they've been ransacked by pro-abortion activists. And man, the violence and the anger, it keeps getting worse. I feel like people are becoming more absolute.
I told you so. I don't like to say I told you so, but I told you this was going to happen.
So we'll definitely talk about that. Another element of the story is that these activists, a different group of activists or a similar activist group, published the addresses of several Supreme Court justices because they're upset about the leaked draft on Roe v. Wade. Jen Psaki essentially said Joe Biden doesn't care, that they don't care that it's happening. And also, Joe Biden has no position on abortion restrictions. Abortion restrictions. So you've got now, I think Tim Ryan in Ohio said abortion, no restrictions, none of our business. And that's where it is. Everything's becoming more and more extreme. Now, my view of it is the right seems to be exactly where they've been. They've always wanted to ban abortion. The left now wants to remove restrictions, which is more to the left of, or more extreme than they've ever been. So we'll talk about that too. And then
okay, I just want to pause here and say, so I know that not everyone watching right now is like a regular viewer on my channel, but I have been railing all week on the fact that I think that the Roe decision is going to colossally backfire on the right in ways that they have not even begun to process yet. And I have to say, everything that Tim said just supports my point that I think that this is going to colossally backfire on the right. I think it's going to create more abortion, not less. And if you have questions about that, I've done streams basically all week on this. There are a whole bunch of clips on my channel. You can check that out. But I'm being proven right in like real fucking time.
That in line with that, and the other big news from the past week or so, Elon Musk, Tesla has announced they will cover the costs of women to travel out of state to get abortions, which somehow involves Elon Musk again. So we're going to talk about censorship. Elon Musk, there's a story where apparently they're claiming Trump told Elon Musk to buy Twitter. He's denying it. So we're going to talk about this censorship. Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course, won her court case. She is eligible to run for re-election. But I think the big conversation tonight is going to be hyperpolarization.
I'm a lot louder. Okay, I'll turn mine down.
Ways to connect with people. And joining us to discuss this, and probably one of the foremost experts, is
I will turn my volume down. Let me know if that's better.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I am fantastic. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I think you just did. My name is Daryl Davis. I'm a 64-year-old musician, author, and lecturer, and race reconciliator.
Right on. You are, I guess you're the big story around you, aside from the fact that you're a famous jazz musician, is that you actually de-radicalize Klan members.
Well, I inspire them to de-radicalize themselves. I have been the impetus. A lot of the media says, black blues musician or black rock and roll musician converts X number of Klansmen. No, I never converted anybody.
Guys, is the volume better now?
I have been the impetus.
Is that better for everyone?
200 to convert themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, this is going to be fascinating because we talk about polarization a lot, and we actually did an event with you, which was really interesting. And it's going to be fun to talk about and kind of understand what happened there. But also we have Bill Ottman of Minds, who can also talk about, you guys are working together on censorship and how censorship is making things worse.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm Bill. I'm a founder of Minds, minds.com. Check it out. Daryl and I just recently published a paper together with multiple PhDs and a bunch of researchers called The Censorship Effect, talking about the blowback of censorship, how to facilitate dialogue. And, that's what we need more of.
Right on.
Cool. Thank you guys.
Yeah, man, I'm down to talk about censorship because I do believe a little bit of censorship is necessary. Otherwise, you have a wild zoo of people eating each other. So you've got to create a little bit of adjustment.
I mean, I suppose I shouldn't be surprised that Ian is wearing some tie-dye fleece. Whatever. You know what? He's living his best life. Savrit says, I watched this last night. There is some projection going back and forth that of their own perceptions, which some are placebo racism too. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the impression that I got from the just brief snippets that I heard about this, Savrits, but I guess we'll see how it goes.
Just censorial atmosphere, in my opinion. Maybe we can talk about that later.
Well, just to add to that point, real quick, some content is illegal.
Of course.
Child abuse, it's got to be censored, and that means someone goes in, has to remove it, right?
Dude, Daryl. I just want to point out that you rocked with Chuck Berry. I didn't know for 37. You said 37.
32 years.
32 years. Made keys with Chuck. I mean, he's credited with like inventing rock and roll. Right?
He did invent rock.
So you kind of invented rock and roll.
No, I came long after. Johnny Johnson was his original piano player. I was born in 1958, so right at the peak of rock and roll.
That is hot. Thanks for coming, brother. All right. You guys want to get started?
Well, we got Lydia.
Yeah, I am technically here as well. I just wanted to say, too, we were late getting up to the studio today because all of us who are supposed to do the sound check were so enthralled by what Daryl was telling us. So I'm really looking forward to this evening's conversation. I know the chat likes to laugh at me for being excited about my guests, but I'm excited about this conversation for sure.
It's going to be great. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com, become a member if you would like to help support our work. Not only
I would kick Lydia's ass in a boxing match.
Keeping our journalists
I maintain
employed,
my
we
position.
Just brought on another really
I would
amazing,
kick Lydia's ass in a
talented
boxing
personality
match
to contribute to our columns. I suppose now that she has articles up, it's Josie, the redheaded libertarian on Twitter, is going to be writing articles and commentary for us. She's absolutely fantastic, so I'm thrilled that she was able to come and work with us. And it's thanks to you guys as members that make all that possible. So we'll do more. As a member, you'll get access to exclusive segments from Timcast IRL Monday through Thursday at 8 p.m. We had a really fascinating members-only episode last night where I got really mad about our own website because I take this stuff seriously. I fact-checked our own site, called it out, and because transparency is important as well. When we make mistakes, I will freak out and call it out because I think I owe you guys, if you're members, we got to make sure we are better than everybody else when it comes to getting the facts straight. So don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Let's get started with this first story. I'm going to start here, actually, and not necessarily jump in with the violent photos, but this is part of the same story.
This has nothing to do with anything, but I just want to say, as someone who has not actually watched this show in like a really long time, he's got Tim has got branding down, man. Good for him. He's gotten his shit together. The presentation is solid. Good for him.
House refuses to condemn activist group who posted home addresses of Supreme Court justices. We have another story out of Maryland and Portland, and there are these pregnancy centers where activists went and smashed up the windows and damaged them, ransacked them. These are places where they try and talk to women who are pregnant. They're called crisis pregnancy centers. Well, activists who are associated with the pro-abortion side of things, I guess, just hate them. And so they went and vandalized and tagged them up. I think seeing stuff like this reach the highest levels, like the White House, where we learned that Supreme Court justices had their addresses posted. We've already seen people lose their lives. It shows that we're reaching this very extreme level of hyperpolarization. So, Daryl, I don't know if you've been following any of the current news about the Roe v. Wade stuff. I mean, things have been kind of crazy over the past couple of years, or, Bill, if you've been following this stuff. But I think we just get started with this. The modern hyperpolarization, and I'm curious what your thoughts are with, far left, as they would call it, or far right, people fighting in the streets, or how about just this right here, pro-abortion groups smashing up windows and vandalizing buildings?
Well, that's been going on for quite some time. About probably 30 years ago, there was an anti-abortion person who was going up and down the East Coast, bombing abortion clinics. And he got arrested, I think, down in Florida. Another one murdered an abortion doctor in Florida, Dr. Gunn. The guy who bombed the clinics lived right in Maryland. And I remember I was in bed one night at my girlfriend's house, and there was thunder and lightning, and she lived right up against the woods. And we thought a tree had been hit by lightning, because the whole ground rocked, the things fell off the walls, everything, 4 o'clock in the morning. And we jumped up out of bed, and then, still thunder and lightning and raining outside. So at 7:30 that morning, things had died down. We came outside. All the neighbors were out. We're all looking in the woods for this fallen tree. And this was on a Sunday morning, about 4 a.m. It wasn't discovered until Monday in Annapolis, Maryland, that guy had bombed the abortion clinic on the other side of the woods.
Wow. How far away from your house was it?
From her house. It was, less than a quarter mile.
That's wild.
Yeah.
It feels like there are political issues that are kind of impossible in a sense. Like when we talk with people who are pro-life, because we have, Seamus on the show periodically, and we have a lot of conservatives, and they're staunchly pro-life. Their view of this is, for one, most reasonable people, most people, and particularly like all reasonable people, think bombing an abortion clinic is wrong and killing people is wrong. But you have moral questions that arise. If the pro-life side genuinely believes that babies are being murdered, then they're trying to stop murder. Now, how do you solve for a problem like that if you can't convince someone that it's wrong to bomb a clinic? You know what I mean? Like if they believe in their heart of hearts that they're saving babies, I don't know if you can convince them not to commit these acts.
Well, I think, that if they're convinced that you're murdering babies.
I just want to say, I obviously have lots of thoughts on the whole abortion debate. I'm just not going to comment. I don't feel the need to insert my thoughts here because I've just done so much commentary on it already this week. So I'm just going to let this play. I'm going to kind of let it listen. If I feel strongly about something, I'm going to make a point. But like, I have articulated my thoughts that I think that this is a colossal, I think that this is bad for the right. I don't think it's bad for the left. I think it's bad for the right. And I've been extremely clear about that. So I'm just going to let this play without, getting too fired up about it.
And perhaps they're separating babies from adults. So in their minds, I'm not agreeing with them. I'm saying
Savage has a super chat. Remember, the greater the spiritual polarization, the greater the union will be, which can be positive or negative. By the way, so do I join locals or something? Yes, please join locals. You guys can join my locals. Here, I'll put the ticker up. You can join locals at kb.locals.com. And if you want to support the work I'm doing, you can do that. So at kb.locals.com/support. Everyone should join my locals. My locals is the best. We are the only sane community on the internet. There are all sorts of exclusive perks for joining. I don't know. I just didn't feel like shilling. This particular morning, Savage. So thank you for shilling for me. Guys, please mount that like button for me if you haven't already.
But in their minds, they're murdering the people who are murdering babies.
Right.
So therefore, they're preventing the murder of babies.
Or if just destroying.
That's their justification.
Right. It's like, this is where things are getting interesting because we talked about this yesterday. Louisiana has advanced a bill that will make abortion homicide.
Yes.
That will legally list
$5 a month or $50 a year. You too can join my cult.
This is a political line.
The cult of Karlyntology.
As hard as a line can be. Because
we're very serious in my locals.
That means
deeply
serious questions about whether or not someone is justified in using force to stop an abortion doctor from committing an abortion. If the act of abortion is homicide, then there's a legal justification to prevent that from happening. That's if it's codified. Regardless of the law, though, there are people who already believe that to be the case.
I thought the conversation you guys had down in Nashville, sort of theorizing about future technology that could potentially enable a fetus to live at a much earlier age. Like that is a fascinating philosophical conversation that I think people just need to be willing to have because that is what it puts it into context. It makes it less emotional.
Well, the fascinating thing is we had this conversation where I basically asked if there was a way.
Yes, Dragon Water, there are knit nights in my locals. In fact, next weekend, next Saturday, we will be having a bitchcraft at 3 p.m. next Saturday, where we will be getting together on a Zoom call and bitching or assorted other crafts. Obviously, knitting is the far most superior of all crafts, but you can do crochet, you can do drawing, you can do painting, you can clean your gun, you can play a video game. I don't really care. You can come hang out with us for bitchcraft next week on Saturday.
That from the moment of conception, a baby could be taken from the womb and put into an artificial womb, a machine that would allow it to live. Should we then ban abortion to the extent that the baby is killed and only allow procedures to terminate a pregnancy if the baby is allowed to survive? The issue with that, I suppose, is everyone on the right basically says like, oh, okay, that's an interesting question. Maybe separating from the mother might be bad. But I've asked a handful of people on the left and they say, meh, who cares? No, I don't know. Why not? Whatever. So not to get into a technological discussion, my question, I guess, is what I'm trying to get into is, are there issues?
Are we Karlyn Knights? Oh God, I totally misread that.
Just ideas that
Dragon Water. See, this is what happens when I don't have coffee. I totally misread that. Are we Karlynites? I thought it said like knit nights. Oh my God. No. Yeah, no. What did we say? Yes, we came up with a name. We're Karmrads because we watched Democratic Socialists yesterday on my other channel. So we're Karmrads in the Karlyntology cult. I guess. I don't know. You guys are basically building a cult around me, and I'm just kind of like sitting back and allowing you to do whatever you want to do. People are saying that they're going to design a flag. I don't know. Maybe we'll have t-shirts or something. I don't know.
We're never going to be able to rectify amongst each
I believe so. I mean, we can come close, but there are always going to be issues that will crop up. And then, you have what you just proposed there as a possible viable solution. But when you have things that are that extreme on the right, that extreme on the left, you're not going to change those people necessarily. But what you can do is uplift the middle. When you have that extreme polarization, then what you want to do is strengthen the middle, pull the middle up. And in doing so, you will pull some of those people on the left and some of those people on the right into the middle as you do that. Sort of
Good morning.
Yeah.
Saturday morning.
Yeah, I think have you heard the idea that socialism is able to exist within libertarianism?
No,
libertarianism
wrong.
is not able to exist within socialism.
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty powerful idea. I mean, I don't necessarily know one way.
Okay, I suppose that is kind of true in that libertarians don't really care if you want to be a socialist and go off and create your own socialist community, probably in the state of Vermont, you can do that. Just don't force anyone else to live in your little socialist community. So I guess that is true that socialism can exist within libertarianism, but libertarianism can't exist within socialism. I guess that's true. I just don't believe, the reason I said no wrong is that I do not believe in this idea of a libertarian socialist, like whatever Vosh says he is. Like that's not a real thing. I'm sorry. If you are a socialist, you are not a libertarian. But if you want to go off and do your own socialist thing, again, in the state of Vermont, where I will be building a wall on the New Hampshire border to keep Vermonters out once I'm elected governor, like you can go do that and I don't really care. Just as long as you don't force me to go live in your little socialist environment of Vermont, then that's fine with me.
The other, if it's true, but it seems like a true fact. What do you guys think about that idea?
In a fully libertarian system, you have the right to create a socialized system with no problems. In a fully socialized system, you've got a lot of checks and balances you'd have to get through to create a system where you're like, I don't want to be a part of that. Unfortunately, you have to because you're already part of it. That's the idea of socialism.
No, absolutely. So one of the issues now in the whole Roe v. Wade debate, I tweeted about this earlier. We had Tim Ryan and we had Obama. I'm sorry, not Obama. We had Jen Psaki talking about Biden. I don't know why I said Obama. We had Jen Psaki talking about Biden refusing to condemn late-term abortions. She was asked, I think it was by Ducey over at Fox News, whether Biden was in favor of restrictions on abortions. And she just, hee-hawed around the answer and was like, it's between a woman and a doctor. Tim Ryan said the same thing. So for me, I've always been kind of in the center left position. It used to be the left liberal position in this country of like in the first trimester, maybe into the second and third trimester abortion are kind of just not okay. And it's supposed to be safe, legal, and rare. But now you have one side saying unrestricted up to 9 months. The woman is about to go into labor. The baby can be aborted. And then you have the right saying ban outright in every circumstance. So how do you find that middle? I mean, how do you,
there is
most
no middle.
People are now finding themselves like there's no middle. There's very few people left.
I think part of it, depends upon the circumstances as to why a particular woman wants an abortion. I'm not saying, I don't believe that all abortions should be illegal. I don't believe that all abortions should happen either. But I think it depends upon the circumstances. If a woman has been raped by a stranger, if a woman has been raped by her father, or it's a young girl, something like that, these are mitigating circumstances. It's already bad enough. A rape is bad enough that woman is going to remember that the rest of her life. Yeah. It's going to traumatize her. It's going to traumatize her even more if it's somebody within her own family, her father. Okay, and if that child is produced, she's going to be confronted with that child every day as a reminder. Is that something that we want? That might be a decision for her to make, and not for us to make.
I suppose the issue is, we've talked to a great deal this past. I think one way to kind of elevate the conversation is, what do you do when factions that have just moved away from each other?
Well, that's what Roe v. Wade is sort of bringing up in the cultural conversation, is like, should local areas make that decision? I'm not,
It's almost like that's the solution then to repeal Roe v. Wade. Or to overturn it.
Yeah, it's just crazy how controversial it is and how emotional it is. But we have to have the conversation.
Here's what I think. I think that we mentioned this briefly the other day. If you look at the history of the United States and personhood, that we have a tendency to move towards granting more personhood rights than rescinding them. That in almost every circumstance, we are continually expanding who gets access to what we deem to be civil rights. It wasn't always the case in the United States with racism, that people weren't granted full civil rights, with women not being able to vote. I actually think that based on the trends of this country, we're going to move towards completely banning abortion outright. That will come to a point where people agree that they're going to say, we deem an unborn baby to be a human life, guaranteed constitutional protections.
What was it like before Roe v. Wade? Daryl, do you remember much about it?
Yes, but vaguely.
Was it like a big problem? Was abortion a hot topic? There wasn't social
media.
It
was always a hot topic, and women were getting abortions in secret, doing it themselves with a coat hanger or having somebody else do it with a coat hanger. I remember friends of mine even did that, and then there were those who were very vocal about it. They would come out and say, yeah, I had an abortion. What about it? Things like that. But it was always very controversial. And there were a ton of abortion clinics where you could go and get it done legally, and there were always, not almost say always, but a number of times there would be protests out in front of the clinics.
It was particularly more violent back then, wasn't it?
In some cases, yeah. I mentioned the guy, I forgot now what his name was Michael something, who went up and down the East Coast bombing the abortion clinics. That part was violent, and killing doctors who performed abortions. As in Dr. Gunn, but not everything was violent. There were a lot of loud vocal protests in front of some of these clinics.
Let me ask you about your view of how things have been going today. I mean, there's been a lot in the past several years with the riots throughout the country over George Floyd. I'm curious as to your perspective. You're older than us, and so you certainly have seen way more. Does it feel worse today in terms of the political divide than it has in the past?
I wouldn't say that it really feels worse. There's always been a divide, but people today are more outspoken and less hidden about their views. There seems to be a more emboldening, if you will, today. Like, you see people who used to wear hoods and masks come out there with their burning crosses, and now they come out in their regular clothes and express the same views. So they don't feel like, they have to hide so much anymore because their job.
Who is coming out in their regular clothes and expressing the views that the KKK would under, like, I mean, I guess like there, I mean, it's certainly there are people who are doing that, but like not really all that many. Huh, that's weird. Brian says, "Where's Pete? Where's Pete the Cult? Karlyn's tattoo needs more funding." Karlyn's tattoo is fully funded for the moment, Brian. But I appreciate the super chat. Thank you for that.
Of being threatened or whatever.
When did you? So we can just get started with your story for people who aren't familiar. Do you want to? So just in terms of the context, I want to talk about modern politics and all this stuff and where we are now. But I think your history might lend some understanding to other people. How did you? You're famous for being the. How did you describe it? You inspired people to de-radicalize the Klan's members.
Okay, so to give you a little bit of background on myself, as I said, I'm 64 years old, but I grew up as the child of parents in the U.S. Foreign Service. So I grew up as an American Embassy brat. I was born in '58. I began traveling around the world at the age of 3 in 1961. And how it works is you get assigned to a country for 2 years. You come back here to the States. You're here for a few months, maybe a year, and then you're assigned to another country abroad. So my first exposure to school was overseas. I did kindergarten, first grade, third grade, fifth grade, seventh grade. And all the schools I went to overseas, this is back in the 1960s. My classmates were from Nigeria, Japan, Russia, Czechoslovakia, Germany, France, Italy, Sweden. Anybody who had an embassy in those particular countries, all of their kids went to the same school. So that became my baseline as to what school was supposed to be about. I had all these colors. You guys here are too young to remember black and white TV, but you know about it. I remember black and white TV. And I remember when color TV came in, it was like, wow, it's like a whole new dimension, right? You know, you never wanted to see black and white TV again. You saw something in living color. Okay, well, every time I would come back home from overseas, back to my own country, the United States, it was like going from color TV to black and white, you know, because we did not have that amount of diversity in this country, in our schools. When I would come back, I would either be in all black schools or black and white schools, meaning the still segregated or the newly integrated. Just because Brown versus the Board of Education desegregated schools in 1954, it didn't mean that integration took place overnight. It took years and years.
But even in many cases, still, it's not.
Exactly. In fact, the Prince Edward County, Virginia, shut down. They refused to integrate schools, the public schools. They shut down all public schools in Prince Edward County, Virginia, not for 5 days, not for 5 weeks, not for 5 months, for 5 years. Years. Okay? Imagine how much education is lost in 5 years. When you go down there today, people my age, a lot of them are basically functional illiterates because they missed 5 years of their education. If they were in 3rd grade, they didn't go back to school until they were in 8th grade. That kind of thing. So you're dealing with that kind of thing. So look at kids today who have to go to school over Zoom over the last 2 years because of the pandemic. Some kids did better than others, but a lot of them did not do so well over Zoom because they weren't getting that personal one-on-one education.
Well, as an aside too, I don't want to derail too much. I think we're going to start seeing something similar because schools have started adopting ideological praxis in their teachings. Mm-hmm. So instead of telling a kid, 2 + 2 = 4, they're saying 2 + 2 = 5. Well,
that's not exactly what they're saying.
In what context are we talking?
That's not what they're saying.
So you actually had a viral trend where teachers were saying 2 + 2 = 5.
It's not what they're saying.
Context. It was that 2.4 + 2.4 equals 4.8, which is right.
No, that's not what teachers are saying. I'm sorry. This is not actually happening in classrooms. Now, what is happening in classrooms is that they are teaching anti-racist math. And on this channel, I have a stream. I probably have several streams at this point, but I have one specific stream where if you search anti-racist math on my channel, you will find that it was like a 3-hour stream or something where I actually walk through every page of a anti-racist math teacher training textbook that teaches teachers how to teach anti-racist math. The teachers are not teaching 2 + 2 = 5. They might be doing like a TikTok video or something spouting off about that bullshit, but that's not what's actually going on in schools. What's actually going on in schools is that so part of anti-racist math is that it tells teachers that they can't correct students when they have the wrong answers, that students have to lead the discussion. And then they say sometimes students might be using the math of the ancestors, and the math of the ancestors might be different than the math that you learn or the math that you talk about or things like that. So it's not that they're teaching 2 + 2 = 5. That is not correct. That's not to say they aren't doing a metric ton of like other crazy stuff, because it is crazy. It's just actually significantly more crazy than 2 + 2 = 5.
Rounded up to 5. So if you round down 2.4, I don't know what kind of simplicity mess they were intending, but
it's an issue of tribalism, and it's part of the polarization. The idea is that the people on the right started saying 2 + 2 = 4, and sooner or later the woke people are going to say it's not. And then a point was being made by, left tribal people where they're like 2 + 2 could be 5. Here's how. And then they say
being taught in classes.
2.4 rounds down to 2. But 2.4 + 2.4
Twitter
is
is not the
4.8,
same as what's going on in schools.
Therefore, 2 + 2 = 5. And then most people who are reasonable are just like 2.4 + 2.4 is 4.8. End of story. If you want to make some weird equation that omits information for the sake of making your strange argument, I guess. But they're teaching kids this.
No, they're not.
You also have a lot of the critical race theory,
Wrong.
ideology stuff in schools where the kids are getting more of this kind of social, emotional learning as opposed to actually learning stuff.
Okay, so
Hang on.
let's define.
Critical race theory and social emotional learning are not the same thing. They are in the same family, but they are not the same thing. Critical race theory is an ideology that was started in academia in the 1970s. It says racism exists everywhere, in every person, in everything, in every interaction. And the job of the critical race theorist is to explore how racism occurs in every circumstance. Social emotional learning is effectively, for our purposes here, teachers practicing psychology without a license. Anytime you see stuff about gender ideology in schools, that's going to be social emotional learning. Anytime you see stuff about basically feelings, like if they're asking students, how do you feel like a boy today or a girl today, that's going to be social emotional learning. It is extremely important that we distinguish between those two things, because what happens when we don't distinguish between the two, and we talk about critical race theory and social emotional learning as though they're the same thing, is what happens when a state passes an anti-CRT bill like they have in my state of New Hampshire, and a whole bunch of other states, they have these things. What happens when a state passes an anti-CRT bill and parents believe that critical race theory and social emotional learning are the same thing? What happens is that parents assume that that anti-CRT bill that just got passed also eliminated social emotional learning, which is not true. Is not true. Social emotional learning is currently going on in every public school in the country right now, and because they have to teach it in order to get they had to agree to teach social emotional learning in order to get funding during the pandemic for COVID related stuff, essentially is what happened. Savret says it will become illegal to discriminate against someone who is Black in any way after the final social cataclysm, cementing barriers of perception now. Thank you, Savrets.
Two terms that you use, just
Yeah.
so that everybody's on the same page, not just us here, but everybody out here listening to us. So let's define the term woke. Your definition of the term woke and your definition of the term critical race theory.
Woke is typically a reference to like a left tribal identifier. So it has a reference to critical race theory, critical gender theory. It encompasses these different schools of thought. We got to define all these things. Critical race theory is
thank you, Dragon Water.
Appreciate it. Oh man, it gets tough to actually. Is that a stink bug? Critical race.
It is not hard to define critical race theory. Critical race theory is an ideology that started in the 1970s in academia that says racism exists everywhere, in every person, in everything, in every interaction. And the job of the critical race theorist is to explore how, not if, how racism occurs in every single circumstance, because racism is always assumed to have occurred. Or we could go to James Lindsay's definition, which is critical race theory is the belief that racism is the fundamental organizing principle of society. It is a religious belief. It is not grounded in reality at all. That is the definition of critical race theory. Why Tim has yet to learn the definition of critical race theory, either my definition or James Lindsay's definition, or to come up with some other definition after the amount of time he has spent talking about critical race theory, is a little bit mind-boggling to me. He's smarter than this. All he needs to do is memorize a sentence. It's not that hard. It's been given to him over and over and over again. He has got to learn. Tim, you have got to learn the definition of critical race theory. It's not hard. You should be able to say it on a dime. I'm sorry. This is one of my biggest criticisms of him. He has got to learn the fucking definition. He can make up a definition for all I care about. I don't really care, but he has got to learn a definition.
Race theory is critical theory in a racial context. Critical theory
that doesn't mean
is
anything, Tim.
The political theory of the oppressed versus the oppressors.
He's right
With
about
Karl
that.
Marx back in the day, his critical theory was that the wealthy oppress the poor. The proletariat is oppressed, the bourgeoisie oppresses. Kimberly Crenshaw wrote a book called Critical Race Theory, which says this doesn't take into context the racial component of the United States. Therefore, critical race theory is white people are dominant and they oppress all people of color. So critical race theory has several different subsequent schools of thought, like intersectionality, that a Black woman experiences different discrimination than a Black man because there's also sexism plus racism. But the sexism plus racism is a different category than the sexism that a white woman would experience. So this is another school of thought within the realm of critical race theory.
Don't make excuses for him about why he has yet to learn the definition of critical race theory. I just gave you two high-level definitions of critical race theory that I can spout on a dime when I haven't even had coffee, that are a 1,000-foot view to cover all of the important elements. Tim Pool could have damn well learned this by now, and he has not. And he's smarter than this. I am giving him credit by saying he damn well should have learned this by now, and he has not. Emphasize says, whose sentence is correct? I mean, everything that Tim is saying is technically correct. The problem is that he's not actually, like, it's like he's talking about the development of the ideology. He's not actually saying what it is. He's talking about the development of it.
Praxis is the implementation of these ideas into standardized learning. An example would be, if I were to give you a math problem, I would say a train leaves Pittsburgh traveling at 100 miles an hour. A train leaves Cincinnati traveling at 75 miles an hour. They're 300 miles apart. How long? Blah, blah, blah. Critical race praxis gives math problems to kids, like in Florida.
Hate that they're using this
Jerome
language.
was stopped by the police 17 times in the past month. Harold was stopped 3 times. What percentage are black people stopped by police more than white people? So what they're doing is, it is a math question, but they're injecting an ideology, a praxis.
That's not what
of critical race theory.
anti-racist math
Jerome
is.
is black.
That's
Well,
not what
they-
anti-racist
they do
math
these things
is.
that are overtly racist.
Mhm.
Absolutely. But it'll show a little black character and it'll show a little white character, and then they'll do this problem. And so we've started seeing the emergence of a lot of that. What I see from this is one viral video that went around is a kid who didn't understand pronouns, because this is on the wokeness includes what is called critical gender theory, which is boys and girls don't exist. Doctors guess gender.
I'm gonna need to get Victor to
And
bring me
so
some more
there's
coffee.
a video of a little boy asking, he's doing a pronoun worksheet. And it says something like, Juan gets on the swing.
Savage, you're giving us so many deep thoughts this morning. You must bend your thoughts to revolve around the sun, the light of matter being put above the true highest light of spirit, the polarities. Thank you, Savrats.
Which pronoun would you use? Janet uses jump ropes. Which pronouns would you use? And he put they for all of them. And his mom goes, why did you put they for all of them? And he says, how am I supposed to know if they're boys or girls? And she said, didn't you notice their names? And he was like, but you said there's no boys or girls in names. And so now the kids don't understand basic English
That's
grammar
social emotional
because
learning.
of the praxis being injected.
That's social emotional
our,
learning. That's
in
not
the current
critical race
generation, the
theory.
current
That's
learning
social
systems.
emotional learning.
So, not to derail too much from what you were saying, because now we're getting particularly verbose. When you talk about these schools, the first thing I think of is, at this point, schools have become so corrupt in many ways. I think regardless of whether we have them or not, people are going to become functionally illiterate. Basically, when you mentioned functional illiterates, I thought of the kid who didn't know how to use pronouns and everything that comprises that problem we're experiencing.
Assuming that he doesn't know that Janet is a female name, or now it's androgynous, right? Where Janet could be a male name or a female name. Like, for example, my name is Daryl. For the longest time, I thought Daryl was always a male name until an actress came along named Daryl Hannah.
That's right. Well, so that defines wokeness.
Well, I mean, in fun fact, Karlyn is actually usually a male name. It's an Irish male name. Emphasize, Tim is defining CRT to add the lexicon as well. Then no, Tim is not even defining CRTs. Tim has provided no coherent definition of CRT. He's mixed the two up. Tim has obviously not advanced his learning since the initial debate with Vosh on like what, and I think it's sad because again, these are not hard concepts to learn. Tim has had Chris Rufo on his show. Tim has had James Lindsay on his show. Like, he could learn this. I don't know why he's not. But no, what he did was not a definition. I'm sorry. Like, I wish it was. I genuinely wish he'd gotten better at defining this.
Was there another term?
No, that was wokeness and a critical race theory.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there we go.
I think the impossible thing about it is
Neither
that
of which were
everything is blended
defined.
together. And so every issue becomes with intersectionality. The reality is that if you're talking about race, race and gender are different conversations, but yeah, they're the same conversation. And so it makes it really hard to talk about anything because
Okay, Cosmic D is asking, with anti-racist math, so would black people build bridges differently? What is their intention here? No, that's not what it is. What anti-racist math is, and again, if you want to know exactly what they're teaching in regards to anti-racist math, which no one has yet to touch on yet in this video, I have a video on this channel of me reviewing an anti-racist math teacher training textbook that will show you exactly and explicitly what anti-racist math is. What they're trying to do within anti-racist math is, first off, they're trying to attack the idea that there is any objective truth when it comes to math. They're saying there are multiple different versions of math, which are not true. They're telling teachers that they're not allowed to correct students, which of course then students aren't learning anything. They're telling students that they should be guiding the course of instruction or the learning of math, which also doesn't teach anything. Ultimately, what they're trying to do is integrate Marxist concepts into math class. So they're doing things, they're basically using math to and we've seen this directly in actually the Philadelphia School District. We watched a video from the Philadelphia School District on my second channel, youtube.com/activelyunwoke, talking explicitly about how they're integrating Marxist ideology into math class with the director of math for the Philadelphia School District, teaching about how they're using math class to teach things about tree equity and why some sections of Philadelphia have trees and others don't. It is the most ridiculous thing in the world, but no one in this video yet has effectively talked about these subjects, which is really my point. So with anti-racist math, you've got to see, let's back up. The fundamental thing that everyone needs to understand, and I'm saying this because I know I have a different audience than I usually have, the biggest thing that people need to understand about the woke left, what they're doing with everything, whether it be critical race theory or social emotional learning or anything, the woke left is trying to destabilize our system. That is their goal. That is the ultimate goal. And so by not teaching kids real math, what they're doing is they are making kids, functionally, well, I was going to say functionally illiterate when it comes to math, but really, when we're looking at reading, writing, and math in schools, about 37% of kids graduate from high school knowing how to read at a 12th grade level. Less than 1/3 of kids graduate from high school being able to write at a high school level or being able to do math at a high school level. We are creating a fundamentally dumbed down society, and we are doing it purely because the woke left wants to destabilize the system. That's what's really going on, and that's not what they're talking about. Emphasize, if Tim isn't defining CRT, what does he need to get better at defining? I emphasize, I've literally already explained it. I've literally already given the definition of CRT twice on this stream. Tim should either use my definition of CRT or he should use James Lindsay's definition of CRT. I'm sure he could also get a definition of CRT from Chris Rufo if he wants to. There are many different people who have advanced a definition of CRT that is clear, that is concise, that is easy to memorize. And this is part of the problem with fighting back against the woke left. It's because no one is actually taking the time to understand what these definitions are. And then when someone asks, well, what is critical race theory? It's like you get a lot of words that don't actually mean anything. And he needs to pick a definition. He doesn't want to use my definition, fine. I don't really care that much. But he needs to pick a definition. One definition that he sticks with and memorizes and can say on the drop of a dime.
Because woke blends all of that together. Yeah. And it's hard to define because it also means different things to different people.
I think I can define wokeness as it's like a faux awakening. People feel like they're having an awakening right now, but it's an awakening to like what they're being told is real.
Tim doesn't have to do anything. Tim does not have to do anything. But if Tim Pool cannot define critical race theory, and apparently no one on this show is capable of defining critical race theory, I'm going to call out that not a single one of them are defining critical race theory correctly when there are ample definitions available of critical race theory. There are ample definitions. They just are choosing not to use them. And if they choose not to use them, I'm going to say that. And you guys can have all the feelings about me questioning your dear leader all you want. I mean, he's not your dear leader for a lot of you, but that's just the way it's going to be. I'm sorry. He should be able to have memorized a definition by now. Savrit says critical theory equals pre-programmed thoughts, avenues, and prepackaged barriers of perception meant to be immovable and to project them into the world and onto others. Savrit, I actually like that definition as well. That's a little esoteric, I think, for a lot of people, but I do actually agree with that definition as well. I would be fine if Tim said that as a definition. I mean, okay, it'd be a little bit confusing for some people, but it is actually an accurate definition.
what they're told, rather
Well-
than a real like central awakening of like having like a reality shift or a, you know what I mean? It's not like an internal struggling. I mean, maybe it is for them. They're probably having a similar feeling to someone that's actually had a spiritual awakening on a hill meditating for 40 days, but it's like a false awakening, and people are
My
making fun of it,
definition
calling
is
it,
correct.
"Oh,
Thank you,
they're woke.
emphasize.
They're so awake now."
Have you ever heard the term red pilled?
Red billed?
Red pilled.
No.
It's the inverse of woke, but they basically mean the same thing.
Okay.
If you are red pilled, it's
No.
a reference to the Matrix. You get the blue pill, the red pill. The red pill wakes you up from the illusion of reality. Woke means you've awoken to what's really going on. And so they mean effectively the same thing, a great realization of the lies you've been told. Based on my understanding and I think a fair research, red pilled is a bit trolly and more tongue-in-cheek. Woke is zealous and ideological. But I also think the woke stuff is manipulative and wrong for the most part. So, we often have people on here and I talk.
Well, okay. So for example, when I was in high school, we were taught in the textbooks, I still got my textbooks, that Robert Perry, Admiral Perry, discovered the North Pole. Not true. Matthew Henson discovered the North Pole. Admiral Perry was a white guy. Matthew Henson was a black guy. Matthew Henson was Admiral Perry's best friend, and they went on the exploration together. Okay, Perry got sick and told Henson to go on. Henson went on and discovered the North Pole. All right.
Interesting.
When they got back, Perry told everybody it was Henson. They said, no, we can't give him the credit. And they gave the credit to Admiral Perry. All right. Admiral Perry was buried in Arlington Cemetery. Matthew Henson was buried in a pauper's grave. In the 1980s, when Ronald Reagan was in office as president, there was a bill put forth. Coretta Scott King and some other people came to him. And he passed this bill. Now in the textbooks, it says Matthew Henson discovered the North Pole. Now, I knew that all along because my parents told me, even though it wasn't in the textbook. All right. They exhumed Matthew Henson from the pauper's grave, and now he's buried next to his best friend, Admiral Perry, in Arlington Cemetery.
I mean, you're the one who's
When I was
paying
in
me
school,
emphasize, so I guess I'm winning on this one.
We did not learn that this country had internment camps for Japanese Americans. I didn't learn that until I was in college, and I was incredulous. I was like, "What? Are you kidding me? No way!" And I asked my parents, and they're like, "Yeah."
I learned that in school.
Why wasn't it in our textbooks? Because it was a dark blemish on our history. It was a shameful thing that we did in this country. So did I become woke when I was in college?
But that's not wokeness.
That's not what woke is.
So what is
Woke,
that?
so an example of wokeness is saying things like all white people are racist. All white people are not racist. But that's wokeness is not a reference to understanding how history works. So I'll give you an example. When I was a little kid, I was told in school Christopher Columbus discovered America, which is just not true.
Right.
There were already people here.
But did you know that?
Yes, because I had a mom who told me there were already people here.
Right.
And I tell the story all the time. She said, actually, Leif Erikson came to the North American continent 1,000 years before Christopher Columbus. But honey, there were already people there, weren't there? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, did they teach you there were already people there? And I was like, yes. And she goes, didn't they discover this continent? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, then why did they tell me that? And she said,
Well, it actually is emphasized. You're the one who's super chatting me to tell me off. So if you want to keep paying me to tell me off, I guess, go ahead. But I don't agree with what you're saying. I'm sorry. Jetty's getting Yankee with it says, when Tim can't give a quick, succinct definition, it derails the conversation and opens him up to being inconsistent. You lose people doing that. They can't follow the path to conclude why it's bad. Yeah, I mean, this is exactly right. It's like, again, this is, part of the reason that I give the exact same definition of critical race theory every single time I give it is because people require that consistency in order to be able to understand an incredibly complex topic. And I think that, this is one of the main topics that I talk about. And so I have a responsibility to make sure I'm defining it accurately. And I think that Tim has a big enough audience and has had enough discussions on critical race theory at this point where, to be blunt, he really has no excuse to not be able to define critical race theory. Every single person that cares about defeating the woke left should be able to, at the drop of a hat, define critical race theory, because you will be asked to define it. You will be asked to define it over and over and over again. Most of the time when you're being asked to define it, it's people trying to catch you off guard so that they're setting you up to look like an idiot if you can't define it. This is just something you have to memorize. James Lindsay's definition of critical race theory is one sentence long: the belief that racism is the fundamental organizing principle of society. If you don't like that definition, then find another definition. I give you a definition in my book. I've said it, critical race theory is an ideology that started in 1970s in academia that says racism exists everywhere, in every person, in everything, in every interaction. And the job of the critical race theorist is to explore how racism occurs in any given circumstance. That can literally be tweeted. It is a tweet length definition. I know I just said it really fast because I've said it 4 or 5 times, but people have just got to start memorizing this stuff, man. I'm sorry. It's just the way it goes. Brian, thank you for the super chat. Tim has a problem getting leftists on his show, so it probably doesn't worry about defining terms. He's just using the word to use words. He's better than this. He's smarter than this.
Said they think you're stupid, but they'll tell you the truth in college. And that was like a real anti-authoritarian moment for me as a kid.
So was that an awakening or a woke?
So wokeness doesn't refer to learning the truth. Wokeness is typically, I mean, depending on who you're talking to.
Right.
If you're talking to people who are trying to avoid the overt ideologies of either, extremists, any extremist faction, wokeness is typically a pejorative term to reference someone who says you're white, so you're racist. That's considered to be woke. Now, some people might use woke.
Well,
in a more
that's one
lax
definition
manner,
of woke.
Perhaps towards the angle you're describing it, but based on this show and how we approach things,
my definition of woke is that it is an authoritarian ideology that wants to tell people what to think and what to say and how to act and all of these things. Oh, my wonderful husband is here with more coffee. Victor, can you also get me creamer? Yep. Thank you, Victor. Look at how good I have it with my husband bringing me a whole pot of coffee on a Saturday morning. But no, my definition of woke is that it's an authoritarian ideology. And woke can exist on the left and on the right. It is about power. It is about control. It is about forcing people to see and act in a way that is in accordance with your worldview. This is not a battle of left versus right. This is not a battle of Democrat versus Republican. It is a battle of authoritarianism versus libertarianism.
People who watch would probably say they're anti-woke, but they completely agree with what you've said, or would completely agree with the idea that Native Americans already were here.
Right.
The proper way to describe it is Christopher Columbus discovered the Bahamas for Europeans.
Thank you, Victor.
As part of the European culture, he was the first to kind of bring that information to them. But again, Leif Erikson, also of European descent, discovered it. It didn't really make the rounds in the European continent, and other people were already here who had discovered the land.
Typically, people do not use woke as like a badge. People.
That's wrong. Yes, they do.
Critical woke people don't.
No, they don't. They don't.
Woke people love calling themselves woke. What are you talking about? Woke people do use it as a badge. That's just not true. I mean, it's starting to change. I will say that. Thank you, Victor. I'm good. It looks good. Thank you. No, woke people absolutely do use the word woke as a badge, but not as much as they used to. I think there's been a lot of shift in it in the past couple of years with all the backlash against critical race theory. But I still see many people on the left saying that they're woke and they use it as a positive thing. Dragonwater says we must all be grateful to Victor. That's true. And Jenny's getting inky with it. Says for Victor's awesomeness. Excellent. Victor will be having beer later, courtesy of you guys and your super chats. I appreciate it.
And so people who are like pro critical race theory wouldn't necessarily call themselves that. And I think, look, most people are pro uncensored history. I think that is a common thing that we need to get on the table.
No, I would have to disagree.
Well, maybe I don't have a statistic in front of me, but I think we all hear
Daryl's having some feelings there.
Uncensored history.
Having some feelings.
It gets complicated because critical race theory. Some people are trying to say that critical race theory is the truth of history. That's some people's perspective. Other people would agree with teaching what you just said was omitted.
Right.
But that's not the same as critical race theory.
So take a look at this image. This is part of a book called Not My Idea, in which grade school children are shown the whiteness contract with a white hand reaching out and a devil tail and goat's feet.
Okay, just so, because again, I'm saying this because I know I have a lot of people watching right now that don't usually watch my channel. The word whiteness has nothing to do with the color of your skin. It has to do with who owns the power structure. When the woke use the term whiteness, they're not using it in reference to someone who looks like me. It's not about my skin color. It is a reference to who owns the power structure. And the person who owns the power structure might not have white skin. This is why Larry Elder was considered a white supremacist when he was running for governor in California. This is why the Washington Post ran a headline in January of 2020, January of 2021, that said multiracial whiteness, because whiteness does not refer to the color of your skin. It refers to who owns the power structure, because the goal of critical race theory has nothing to do with race. It only has to do with power, gaining more power, consolidating that power. Because Tim is correct when he says this is a Marxist ideology of like power, the oppressors and the oppressed. And that is what the goal is. H Engineer says, woke means you have come to some realization about the world, that your realization makes you morally superior to everyone who hasn't, and that moral superiority gives you authority over others. I think I agree with parts of your definition there. I absolutely agree with you that it does give people a sense of moral superiority, that they have some sort of secret knowledge that has been attained. And I absolutely agree with you that they are using it to try to gain authority, again, power over others. Anytime that you have anything to do with critical theory at all, you always have to remind yourself, it is not about race, it is not about gender, it is not about queer, it is not about trans, it is not about any of those things. It is only about the woke left trying to use these concepts in order to keep us divided, keep us fighting each other, so that they can gain more political power, so that they can destabilize the system and usher in their little Marxist utopia. That is all it is about. You always have to view absolutely everything from that lens. The woke left is trying to gain more power so they can destabilize the system, so they can attack capitalism, so they can usher in their little Marxist utopia. That is what they're trying to do in every single circumstance, including with this book that we're about to learn about.
I think this is wrong, to teach children that white people are inherently evil, inherently oppressors, or inherently racist, that all white people are racist. And this is what woke typically means when we criticize it. I think we should tell people that some people are good, some people are bad, and race is not relevant to whether or not someone will be a good or bad person. You've got to find out who they are within. Would you agree?
I would agree 100% with that.
Well, the problem is, this is what they're teaching kids in school. Dude, we can see your pointy tail. Contract binding you to whiteness. You get stolen land, stolen riches, special favors. Whiteness gets to mess endlessly with the lives of your friends, neighbors, loved ones, and fellow humans of color. Sign below for the purpose of profit. Land, riches, and favors may be revoked at any time for any reason. Showing a white hand reaching out with a whiteness contract and devil's tail, I think, is particularly dangerous to be teaching children.
Okay, but now, so that's called critical race theory by your definition, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
but there are also
correct.
people who are calling critical race theory teaching the transparent history.
That is not what
Okay?
critical race theory is.
People banning books. Not talking about.
These are the books being banned.
No, that is not correct. Both sides are now banning books. And just again, for people who don't watch my channel often, I want to make it very clear. I am against banning books at all. I think the minute that you ban one book, you are on a slippery slope to banning all sorts of other books. We've seen the left try to ban books. The left is banning books like To Kill a Mockingbird, which I think is ridiculous. The right is trying to ban these types of books that we just saw Tim display on the screen. And again, while I understand it, and while I do not want these types of things taught in public schools, I think that the correct answer to this is to change culture, and to change culture in a way that it would make it unthinkable to even teach these things in the schools. I do not believe that banning books is the right thing to do, regardless of how awful some of these things are. So no, Daryl is incorrect when he says that there are multiple definitions of critical race theory. Daryl obviously does not Daryl didn't even really know what the definition of woke was. He didn't know what the definition of red pilled is. So I have to believe that, like, he's probably okay. I'm going to start to be more generous, as I think we're starting to get into the meat of why people wanted me to watch this. Daryl comes from a certain generation. The grievances that Daryl had in his upbringing and his dare I say, lived experience in the United States, there's probably some validity to the perspectives that he has. What Daryl has not figured out yet is that what is going on the left now with woke culture is not the same thing that he experienced growing up, which, to be honest, is really, really similar to a lot of parents who do not understand that what is being taught in public schools today has no relevance to what was taught in public schools when they were growing up. So this might just be a lack of exposure to the subject matter that is about to start creating some conflict, is what my guess is in this situation.
Not the only books being banned, right? They're talking about banning books on Rosa Parks' biography.
That's
out of
true.
Schools.
He's
not
correct.
Talking about slavery, not talking about,
and they shouldn't be doing that.
Oppression and things like that. They're calling that critical race theory as well.
But hold on.
Daryl is correct about that, and this is a problem that I have directly attacked, specifically Moms of Liberty, for perpetrating, because this all comes from Moms of Liberty. That is real, guys. The Moms from Liberty did try to get a book about not Rosa Parks. He's wrong about Ruby Bridges. That was the one it was. They did try to get that banned out of schools in Tennessee. That absolutely did happen, and I have taken Moms to Liberty for task for doing that. I think that they need to stop it. It is a slippery slope, and it's like the right is again backlashing against the left, and the right is turning into the monster they're fighting. So that's why I do not support banning books at all in any way. If you want to change what's being taught in the schools, you have to change the culture. That is the only way.
The challenge with this is I'm not familiar with a book on Rosa Parks being banned. And in the experience that we've all had here, and probably most of our listeners,
then Tim should watch my channel in the video that I did where I explicitly called out Moms of Liberty for going on CNN. This was not an undercover thing. Moms for Liberty in Tennessee specifically went on CNN and talked about trying to get the book about Ruby Bridges banned in schools in Tennessee. It was on CNN. And they never backed down from it. They're still trying to do this crap. And it's wrong, and it hurts the fight against the woke left. The right, this is an example of the right getting in the way and screwing something up because they're focused on doing the wrong things.
When recently Florida banned math books, the left came
well,
out,
you're
woke
right.
people and
He
said,
probably doesn't have time to watch my streams, but if he's not going to watch my streams and not going to inform himself on these issues, then I'm going to call him out for it. This was on CNN. It wasn't like it wasn't like a covert operation.
See, now they're banning math. The issue was they were banning
Not
the math
banning
I
math.
explained to you, where the math problem
That's
isn't
not
a math
correct.
question. It says how many people are racist, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
So Florida said, we don't want ideological praxis in our math books. We want math problems.
Mm-hmm.
So when we hear that they're banning books, it's a question of which books, why? Well, what we did was we had several experts on who brought the books to us and showed us this is the easiest and most notable example, saying whiteness is the devil.
Do you remember about 4 years ago, the state of Texas changed all the public school books? They removed the word slave and slavery and changed it to immigrant worker.
That would be bad. At the same time, the New York Times...
That is bad, and the anti-CRT bill in Texas was bad too. Savard says, if I debriefed you fully on the true nature of the situational gravity being created today, you'll be more illuminated than those at the highest level. Oh, I already feel like I am more illuminated than those at the highest level, Savards, but thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Emphasize says, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Liberals, Libertarians, all are golems, and I'm not talking about the Pokemon. All right, Emphasize, more power to you. Yes. Moms for Liberty tried to ban a book about Ruby Bridges in schools in Tennessee. I covered it on this channel. You guys can look it up.
Removed the word slave from their game Wordle because it was offensive. So I would consider all of that to be in the same line of authoritarian censorship we don't want.
Okay, so there was a big protest, and I think it was Macmillan and Press or whatever that did all the Texas school books, had to recall all those books and rewrite them, and now it's enslaved people as opposed to slaves.
So there was an effort. I think they did this. Didn't they remove master and slave from some coding language?
They did.
Yeah,
That's
on
true.
Git.
Right.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So
That is
I
true.
oppose exactly what you described, and what no matter where it's coming from, typically what we're seeing today, I don't think woke people. Well, actually, I take that back. They literally banned the word slave from Git. GitHub, and the New York Times. They have this game called Wordle, where it's every day you try to guess a 5-letter word. You literally can't guess the word slave because it's offensive. I think that's bad. I don't think books should be. I don't think this book should be banned from schools. I think this book should be banned from curriculum, in which the teacher says, "Child, learn the truth. Whiteness is the devil." I think a teacher could say to a more age-appropriate group, "Take a look at this book and what these people believe about this idea, and approach it."
But there are people who also consider critical race theory showing pictures of the 4 Black people trying to integrate the Woolworths food counter and having stuff poured on their heads. The girl walking, Ruby Bridges, walking into the school with the white people yelling behind her and all that kind of stuff.
But all of that,
they consider that critical race theory, and they don't want their kids seeing that.
But so the issue is, these things can exist within the ideology of critical race theory, in the context of critical race theory is rooted in the Marxist philosophy of oppressed and oppressor. I do not agree with that. I think that's wrong. And I think when you put a racial tone on that, it's extremely dangerous, because what they've started doing at Dearborn University in Dearborn,
Michigan.
in Michigan, they created a POC and non-POC digital cafe, meaning white people only, people of color only. In Seattle, they created diversity, equity, inclusion events for POC only, non-POC only, and that's under critical race theory. And they justified exactly how you explained it. They show racism from the past we all think is wrong, and then say, see, shouldn't Black people have their own private spaces separate from white people? And I say, if people in a private context, within a certain reason, I guess it's fine if you have a private club. In public accommodations like universities and libraries, I don't think they should be allowed to force gender segregation. I'm sorry, racial segregation. They're the ones who actually want to get rid of gender segregation.
Well, just a few years ago, maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even less, a high school in Mississippi, the principal had 2 separate proms, a Black prom and a white prom. And you were not allowed to have any integrated couples at these.
And
proms.
was this a critical race theorist who had implemented it?
I don't know. I mean,
I'd be
isn't it? They kind of over.
I have literally documented woke on the right. If you are confused about this, you need to go to my Substack, karlyn.substack.com, look up an article that says the backlash against critical race theory is here. You want woke on the right? They're the Groypers. They're Cassandra Fairbanks' fans. They're Nick Fuentes' fans. And they get into the alt-right shit gets into exactly the same. They are exactly the same as the woke left, except they're on the right. I have literally documented this. So that is incorrect. And I don't recognize you, Roger, which tells me you don't hang around my channel that much, where I've covered this on numerous occasions. Yeah, and I think Dragonwater's point, we can also make the argument that the religious right is now becoming woke. They absolutely are. 100%. Been documented on numerous occasions. You can be woke on the left and you can be woke on the right. This is not a right versus left battle. This is about authoritarianism versus libertarianism.
Overlap, because it wouldn't be surprising if there are cases in the country where there's actual old school segregation, but you sort of have new school segregation and old school segregation coming together. So Daryl, what is your response to the new?
Take a look at this, right? I'm willing to bet the story you heard was actually about someone who was woke creating Black only spaces, like this story we have from Atlanta.
No, it wasn't a Black person creating the segregated proms.
No, they're white liberals who do these things. There are white progressive women who are overwhelmingly the woke, who are creating racially segregated spaces.
True.
It's against the law.
True.
Atlanta
Mike Harlow
filed
is
complaint
woke.
over alleged segregation of classrooms. This wasn't a white right-wing racist who created this. It was a progressive white woman who created white only. I'm sorry. I think this was actually a Black principal. In the school, they segregated all the Black students under the guise of critical race theory, saying that there's an idea that came from Derek Bell. Are you familiar with Derek Bell?
Mm-hmm.
He believed that Plessy versus Ferguson was correct, that separate but equal was the right way to approach racial issues. I believe it was Derek Bell. So I don't have the book pulled up in front of me. One of the arguments that I've heard, at least him be attached to, and I heard quite frequently with the Black Lives Matter protests, was that before desegregation, the Black community had their own wealth, their own neighborhoods, and they had their own economy. Segregation took a...
I love how people in the chat who never watch my channel are literally telling me I don't know about something that I literally wrote a fucking book about. Literally wrote a book about this, guys. It's coming out on Tuesday. Literally spent months writing a book about this. Don't tell me what I know and what I don't know. I already know more about critical race theory than literally anyone involved in this conversation right now. My God, and I haven't even had coffee yet.
Weaker economy in the Black community and forced it into the white economy, putting it underneath it, allowing white people to then oppress Black industry and Black business. That is the justification they use for bringing back segregation. The actual argument among the woke that Plessy...
The book is called Actively Unwoke. There is a pinned post at the top of the chat right now with a link to buy the book if you would like the book. You can also go to activelyunwoke.com. All this stuff is covered in my book. Literally all of it.
V. Ferguson was right. And I come from a second generation mixed race family who told me the stories of life before Loving v. Virginia and the Civil Rights Act and the things they went through getting spit on. I'm sure you know better than
Sure.
even I do, because I grew up after the fact. And so when I started hearing the things that were coming out of the modern iteration of the left in critical race theory, I said, those are bad racist things we should oppose.
Okay, so now let's understand something. Okay, so when you say that, they say, okay, all white people are oppressors, all white people are racist, all Black people are victims, and they'll always be victims. No, I don't agree with that. That's not the way it is. Okay,
but that's the core definition of critical race theory.
Yes,
no, it's not the core definition.
Yes,
of
it
critical
is.
race
I
theory.
gotta stop you.
Basically,
Yes.
critical theory.
Yes, Tim is correct on this one. Tim is correct. Daryl is not correct. Tim is correct. The idea that Black people will always be oppressed, will always be victims, that is part of the definition of critical theorists looking for racism in every interaction, in every discussion, in every situation. Tim is absolutely correct here, and he better not relent on this. That is the definition of critical race theory, that Black people will always be victims and white people will always be oppressors. But it gets a little bit more complicated because we're talking about whiteness being about who owns the power structure. Maybe we'll get into a discussion of why they believe that whiteness was invented. Well, let's just say it. What they mean for people, again, who have not had this explained to them, that may be watching my channel for the first time, is critical race theorists believe that white people didn't exist until America. They believe that white people only came into existence in America because prior to that, when they were like English or Irish or French or German or any of these things, they were called by their ethnicity. And then when they came to America and they brought Black slaves with them, they made the distinction of calling everyone with lighter skin white and the slaves were Black. And that is when they say whiteness was created in America. And they say that white people created whiteness when America was founded in order to only build up systems that support other white people. That is the very basis for what systemic racism is. So Tim is correct in what he's saying right now. Daryl is not correct.
Critical theory was Marx's approach to class-based oppression. And he said, the rich oppress the poor. Kimberly Crenshaw, in her opening chapter, literally says, white people oppress Black people. It is critical race theory.
No, I disagree with that. I'd have to see that.
Daryl is
I've
incorrect.
Seen, Kimberly Crenshaw interviewed. Okay,
Kimberly Crenshaw's a psychopath.
Challenged with that by the other guy. What's his name? Kendi or somebody.
Ibram X. Kendi.
Yes. Okay.
Well, Kendi has a different
schools.
definition.
They're both the same school.
Well, no,
No,
they're the same
two
school.
different schools.
No,
No.
well,
No,
okay.
no.
Well, okay, so we have watched both Kendi and Crenshaw on my second channel for Happy Hour. For those who don't know, on Fridays, we go over to my second channel, youtube.com/activelyunwoke. We watch full form critical race theory and woke trainings. We've watched both Kendi and Crenshaw. Tim is correct when he says they come from the same school. They do have slightly different ways in which they talk about it. Kendi is really more focused on what he defines as systemic racism. What Kendi defines as systemic racism is anytime there are racial disparities in terms of statistics, then the reason for those disparities is racism. Kendi and actually Crenshaw believe in present discrimination in order to make up for past discrimination. So again, Tim is correct. Daryl is not correct.
Okay, what you're saying leans more towards what Kendi has stated.
They both stated it.
From my watching Crenshaw be interviewed, no, that is not the case. Okay, I don't have the computer here to bring it up, but I would say research that. That is not, you know, there are several different definitions of critical race theory. And so
no, there are not.
There's no one universal definition of it.
Wrong.
I think what happened is that the Romans had a slaveocracy that spread into Europe and then into like feudalism. So they had still slaves as like their feudal people, the peasants. And then they, because their skin happened to be white or light, then they had enslaved people from around the North African coast and the East, so that their slaves happened to have different color skins. And now because of that, it's created a system where the generations that follow those slaves had less education and less wealth and the slave owners. But it wasn't because the skin color, it just happened to be the Roman Empire happened to be the dominating empire. I don't think.
Well, you know, the Roman Empire evolved out of Africa. Okay, Italians come from Africa.
The Moors.
The Moors, exactly, precisely.
Kimberly,
and southern Italy, those Italians are dark.
Yeah, the Sicilians particularly.
Exactly, precisely.
And I think that the racial component's been
What is Ian even fucking talking about?
Issue that we have of like the descendants of slaves, like fifth, sixth, seventh generation slave children of like, you know, the great-great-great-grandfather was a slave, didn't have any education, whatever. So there's no familial wealth, or there's less familial wealth.
My great-great-grandfather was a slave. Okay, nice. I'm a descendant of slaves.
Wow.
Okay, now we were promised at the end of slavery, what, 40 acres and a mule. Find me one person who got that. Okay, Japanese Americans.
Is he in favor of reparations?
Internment camps or their descendants have received reparations. Native Americans, if you have 1/16 Native American blood, you can get a government.
I'm not actually opposed to the. I think that one of the stupidest decisions that Trump ever made was Trump didn't call what he did for like what Trump should have done. And then before the 2020 election, he came up with this whole platinum plan for how to help the Black community. What Trump should have done is branded that as reparations. That would have been like the smartest thing that Trump ever did in his life. I don't know why he didn't do this, but like I am actually not opposed to the idea of reparations when it comes to making strategic investments in communities and in services and support for previously underserved communities that will lift up the widest and number of people that were impacted by slavery. Like, and this is way back in the day, because there is an argument to be made for the fact that they were inhibited from accumulating historical wealth because of the reality of them not being paid for their labor for so long. So there is a reality to that. However, I am deeply opposed to cash payments or anything like that to individual people, because it's going to be like the lottery, essentially. If people don't know how to manage money and all of a sudden they get a big cash payment of money, that money is going to be gone in like a year or two. But I am absolutely in favor of making strategic investments into communities in a way that could lift the most people up and have the broadest possible impact. I mean, I've often said that, listen, a version of equity that I would be very much in favor of is if let's put an entrepreneurship program in every inner city high school in the country. Teach Black kids how to build businesses, how to build wealth in a way that I'm fine with targeting those investments. That would be a version of equity that I would be very much in favor of, but not these big cash payment things. That makes absolutely no sense at all. That's not going to help anyone.
Money. Okay, I got Cherokee in me, but I've never gone to get any money from it. Okay. So we've made the apologies to Native Americans. We've made the apologies to Japanese Americans. This country has never apologized for slavery. The person who came the
closest are you talking about?
To apologizing, but never apologized.
That's not true.
Was President Bill Clinton. What he said was slavery was wrong. Those are his words. Now, saying something is wrong and saying we're sorry for doing it are two different things.
How many people died liberating the
not true.
Japanese from the internment camps?
I don't know the numbers.
I think it's 0.
They just
I don't-
opened the
I
camps
think-
after the war, didn't they? I don't know.
So
the
I
history
think
of
this
that, actually.
country overtly did wrong by putting people in these camps,
Yes.
and then realized they did wrong. But I think
They also did wrong by putting people in shackles and selling them on the courthouse steps as property.
Absolutely. I suppose that the main difference, though, I actually agree with you. I think I actually think there should be some form of reparations, but I don't know if it's ever been. I don't know if the politicians will ever actually do anything meaningful in terms of this.
And what's that called?
Lying?
No, it's called racism.
That they won't do anything meaningful.
What?
Yeah.
But I mean, you have black political
No.
leaders who also won't do anything
You
meaningful.
got black people who are worthless, just like you got white people who are worthless. Nobody.
Did Barack Obama push for reparations? Remind me, did you get reparations in the 8 years that Obama was was Obama a racist because he didn't get you reparations, Daryl? That's just not true. I'm sorry, that's not racism. What Daryl just did is literally apply Ibram X. Kendi's definition of racism. That is not true.
He has a monopoly on racism or being worthless.
I don't think that it's a prejudice against race is the reason why they're not doing it. I think it's because they want to hold that over as an issue to gain power in politics.
Have
Yes,
you listened to
Tim is correct.
Coleman's arguments
Tim is
on
correct.
reparations?
Coleman Hughes,
yeah. I mean, so it's a I
Coleman
don't
Hughes
think
is like 3 years
the
behind
fact that
everything.
it hasn't happened yet necessarily means racism. It's more so extremely complicated because where do you draw the line? What percentage of black do you have to be? Like, it's very complicated.
I just have to say
No, it's not complicated at all. Listen, what does racism exist? Yes or no?
absolutely.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
think that people are afraid of what they're not familiar with sometimes.
But does racism exist?
Well,
Yes,
there's
of course.
We're the same race. We're the human species. Like
Oh, come on,
I
Ian.
understand.
That's not
There's only
helpful,
one race,
dude.
but you know what
small
I'm
R,
asking.
yeah, big R. whatever.
Does racism exist in this country?
Yes.
Are there people of different colors who are discriminated against?
Yes.
Okay. This country owned people as property. Okay. We were considered, people like me, were considered 3/5 of a human being. We were bought and sold on the courthouse steps. Families ripped apart, just like when you got your first pet. Somebody's cat or dog had a litter and your parents took you over and said, pick out one. And you took that kitten or that puppy from its mother. That's what happened to human beings in this country. Okay. We were taken from our families. We were raped in front of our children, in front of mothers' husbands and things like that. About 9 out of every 10 black people in this country have some white blood in them.
So
Okay. Some of it consensual, some of it non-consensual. Let me tell you this. Thomas Jefferson, you all know he had a slave mistress, right?
Yeah.
Named Sally
Yes.
Hemings.
Obviously.
But I bet you didn't know this. And if you doubt me, check it out. What was Thomas's wife's name? Was it Martha or Mary? I forgot now.
I think it was Martha, wasn't it?
Martha Jones.
No,
Martha
no.
Jefferson?
I remember Washington's wife.
She's Martha for sure.
Okay, so
Okay,
that's
maybe it
Mary
was both.
Jefferson.
It was
so it's
both.
Mary.
They're both Martha.
They're
Okay.
both Martha. Okay.
Like Bruce Wayne and Superman. Their moms.
Bruce Wayne and Superman.
Both their moms are Martha. Martha
Okay.
Kent and Martha Wayne.
Okay, so Sally Hemings, who was President Thomas Jefferson's slave mistress. Did you know that she was a half sister to Thomas Jefferson's wife, Martha Jefferson? You need to check that out. That's not in your history book, but you can find it because Thomas Jefferson's father-in-law, Martha's father, okay, he had slaves too, right? And he had an affair with Sally Hemings' mother, which produced Sally Hemings. If you look at a picture of Martha Jefferson and a picture of Sally Hemings, they look very similar, one darker, one lighter.
How much is one human life worth? Is worth a lot.
You can't put a value on it.
828,000 casualties from the Union soldiers fighting to end slavery. 828,000 people died. Endless amounts of wealth destroyed.
Why are they
homes
arguing about
ransacked,
this?
Burned, completely destroyed. The country almost collapsed trying to end this. So while I still believe that there's an issue of reparations in terms of we cannot have, people, I've mentioned systemic racism on this show and people don't agree, but I think it's because people misunderstand what the idea actually is behind it. So we'll get to that in a second. I think there needs to be, I lean liberal on all these positions. There needs to be some way to strengthen the weakest link in this country, those who are historically impoverished or generationally impoverished. I think after we did away with a lot of the laws that were bad, I think after we had constitutional amendments and then ultimately new laws that codified you cannot do these things, we now need class-based solutions, which should disproportionately help those who are disproportionately affected.
Okay, so in the 1940s and 1950s, a lot of Black people in this country moved to France. Now, people over in France are a lot whiter than white people in this country. All right. The French people treated these Black people as equals. That's why we moved there. Eartha Kitt was one of them, who played like Catwoman on Batman. She was the one who had the cat growl, right? Paul Robeson, Memphis Slim, Josephine Baker. A lot of these people moved to France as equals. All right. So white people are oppressors too. Okay. That's because people have been exposed to only a small group of white people. And those are the people here in this country. People in France did not oppress Black people. All right. They didn't own slaves.
Wait, is he
This
making,
country
hang
owns
on,
slaves.
hang
Look,
on,
okay,
hang
look,
on, hang on, hang
think-
on. Sorry, it takes me a second to pause sometimes. Is he making the argument that white people in America are inherently racist because white people in America owned slaves back in the day, but white people in other countries aren't racist? Like that racism is a specific... Is this, like, am I understanding this correctly? Is he honestly arguing that, wow, he is literally he is literally spouting critical race theory. This is the very fucking basis of systemic racism. Now I understand why you guys wanted me to watch this. Daryl Davis is literally spouting the basic, the foundational theory of fucking Kendi and systemic racism. Oh my God.
You guys are too young to remember.
And he's doing it, and listen, I do actually want to show him some grace, because he has done probably some of the hardest work that anyone could do to de-radicalize people. So I want to show him grace in the way that he has been able to show grace to people who hate him based on how he looks. I think that, and people in the chat, I see you saying that I'm about to get real pissed. I want to do my very best to show him grace in this, because he is of a certain time and a certain generation, and I can understand why he might perceive things differently. Because what he has not wrapped his head around yet is that we are not living in the 60s and the 70s anymore, and what is going on right now is completely different to what was going on then.
There is only one holiday in this country, that
I was
that
trying to
is
say
named
this in a nicer
after
way. I was trying to say it in a nicer way.
an American man. One holiday in this country that's named after an American man.
What are you talking about?
And guess what? That man is Black. And people had a fit over that. It took decades to get Martin Luther King Day. People did not want to put it up there because he's a Black man. There used to...
Incognito says he's becoming the monster he's fighting against. I mean, I don't see that yet, Incognito. That's not, there's 2 hours left of this stream, so I don't know that I will see it, but like, I don't think that. I think that this is just, I think, you know, people saying he's a boomer, I think that's what it is. I think that this is a generational thing, and that he maybe hasn't been keeping up with what's going on, and he's talking about things from a different perspective that is not grounded in what is currently going on right now.
To be two white guys who had a holiday each to himself. One, we used to have George Washington Day, and we had Abraham Lincoln Day. And then it was decided that we had too many holidays. So they combined Washington Day and Lincoln Day into one day called President's Day. All right. But I remember when I went to school, we got off for Washington Day and we got off for Lincoln Day. All right. Now, but we had to fight to get Martin Luther King Day. Yet we celebrate. There's another guy who has a holiday all to himself. All right. He's not an American. He didn't discover a damn thing. He was a murderer, a pillager, and a rapist. And his name, Christopher Columbus.
The reason that Columbus Day is a holiday, and AD, who I don't see AD in the chat right now, but AD has explained this to us. The reason that Columbus Day is a holiday is less about Christopher Columbus and had more to do with oh God, someone please inform me. I can't. It had to do with something about like Italians being like massacred in like New Orleans or something like that. It was an overture to the Italian community. That was what it was. It wasn't about Christopher Columbus. It was an overture to Italian Americans. Lion Fan 96, just want to say thanks for what you do. Don't always agree, but I support your work and efforts. Congrats on the book release. Thanks, man. This book release has been pretty stressful for me, so I'm glad to have it out in the world, and I do hope that people find my book helpful. And if people would like to order my book, it comes out on Tuesday. Well, technically, it's already kind of sort of out, kind of. But you can head over to activelyunwoke.com, and the link is in the description and also pinned to the top of the chat on YouTube. Brian says, a couple weeks back, Tim had another boomer on that was out of touch with current events as well. Well, perhaps Tim should have other guests on his show. I'm just saying, perhaps he should have other guests on his show. Yeah, if someone wants to explain the origin story of Columbus Day in the chat, I'll display it on the screen. I don't know it off the top of my head. I only know it because AD, who is a channel regular, has explained it to us before, and I found it to be actually really helpful.
Okay, Martin Luther King never raped anybody, never pillaged any place, and he gave his life bringing people together. But yet we had no problem celebrating Christopher Columbus, who didn't discover America, as Tim said.
It wasn't about celebrating Christopher Columbus. It was about celebrating Italian Americans. That was what it was
Columbus
about.
Let his brothers ransack. I think it was, were they in Haiti? Is that where they set up shop? It was in the Bahamas somewhere. And he just let his two brothers like drag women down the street by their hair as they would beat them and rape them and stuff. It was, hey, I want to confirm a couple things you mentioned earlier from Newsweek. There's an article from, this is like September 21, Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks books among those banned in Pennsylvania school district. I didn't read into this article and I don't know why they were banned, but that's an article from Newsweek.
I'll tell you, here's the challenge.
Very quick. The other thing is Sally Hemings is apparently the half sister of Jefferson's wife, Martha Wales Jefferson. That's from Monticello.org.
One of the challenges with any cursory story about banning books is that we recently had a book banned in a bunch of schools called Genderqueer. The Washington Post and the New York Times wrote that it's just a story about growing up queer and a story that kids need. But the book actually also displays graphic images of sex between what is probably minors, and Amazon rates it as being 18 up. When you hear the story just in passing or on the surface, if you actually read the New York Times and the Washington Post, they won't tell you why the book was actually banned. They'll simply say anti-trans or anti-queer bigots banned the book because they're banning books. You then actually open the book and say, whoa, they wanted middle schoolers to see blowjobs? Yeah, I don't know about that, but that's actually in the book. I can't show you the book on YouTube because we'd get banned if we showed it.
So, Tim, can you confirm that there's kind of a split within critical race theory between these two different camps that Daryl's talking about?
Well, I'd call it a Mott and Bailey.
No.
Right? So when
incorrect.
You actually,
no.
In that, what is it? I always confuse the two. One of them, are you familiar with the Mott and Bailey argument?
No.
They'll say something like, we're just trying to teach the true history of racism in America. And then you go, oh, okay, well then what is this? Or I'm sorry, the way it works is they'll say something like, all white people are racist. All white people are oppressors because whiteness is property. Kimberly Crenshaw actually said that. It's in her original book. Whiteness as property grants people specific access to things other people can't. Therefore, white people oppress all other people of color. You then say, hey, whoa, wait a minute. You can't call all people racist. You can't show a picture of a devil who's white with a whiteness contract. And then they go, we're just trying to explain the true history of this country. It's a Mott and Bailey argument. You start with this very aggressive approach. And then when someone actually investigates and call you out, you retreat saying, no, it's just about the true history of this country. So for someone like me,
Tim is actually kind of right about that. I agree with his
country was built
depiction.
on racism. Okay.
Well, it was beat. I mean,
Okay, so what Daryl Davis just said, that the country was built on racism. You know how about half an hour ago I explained that critical race theorists believe that white people were invented with the founding of America? This is totally a 1619 Project thing. Daryl Davis is getting this from like the 1619 Project, that type of ideology that says that white people didn't exist until the founding of America, when white people distinguished themselves from black people by calling themselves white and black people black, and building up all these structures and systems that only were to support white people and to keep black people oppressed. That is the basis of the 1619 Project. It is completely untrue, but that's how they paint it, and that's what Daryl Davis just said.
World itself is still just racist, but the United States.
No. The world itself is not racist. This country is racist. There is discrimination in the world. For example, in Northern Ireland, okay, like here in our country, if you're Catholic and I'm Protestant, there's no big deal. No, who cares? In Northern Ireland, it's conflict.
Oh yeah,
that's not racism. Okay,
that's tribalism.
Okay, and no, it's religion. Okay,
but
and
it's tribalism. So I'm not going to try to be an expert on the Irish Republicans and the Protestants and Catholics and the Orange Order or anything, but at least having been there and covered this, both sides of this, it's not about Protestant or Catholic. That may be what it's described as, but you notice really weird things. One side's pro-Palestine, one side's pro-Israel. One side believes in socialism, one side believes in capitalism. One side is pro-militaristic imperialism, one side is anti-intervention. What happens is two different factions hate each other, and they adopt whatever the other side opposes. And so tribalism emerges, where I asked on the piece.
Isn't that what we're experiencing right here, right now with Republicans and Democrats?
Right. That's why it's.
Is that tribalism?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
That's why.
By your definition, okay.
So when they say Candace Owens is a white supremacist, something is wrong, right?
They said I was a white supremacist.
Something's wrong.
I don't always agree with Candace Owens, though.
Right. So the issue is, for me, I don't think race is the principal component of the divide right now. I'm not saying racism doesn't exist. I'm saying in a separate issue, we have a problem of tribalism in this country. And I think, just not to derail you, because I was mentioning,
it's all right.
When you mentioned Northern Ireland as being religious, it's tribal.
It started as a religious conflict that became more tribalized over time. That's same with politics.
All right, so let's go from Northern Ireland to Lebanon. There it's Christians and Muslims. In Israel, it's Jews and Palestinians. Okay, so these are religious discriminations. You wouldn't call it racism. In this country, it's racism. Okay, you know, people were bought and sold. People were owned. This country was built on a two-tier society: white supremacy at the top and slavery at the bottom. That's what built this country. And as we progress over the decades, we progress like this.
That's 1619 Project is describing
like
systemic racism right
now.
now.
But never like this.
Is it fair to say the Native Americans were on the bottom?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they were
absolutely they were on the bottom. Absolutely.
You know, I'm not sure. I don't know.
From
if we should
trailer
make
tears and etc.
I don't know if we should make it a hierarchy.
And to this day, we still discriminate against Native Americans. You know, there are a lot of phrases, you know, that you don't even realize that are
my God,
pejorative or derogatory. Like, you know, you say, you know, man, that guy went off the reservation.
Yeah.
Where do you think that comes from?
Right.
Or it's none of your cotton picking business. Where do you think that comes from?
Well, that one we all know.
Okay.
That was like Foghorn Leghorn, man.
Or he comes from the wrong side of the tracks.
So Daryl, you're president. How do you deal with this?
Who's my president?
No, I'm saying theoretically, if you were president.
If I was president.
If you were president, how are you handling this?
I'm having more talk, more discussion. I'm the same way I'm handling it right now. I bring opposing forces together.
What about specifically in terms of reparations? What would you like to see?
What I would like to see, Bill, is an apology, okay? And B, reparations in terms perhaps of education, tuitions, not necessarily be handing out people money necessarily, but provide people the means to get a great education, all right? Because that way you can uplift you help uplift yourself.
What do you think? Let's go back to the abortion thing. What do you think about the history of Planned Parenthood? Are you familiar with it?
The history of it? No, I'm not familiar with the
Margaret
history
Sanger was.
I know the name, but I'm not familiar with all the.
A eugenicist, and one of her. We can't say the name of the project she created because it uses an iteration of the N-word, which would get us in trouble on YouTube. But her idea was to go around to the Black community and start propagating birth control practices to stop Black people from having kids.
Let me tell you something. My mother was a victim of that. Okay? There was a big scandal back in the 50s where doctors were systematically giving women hysterectomies. All right,
And
in order to cut down the Black population.
That's right.
And my mother was a victim of that. And you don't find that out until, 20, 40 years later, just like the Tuskegee experiment, just like Agent Orange, the government doing all these kinds of things, and you don't find out about it until much later.
Yeah, or like Pfizer data dumps and stuff like that. They wanted to wait 75 years to give that information out. But I digress. I'm into repairing the system too, reparation, whatever you want to call it, repairing it. And I agree. I don't think throwing money at people is the way to repair the communication. I mean, obviously communication is real. Do you think school choice is legit, or you follow that at all?
School choice?
Yeah, it's instead of like people sending their kids to a public school every year that costs a certain amount of money, instead you get a voucher for that amount of money that you can spend at any.
Why don't we just defund all the schools and get the government out of it? That would be preferable.
Curriculum. Does that appeal to you at all?
I'd have to look at that some more.
Also, it was very vague, and I don't know if I described it exactly right, but it's the idea that instead of being having to adhere to a public school system or private, that you would get to choose where you send your kid, and you'll have credits along with that. Because I think education and communication is the key to moving forward.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. I'm 100% pro education, and it would have to be schools that that are top notch. You would have the right to go to those schools. I mean, there was a time where I couldn't go to Harvard or I couldn't go to Princeton because of the color of my skin. Yeah. That's why we have what we call HBCUs, right? Historically Black colleges and universities. That's why the United Negro College Fund was founded and things like that. So, and by the way, I went to an HBCU. I went to Howard University, which was founded by General George Howard, who was a white guy.
Is that going to do it?
So I'm trying to pull up the specific story. Google's not too. Let me see if we can do this. I did have another thing pulled up I want to ask you about.
Sure.
I hope that YouTube can start to understand context of language. Well, I mean, we'll see if they can. If the algorithm detects the word that Daryl just said and demonetizes the video, that is just so unacceptable. No, it's okay. It's okay. Use the N word, which N-word.
Let me ask you. We have a story from Independent. Harvard University will hold first ever Black-only graduation ceremony on. This is from May 2017. Do you agree with institutions creating racially segregated?
No.
So I agree with that. And this is not coming from the right. This is coming from.
Like I said, nobody has a monopoly on stupidity.
I wanted to ask you about the abortion thing because it's big in the news, and this is a really fascinating one because one of the things we hear from a lot of people on the pro-life side is that the foundation of Planned Parenthood was eugenicists who wanted to depopulate the Black, population community in this country. I just pulled up the 1990 to 2006. It's a census government abortion demographic, and the interesting thing is that in 2006, for every 1,000 women, there were 14 abortions, but for every 1,000 Black women, there were 50 abortions. So I look at this and I think,
is that tribalism or is that racism?
I think it's racism.
Both, probably.
Absolutely. I think
racist tribals.
I think when you look at the locations of Planned Parenthood facilities, they tend to be in Black and Latino areas, not lower income areas.
Just like when you look at all the advertisements and billboards for cigarette smoking and alcohol, usually in impoverished Black areas.
Yep. So I'm curious as to what your thoughts on this would be. Why is it that in 2006, for every 1,000 Black women, there's 50 abortions, but for every 1,000 white women, there's 14 abortions? How do you think something like that happens?
Racism.
Racism. Sure, but like, are there racists who are advocating for? Are these pro-choice racists who are trying to trick Black people, or how is it racist?
They're trying to cut. Okay, let me tell you what's happening here. When you were a kid, even though you're a lot younger than I am, and when I was a kid, even when your parents were kids and your grandparents were kids, the Black population in this country was 12%. Native Americans, 1%. Hispanic people, around 2%. Asian people, around 3%. Whites, 86, 87%. All right. The U.S. Census is taken every decade, every 10 years. You can Google uscensus.gov and see the trends. All right. Today, Black people remain just over 12%, like 12.9, 13%. All right. Native Americans remain at 1%. Asians have pretty much doubled. They're like at 5.9, almost 6%. Latino, Hispanic people have more than quadrupled, 17 something percent. If you take just Black people, 12%, Hispanic people, 17%, that right there is 29% non-white. That's almost a third, right? This
So
is
what?
happening, all right? Today, the last census was last year. I'm sorry, 2 years ago, 2020. All
What
right?
is his point?
White people in this country right
So
now
what?
are 59%. All right. In the year 2042, which is 2 decades from now, this will happen for the first time in our country. This country will be 50% white, 50% non-white. All right, for the first time.
So what?
Between 2045 and 2050, it's going to flip, and whites will become the minority in this country. Whites are already the minority globally, but in this country, they are the majority. You guys may know the term white flight.
Yep.
Okay. White flight barely exists in our country anymore because the color of America's landscape has changed so much that anywhere you go, there's already somebody there who doesn't look like you. And so there's a large swath of the white American population that doesn't care about this happening. Hey, it's evolution. I don't care. No big deal. I don't have a problem with that. But there's also a large swath that does care about that. They feel they're getting squished out. We built this country. We wrote
There
the
is not a large
and
swath
now,
is saying that.
Our identity
Wait,
is being, squashed out.
hang on. Who is saying that? Who is saying now? And this is actually a topic I have covered. I have covered the white identitarians. I've covered like them trying to infiltrate the anti-CRT movement with this bullshit. I do think there are more of them than people think they are. But by and large, what Tim is talking about is not the same thing that what Daryl's talking about. What the hell is it? Like, what is he even talking about right now? I don't understand this at all. Why does it matter? Why does it matter if white people are going to become, well, he's saying the minority. I don't actually I don't think that listen, if you stack all the different groups on top of each other, do they outnumber white people? Yes, but all that is doing is pitting non-white people against white people, which is exactly what critical race theorists want. So why are we even subscribing to this? I don't understand.
With race mixing and people moving us out and so forth and so on. So they are
most white people don't care.
This happening. And
most white people do not care.
And this is why, we're seeing a lot of these things, that you're talking about. Voting rights changing. And people, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Wait, is he arguing that the voter bills are racist? Are you shitting me? Most white people do not care about any of this. He's literally, meta stuff. I was thinking the same thing. He is literally making the white fragility argument. Wow.
What voting rights in particular?
Where they're trying to rewrite the voting rights bill. And what's going to be next? The civil rights bill, right?
Well, I just asked because they're doing it everywhere, and it's the left and the right. So I'm not sure the context, right? So in a bunch of the blue areas, they've changed the voting laws dramatically. Pennsylvania, there was a lawsuit where they ruled the Republicans and Democrats made an agreement on voting changes that was ruled unconstitutional recently. So we're seeing
when you have sat on the throne of power for 400 years, as white supremacy has sat there.
Oh
it's
my
hard to get off
God.
that throne. Okay, say as some of us are musicians here, right? So if you have a number one hit, number one on the charts, you don't want to see yourself fall down to number 2 and number 3 and number 4 and then fall off the top 100. You want to stay at the top. So when you sat on the throne of power for 400 years, and I came here 400 years ago in 1619, all right? And you got our last president sat on the throne of power for only 4 years.
Oh,
and he thinks he's still there.
God.
It's hard to give up power.
Are you kidding
You're
me?
operating under the pretext that, like, what a lot of what we're seeing in modern politics from Republicans is due to them not wanting to lose white power.
Yes.
Oh
But
my
where does that idea
God.
come
Now,
from?
I'm not saying
Listen, man, I have to give kudos to Tim here because it appears to me, at least at this point, I don't know what happens. It appears to me that Tim is kind of like remaining pretty fucking composed and professional in the face of absolute insanity being spewed right in front of him by someone who I'm guessing he didn't expect to be literally regurgitating 1619 Ibram X. Kendi, Robin DiAngelo talking points. So I have to say that I'm actually impressed with the level of composure that Tim is maintaining in this conversation. Good for him. I wouldn't be able to do it.
just Republicans. You know, there are racist Republicans and there are plenty of racist Democrats. Okay.
Do you agree with Harvard's affirmative action plans?
What are they?
So if
I believe in affirmative education. I believe everybody. I don't believe in lowering standards in order to and having quotas to get people up there and lower the standard. No, I don't believe in that at all. But I do believe in affirmative education, giving everybody an equal opportunity to get educated.
That's not what they're
Harvard,
doing.
It's
that's not what they're
Asian,
doing.
You have to score, I think, 1,300, and if you're Black or Hispanic, you have
I'm
to
starting to
score
get
lower,
mad now.
like
I probably need to take it down a notch, but like that's not what they're doing.
So they make it more difficult for Asians, and they make it easier for Black and Latinos. I think that's wrong. I think they should.
I just said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Don't lower.
It really pisses me off when people go on shows that have a substantially wide reach, and I think this is true of Tim Pool's show. I think this is true of going on Fox News. I think this is true of The Blaze. I think this is true of the Daily Wire. I think this is true of anything that has a really large reach. It really pisses me off when people go on these shows and just act incredibly irresponsibly in the information that they are articulating to people. Like, you're lying to a lot of people, and it is not helping at all. And at this point, I'm not saying this about Tim. I'm saying this about Daryl, which really is disappointing to me. And again, maybe he's coming from a place where he really just doesn't know. I've never been on. That's not true. I've never been on Tim's show, and I suspect I never will be on Tim's show, which is fine. But like, I just can't. How can you? When you go in front of people, you have a responsibility to people to tell the truth. I'm sorry. The amount of people that just go on these things and lie and just create, like, if you're talking about lessening the divisions in this country, if you're talking about actually trying to fix things and making them better for all of us, stop lying to people.
Don't lower the bar.
So
Always
this is
keep the bar up.
This is the issue I'm fighting when I say things like critical race theory should not be allowed in curriculum.
But now let's talk about what you just said. Okay, so I've sat there with neo-Nazis and KKK people, etc., and I say, how can you hate me? You don't even know me, and sitting 2 feet in front of me. Well, Mr. Davis, you have to understand one thing. Black people are prone to crime. And this is evidenced by the fact that there are more Black people.
I don't think I will ever be invited on this show, and I would have to really consider it. I don't know if I want that type of exposure to that type of audience. And that's no offense to any of Tim's fans. It's just like, I don't do a lot of media for a reason. Like, it's an exposure that I don't like. And it always ends up getting clipped out of context. And I always end up getting attacked endlessly for days, weeks, months on end. The last time I was on Fox News was in February of 2021. And I have been attacked relentlessly with a clip from that was taken out of context ever since, that goes viral on the internet every couple of months. So I really just don't like this type of exposure. But I also don't think I'll ever be invited, quite frankly, because there are feelings there, especially amongst, like, some of the other people. So it is what it is, guys. But I guess, give you this reaction, which is about as close as we'll probably ever get.
People in prison than white people. What he's saying is 100% true. The data shows that. The statistics show there are more black people in prison than white people. So what he is saying is 100% right. But so that justifies his thinking, you know, we need to keep black people down because the crime will grow. But because it enforces what he already believes.
Also, I generally think that Cassandra Fairbanks is a psychopath. And so I really don't think that would ever, as long as he is in any proximity to her at all, it's not going to happen. I'll tell you what, it's not going to happen. Hey, AD, we were actually talking about you earlier because Daryl was talking about how Columbus Day was a racist holiday. AD, can you remind us why Columbus Day is a holiday? And I'll display it you don't need to super chat in or anything, but just chat it in and I'll display it on the screen, because Daryl Davis is under the impression that Columbus Day is about Christopher Columbus, when I know from you that it is not about Christopher Columbus. It was about Italian Americans. Brian will have Patrice super chatted in. Patrice is never gonna have another super chat right on that show. After the challenging Lydia to a boxing match, Patrice is never gonna have another super chat right on that show.
As a KKK person or a neo-Nazi or whatever, a white supremacist, if you just want to use a general umbrella, he is satisfied with that statistic or that data. He doesn't bother to look behind the data and find out why.
And why is it?
Why is it? Because black people tend to get imprisoned for longer sentences than white people committing the same crime. When you find a state, like let's just say the state of Maryland, a few years ago, well, more than 10 years ago.
Hang on. AD says Columbus Day is a thing because 11 Sicilians who weren't considered white were lynched in the largest mass lynching in American history. It's also when the mafia was first used. That is why Columbus Day is a holiday. Thank you, AD, for explaining what Daryl Davis, in the midst of a rant about how history is not taught accurately, taught inaccurate history.
Governor Paris Glendening of the state of Maryland put a moratorium on the death penalty, as have a lot of states. Why? Because black people were being legally executed for their crimes, where white people went to prison for life or life with parole. Okay, so what he wanted to do was, you know, we want to put a 10-year moratorium on the death penalty to study why this is happening. What the hell do you need to study? You know why it's happening. It's called racism. White people have been studying black people for 400 years. If you haven't learned anything in 400 years.
Doesn't Cassandra have bondage porn on the internet? I swear I've seen Cassandra Fairbanks in bondage porn. Maybe Cassandra Fairbanks could teach Lydia about critical dominatrix theory. That'd be pretty rad. Anyway, that's getting off the topic. We're reining it back in. No more shit talking. This isn't Sassy Saturday. This is early morning Saturday. And I have a thing I need to go to in 2 hours, so we got to speed this up.
Not gonna learn anything in 10 years.
I think class plays a big role in why we see the crime rates the way they are. I think people who are in poverty, you tend to see higher crime in lower income areas. It's not absolute; it's not the only reason.
Right.
But the issue with black people in prison, typically what you'll hear from the right is, I shouldn't say the right. Typically, you'll hear from white identitarians is that they commit a disproportionate amount of crimes relative to other races.
We hear that all the time, but why? They don't have the opportunities. They're not being given the opportunities. Why? Because of racism. Now,
but that would be by class.
No. You know, it's by the fact it's by color. Okay, it's by color. I know
it's both.
Well, it may be class, but you know, as a black man, I have experienced things that you guys will never experience. Okay. You know, I get pulled over 10 times more than you do. All right.
Do you though?
Huh?
Do you?
I do. Yes,
that was ballsy.
That
was ballsy by Tim.
I don't know, but by looking at you, I can tell you I have.
Respect him. That was ballsy.
Okay.
I reject that outright.
Well, then let's go and compare those times. Okay. And plus, I've lived longer than you have.
You have, and you were around. To be fair, considering you were around in pre-civil rights era,
I've been pulled over just for having a white woman in my car for no other reason.
I've been pulled over and had cops plant drugs in my car. I've been pulled over completely illegally, like for no reason at all, and then had my license suspended.
How many times?
So I've been pulled over illegally in my life probably 4 or 5 times.
That's a drop of pepper in a salt shaker.
How many times have you been pulled over?
You can't even count the number.
Like more than 50?
I was saying,
Yeah, absolutely. So and still today.
You are almost twice as old as I am.
Mm-hmm.
You were you've lived through eras of pre-civil rights and all that stuff. So I can't speak to that. But I've been pulled over, and I'm not trying to say that I do. But what I'm trying to say is I don't respect you telling me outright without actually listening to me or knowing anything about my family or my life or what we went through. That outright I didn't experience these things.
No, I didn't say you didn't experience these things.
Or that.
No, I said I've been pulled over more times than you have. That's what I said, and I stand.
You are older than me, though.
Doesn't matter.
I mean,
doesn't matter. I'm also a lot darker than you are.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If
I had listen. I lived in a place called Potomac, Maryland. Okay, which tradition is an all white or predominantly white area. It's mixed now. All right. My family was the second Black family to move into our neighborhood. My father was a senior Foreign Service officer. My father was Richard Nixon's interpreter when he was Vice President of the United States. When he went to Russia, he was Vice President to Dwight Eisenhower. He went to Russia to have what's called the kitchen debate with Nikita Khrushchev, the famous kitchen debate. My father was Nixon's interpreter. My father was one of the first Black Americans to speak Russian, all right, fluently. My father spoke 9 languages fluently, all right. My father was one of the first Black Secret Service agents in this country.
don't dismiss any of this, but what the fuck does it have to do with the conversation?
Only let him go, but so high. He did such a good job.
What does this have to do with anything, Daryl?
Interpreting Russian for Nixon. Nixon came back and told Eisenhower about him, and Nixon and Eisenhower called my dad into the White House, and Eisenhower told my dad, "You have gone as far as you can go in the Secret Service. You should take the Foreign Service exam. You can go higher there." So my dad took the Foreign Service exam and became a Foreign Service officer. But there was still a ceiling for Black people in the Foreign Service. But let me just finish, okay? So in Potomac, Maryland, my dad had a Mercedes. Second Black family in the area. My dad was getting pulled over in our own neighborhood. I was a teenager.
When was it?
What year?
We were there in 1971 through. I still own the house there, but I have another house where I live. 1971. He died in 2018. So between the more Black people started moving in, probably in the mid to late 80s. All right.
So a long ass time ago.
The cops thought my father walked into the neighborhood and drove out. So when I turned 16...
Again, there is a fundamental misunderstanding here because Daryl thinks that what happened when he grew up is no different than what's going on today. And that is fundamentally not true.
I got what all Black parents give their young boys. It's called the talk. Have you heard of the talk?
I had the talk too.
Okay, you had the talk.
Tell me about it.
Okay, the talk is what Black parents give their young boys, especially when they start driving. When you get pulled over by the police, even if the cop is wrong, do not argue with them. Just take the ticket, sign it. We'll go to court. We'll settle it in court because you can get shot.
But see, this is the issue I have with. I think what you're saying is racist. The idea that Black people exclusively do that, or it's predominant among Black people, when that's actually a normal thing most people do.
No.
So perhaps it's a class issue because all of my friends and myself had the exact same talk in the exact same way. I was told, no matter what happens, when you're pulled over, you turn the light on, you turn the car off, keys and wallet on the dashboard, hands on the steering wheel, you roll down the window and you don't move. You answer the officer's questions. You do not argue with him. Do you understand? Yes. Say it back to me.
I'm sorry, Tim, but you are 100% wrong.
So, okay? When it's just
no.
I think it's fair to say that you're older than I am. We agree on the racism of the past, and I absolutely agree. I completely agree.
We can agree on the racism of the past, but we can also talk about the racism of today.
And I agree a lot on it. What I don't agree with is that this, it's strange to me to hear the idea of the talk. Perhaps white suburban upper class WASPs don't do that, But growing up
No. See,
in the south side of Chicago, in mixed race areas, in gang territory,
I'm from Chicago. Anyway.
And you're from Midway?
Ever
I'm from
loving
Chicago, 500
God. This is nuts. Joshua says, yeah, I have children. They got to talk about how to handle being pulled over, how to avoid getting in a fight, etc. Thank you, Joshua, for the super chat.
He's 33rd, right on the south side.
Right, yeah, Midway. So I'm on 47th, 49th and Laramie. So I'm 2 blocks away from the LeClaire courts. I had the talk too. My friends all had the talk. Everyone had the talk. The talk existed among white kids, Polish kids, Mexican kids, Asian kids, and black kids.
I think the nuance is you have the talk for the inner city kid. What every inner city kid's going to get that talk, but you're saying in the suburbs, black kids get.
He's from the south side of Chicago, same as me.
But
different part of the south side.
Yeah, but also here in Potomac, Maryland, Lily White, Potomac, Maryland. Okay, now, sure enough, when I started driving, when I turned 16, I was getting pulled over in my own neighborhood. All right. I dated a woman in Luray, Virginia. Luray, Virginia is like, are you all familiar with Mayberry?
No.
Okay. There was a TV show called the Andy Griffith
Andy
Show.
Griffin, yeah.
Okay. And Mayberry was just, lily white town. Everybody knew everybody, real small town, no black people on the show. And, just super nice town. That is Luray, Virginia. You hear the Luray Caverns, etc. So I began dating a white woman down there. And within 2 weeks, the Luray City Police, who did not know me from Adam, everybody knows everybody down there, went to her house and told her that I was a drug dealer. And she said, why? Why would you say that? No, he's not. Because he drives a black Lincoln Town car with dark windows. That was their excuse. Okay.
Yes, and that's wrong, and that's racist, and it has nothing to do with what's going on today.
Right. So he told me I'm a criminal. He didn't bother to look into the background as to why these black people are in prison, more so than white people. Then he goes on to tell me that that black people are inherently lazy. We don't want to work. We want to scam the government welfare system. We always have our hands out for a freebie. All right. So now I'm sitting here. I've been called a criminal. I'm being told that I'm lazy. And then he tells me, and then I've heard this many times thereafter from other Klan people, that black people are born with a smaller brain than white people. And the larger the brain, the more capacity for intelligence. The smaller the brain, the lower the IQ.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
And he says that this is evidenced by the fact that year after year after year, black high school students score lower than white high school students on the SATs. Again, he is 100% correct. Black kids do score a lot lower than white kids on the SATs. All right. Now, the data shows that. So it enforces what he already believes about black inferiority. So he doesn't bother to look any further. But why is that? Well, where do most black kids go to school in this country? In the inner city. Where do most white kids go to school in this country? In the suburbs. It is a fact. Inner city schools are not as good as suburban schools. All right. There's not the opportunities. There's not the textbooks, the quality of teachers, etc. I can guarantee you, black kids who go to school in the suburbs can score just as high, if not higher, than some white kids. And white kids who go to school in the inner city can score just as low as some black kids, if not lower than others. It has nothing to do with the color of the student's skin or the size of his brain, but has everything to do with the educational system in which that child is enrolled.
I would also say I'm pretty sure the brain thing's just not true.
Of course it's not
ridiculous. True. But I find one of the things I find interesting is that the inner cities are all Democrat run and typically have been for generations. Chicago, for instance, I think for 80 years now or 100 years has been run strictly by Democrats who keep promising to solve these problems and never do. So for me, I was just like, these people are just lying about everything. And typically what they do just makes things worse. And then you look at the suburbs and they have a tendency to lean Republican, or at least they were for a while, till Trump came along, to be honest. And so I wonder why it is that the political party that keeps claiming, well, to be honest, not 100 years ago, but in the past 50 years, this is 60 years, this is the parties claiming to fight for the black community, but continually just things just get worse.
Okay.
I mean,
New York's a great example.
Yeah.
New York is Democrat. Sometimes there's a mayor who's Republican or independent, but it is overwhelmingly the biggest Democrat stronghold in the country. And it's where
It's
you
also
see
the biggest city
big
in
city
the country.
for sure. But it's where you get stop and frisk. It's where you get.
It seems to
the-
me
the
like Tim
complete
is trying to have a
disproportionate-
reasonable
cops will give a
conversation,
ticket to a
and
black guy
Daryl is
drinking a 40,
triggered.
but they'll not
Am I
to a
right
white
about
person
that?
drinking wine. I mean, these are liberal areas, not
Well,
conservative.
Tim is trying to have a reasonable conversation, and
why
Daryl
there's
is
a higher
triggered.
penalty for crack cocaine than regular cocaine, right?
Was it?
More addictive?
No, because more black people use crack cocaine because it's cheaper.
I wanted to ask you.
More poor people use crack cocaine.
In the past 18 years, have you ever been illegally pulled over with drugs planted in your car by the police?
No, not, illegally pulled over, yes. Drugs planted, no.
So why is it that I've had that happen to me and you didn't?
Luck.
Just it was. I mean,
Luck.
in the
Luck
past
of the
18
draw.
years. So
I thought I was going to have some plan at one time. My band and I were coming home from a gig, and we got pulled over, and the cops figured, there had to be drugs in the van because I have dark windows, so people can't see in and see the drum sets and the amplifiers and whatever else is in there, right? So he starts making us pull out all the amplifiers, and he's like looking in the back of the amps, looking in the drum kits, in the drum cases. He was not satisfied that there were no drugs there. He made us wait 30 minutes while he called the canine a patrol. Canine had to come, and we all had to get out of the van, sit on the damn side of the road while the dog runs through the van sniffing for drugs.
So
and he still didn't find any.
Daryl is not
Right?
at
The
all
dog didn't
interacting
find
with the
any.
point that Tim is
And
making.
so I figured, okay,
Here
this
is
guy's
what
not
is
gonna
going
give up.
on.
He's probably going to plan.
Daryl and Tim at this point are having two completely different conversations in which they're not really talking to each other. They're doing this. And I think it's more Daryl's fault than it is Tim, because I think that Tim is trying to guide the conversation in a certain direction, and Daryl just seems to be so triggered by the conversation that he's downright refusing to go where Tim is leading him to go. And I mean, I guess that's the choice you make when you go on a show, like whether or not you want to lead, like allow the host to lead the conversation. You know what this is? This is like a dance between the two of them where both of them are trying to lead. Daryl needs to relax and allow Tim to be the host of the show and to allow Tim to lead the conversation. Daryl right now is trying to lead and Tim is trying to lead, and they're going in two different directions. And it's more Daryl's fault than it is Tim's. I think Tim is trying, and I think Daryl is not.
Plans on the end there. He didn't, fortunately. And then he says, "Okay, you're free to go." And I say, "Well, why'd you go through all this?" And he says, "Oh, we're training the dog." That's bullshit.
When I was in 2012, I was in Chicago with a group of friends. And
yeah, this is correct, Dragonwater. Daryl isn't having a conversation. He's giving a lecture. That is exactly correct. Daryl is in no way, shape, or form engaging with the things that Tim is saying.
And we had been covering one of the protests there. At the end of the night, I think we had gotten some like Maxwell Street, because if you're from Chicago,
it's gone now.
It's gone?
Maxwell Street is gone, yes.
Oh, wow. Well, anyway, we got surrounded by about 12 vehicles, some unmarked. They pulled us out of the car at gunpoint and did basically what you described. They pulled us all out. They wrote down our credit card numbers, our IDs, our passports. They started banging on everything, trying to pop things in the car open. And then after about 10 minutes, another cop shows up and he points to me, and we're all in cuffs. Mm-hmm. And he makes a motion. The guy uncuffs me and he says, "Oh, sorry, you matched the description. You're no problem."
I got that all the time.
So they also had raided the apartment we were staying at. And then they also tried to get someone through what we believe was a criminal informant to plant drugs in our car, but I wouldn't let them. They kept trying.
I have literally complimented Tim throughout this entire podcast, except when he's overtly getting the definition of critical race theory wrong, in which I will call him out because he is smart enough to know better, which is still a compliment to Tim because I think that he is smart enough to know better. Tim is one of the few content creators on the internet that I think is smart enough to know better. I think most content creators are morons. So if I'm calling Tim out on something, it's because I'm actually giving him more credit than I give to other people. If people think I haven't been nice to Tim in the course of this conversation, I don't know what to tell you, man. I am not going to pander to people who like Tim just because you like him. If he says something wrong, I'm going to call him out. I'm going to say he's wrong. If he says something right, which I literally just did, like, you guys need to settle down, honestly.
And bring it to the car. And I told them, if you go anywhere near that apartment, the cops went in the apartment. This guy was like, I'm going to go inside real quick. I said, if you go in there, we're leaving. You're not coming with us. And he's like, but I need a ride. I'm like, if you go in there and you bring anything, you are not coming with us. We found out later through a series of text messages, a person that was dating one of the cops after getting criminally charged with something, surprise, surprise, was telling him to put Adderall in our car. We were then told that on the scanner,
I
they were
have
just
high
driving our
standards
vehicle
for
and looking
Tim,
us.
just like an Asian mother.
In the past 18 years, I don't really drive all that.
Exactly. Stephen, thank you for the super chat. Have you heard about how the New Deal was written by the KKK to increase crime and poverty in Black communities? If interested, I can link to an article. Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard about that, but I wouldn't mind seeing that article, Stephen. Thank you for the super chat.
Much anymore. Usually other people are driving. I tend not to drive. Other people drive. So I would say from like 18 to 25, when I was mostly driving, I had been pulled over illegally maybe 5 times. What I mean by illegally is I've been pulled over way more than that. But pulled over illegally is when there's no justification for it, and the cops would make something up. That was you were swerving. That was when they planted drugs on me. So the only reason I didn't go to jail when they planted drugs in my car was because first what they did was they pulled me over illegally and said,
I don't dislike
the guy
Tim.
says I was swerving, but
I think Tim is incredibly smart. I just think he's a little
pot,
irresponsible sometimes.
Which I wasn't.
I don't
because
dislike
I don't
him.
smoke. I don't have tattoos, and I barely drink. I mostly don't.
Everyone should have tattoos. Everyone should also drink. Well, maybe not everyone. That's an irresponsible thing of me to say. Dragon Water says, Karlyn, be careful. People might start believing you are Tim's mother. Tim is like 5 years younger than me. Let's not start any rumors. Tim is like not that much younger than me. Come on.
Drink. And so they out of the car. I say, okay, because I had the talk, hands on the steering wheel. I get out of the car. I keep my hands up. He immediately cuffs me, calls his partner. His partner shows up. First thing he does is go to my car and plants a nug of weed, takes it out within a few seconds and walks up to me holding it in his hand and says, what is that? And I said, I don't know. And he says, it's marijuana. And I said, is it yours? And he says, it was in your car. I said, no, it wasn't. And he said, confess that this was yours and this will all go easier on you. And I said, that's not mine. And he said, confess that it was yours or it's going to be worse. And I said, that's
now Tim
not
is
mine.
derailing, to be
And then
honest
he
with
makes
you.
a
Like, this
look,
story has
he walks
no
back to my
relevance.
car.
Like, he's
The
told
other
the
cops
story
are
a
asking me
million
bunch
times.
of questions. I very much am just not saying anything. I was about 19 at the time. The cop walks back out. Surprise, surprise. He
All
popped open the
right.
glove box.
Hang on. James is now the king of the chat. James can say whatever he wants for the rest of the day because he says I look like I'm in my early 30s. Thank you, James. I appreciate that. Everyone has to be extra nice to James now.
What did he find? A firefighter emblem. My dad was a firefighter. He said, who's a firefighter, kid? I said, my dad. The cop takes the cuffs off, go home. And they get in their car and they left. The only reason they didn't decide to charge me with possession illegally by planting drugs in my car was because they found out that my dad was a firefighter. And there's like, oh, can't do that. I wonder why it is I experienced that. I wonder why
I'm
it
41.
is that I experienced the cops.
41.
I wonder why it is that I was driving 10 miles under the limit on Lakeshore Drive in Chicago when I was exiting at Belmont Avenue, which is a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. And I get pulled over abruptly as I'm exiting. And the cop says, you were going 20 over. And I said, officer, I'm exiting. And he goes, tell it to a judge. And they suspended my license for that. I wonder why it is that I was driving to O'Hare Airport and I had a cop nearly rear end me. And so when I put on my signal to move over to the right lane, he immediately flips the lights on and said, you started speeding the moment I came up on you. And I said, you nearly rear-ended me. And he says, tell it to a judge. And so I end up losing my license for years. Why did that happen to me? Was it because my family was poor and we couldn't afford lawyers? Was it because my car was a piece of crap 1989 Mazda 323 with rust all over it? Was it because they saw me as a poor person? Was it because they were racist and they saw me and just happened to know what my race may have been? I honestly have no idea. I don't know why those things happen.
I don't doubt anything that you said. I've heard those stories before. Some of them have happened to me. I've not been yanked out of my car at gunpoint. I've seen guns before, okay, pointed at me, but not like that. Okay, I've not had anything planted in my car, but I've seen all those things happen, and I still to this day get pulled over a lot. Look up, okay, speaking of Chicago, you probably never heard of this guy, but look him up. John, Jon.
Oh yeah.
You know him?
Oh yeah, we know all
John
about
Birch.
it. I'm not saying racism isn't a real thing or that racism wasn't affecting you. I'm just saying what ignites me in this regard is when I'm told by someone that I've had it worse than you because of my race. And it's like, it may be that you've had it worse than me, but I don't know.
I'm not saying those things don't happen to you.
Well, sure, but okay? I don't know.
But this country is not only racist, but it's also based on a caste system.
Oh
Okay?
God, here we
where
go.
lighter skinned black
Here
people
we go.
get better jobs. All right. The darker skin you are, the worse off you are. All right. I'm darker than you are. That's a fact. We can't even argue that. Okay. You look at, for example, you watch the soap operas from the 80s and 70s or 90s, whatever. All right. Basically, they all were white. It was always a big deal when one of the soap opera people on General Hospital or whatever was going to have a date with a black girl, or some white woman.
Soap operas are not real life.
That black actor.
Soap operas are not real life. Stefano DiMera kidnapped Marlena and had her on a secret island.
Black actress.
Soap operas are not real life.
Received an Oscar for a leading role. Okay, is Halle Berry. Halle Berry is a very pretty girl. She's a very light-skinned.
Yes, and the first black woman to receive an Oscar was the woman who played Mammy in Gone with the Wind.
Say, Cicely Tyson.
And she was very dark-skinned,
and
it was a long time ago.
Actresses. All right, there is a caste system going on.
I agree with the caste system in a different way. I can't speak to the skin color, like the lighter skin. Like I wouldn't know.
Well, I mean, even during times of slavery, it was the lighter skinned blacks who got the jobs.
Hattie McDaniels, thank you.
Hattie McDaniels in Brazil.
Exactly.
Overt. It's overt.
Yes, it is.
Like,
I've been to Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo.
Yeah, is Sidney Poitier never existed?
They straight up
exactly.
Yes,
exactly.
Absolutely.
So there was
and India too.
There's a story. A friend of mine who is he's like half native, half European descendant, Portuguese. And he was saying that he once saw two black men fighting each other over who was blacker as like an insult to each other, because that's the culture they have. What I will say about the caste system, for me, I think a lot of this has to do, I think class is the big issue.
I love Gone with the Wind. Gone with the Wind is one of my favorite all-time movies, for real.
Your experiences
I've seen that movie like 87 times.
Much more racist eras, and mine is coming from an era when a lot of these laws are being sort of being taken away and stuff, or for whatever reason. But I know people who are rich because they're rich. I know people who sell garbage to other rich people for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like a piece of jewelry sold between rich people is a net profit of 50 grand for one person.
It's tax evasion, my friend.
Well, it's something. And I wonder why it is. I'm like, how do I know people who do so little of anything and they party in
Tim,
Switzerland,
you print money by talking on the internet. You make a metric fuck ton of money not doing
like,
stuff
well,
too.
Work is hard. I sell
you understand
jewelry,
exactly
I make about
how this works.
$500,000 a year, and I'm like, why are there jewelers in New York making $50,000 a year? Just by virtue
Tim
of
prints
being
money
in the
by
higher
talking
class,
on the internet. He's
they have
talking about
access
how
to
he doesn't
people with
understand
cash,
how
and
people
they
have
make bigger
easy
deals,
jobs and
which
make a
nets
lot
them
of
bigger
money.
percentages. So I certainly think
how much money does Tim's chicken cam make a day? Like $1,000, I heard.
I think, like many other countries don't. The U.S. affords the opportunity to figure out how to work within the system to manipulate.
Listen, the way that you make a lot of money not doing all that much work is first you have to believe you can make a lot of money not doing that much work. Okay? You have to try. This is why Elon Musk will never be poor in his life, because Elon Musk knows how to build wealth. I don't understand. Like Tim's chicken cam literally makes like $1,000 a day. And he's talking about how he doesn't know how people make money not doing that much work.
Build your way up to get out of these situations.
Okay. Back in the day, when black people were first, going to vote and all that kind of stuff, most black people were Republicans. Did you know that?
I mean, the first black congressman was Republican, I think, right?
You know why?
Why is that?
Why did blacks join well, first of all, the Dixiecrats, which became the Democrats and stuff.
Come up on the
mic. The Ku Klux Klan was created by that party. All right. So that was a racist party. Blacks gravitated towards Republicans because Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. And Lincoln was
and by the way, no shade on Tim for printing money. I think he's worked the secret to making a lot of money not working very hard is that you have to work really hard for a little while. Like
And then
overnight
in the
successes are never
1960s,
overnight successes.
a vehement
Like no
racist
shade on him for
named
that.
Gary
Like good for him.
Goldwater
Kudos. Like,
opposed the Civil
but to
Rights
say he
Act
doesn't
and all this
understand
other
it is
kind of
just
nonsense,
ironic.
and became pretty powerful. And blacks left the Republican Party and went to the Democratic Party, which became more liberal and more accepting. And more racists began joining the Republican Party. This is in the 1960s.
Oh my
right?
God.
And then
No, that's not what happened. I literally write about this in my book. That's not what happened. What happened is white people in the South started defecting from the Democratic Party in the 70s, and then as a way to counter that, Democrats, using Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, started painting every single person who defected from the Democratic Party a racist. That started in the 70s. Every single Republican candidate since the 70s has been called a racist for some reason or another. That was a strategy that started as a direct result of Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. That is what happened, Daryl.
it will flip back and forth from time to time, but that's how it modulated.
When they say that the party's flipped, it's because of Goldwater.
In the 60s, yes, yeah.
No,
I don't know if I would look at what's going on right now with Planned Parenthood and with the Democratic Party, that they flipped in any meaningful way. If they did, I know it's argued the right says they did and the left says they did, but I look at, as I mentioned, Chicago, which has been under Democrat, rule or whatever you want to call it for nearly 100 years. I think, I don't know what point.
So you were making an issue about Planned Parenthood, and you were telling me about Margaret Sanger.
Yeah.
You didn't finish.
Well, so she was a eugenicist.
Mm-hmm.
She believed only the good should procreate.
Mm-hmm.
She had a project that was called, see, I hate how YouTube does this, but I have no choice but to call it the N-word project. But it's not the slur, it was a slur.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal was to disseminate birth control and contraception and trying to convince them not to have kids for those reasons. Now, there's a debate on the quotes from this woman, because some of them are extremely egregious, and then the left claims they're not real quotes. So whatever, I'll leave that out of it, I suppose. But if the goal of Planned Parenthood, started by this woman, was to prevent Black people from having kids, and to this day, you mentioned the white population is decreasing, but the Black population is stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like her ideas to stop Black people from having babies worked. And now you can look at 2006 data I pulled up that Black women are 5 times more likely to have abortions than white women. And this is preventing Black families and children from growing up. It sounds like these racists, and the Planned Parenthood is overtly, defended by the Democratic Party, which was the party of racists. They are still enacting policies to hurt Black people.
When it comes to these like statistics, this is like Black crime, Black abortion, whatever. Say that there's a 5-to-1 ratio in the past.
What is Black crime?
Exactly.
Oh,
so in the
God,
past, let's
Ian.
say for every one white person that committed a murder, there were 5 Black people.
Don't
when
do
they add
it,
the numbers
Ian.
up. Then
Don't
what they
do
do is
it.
they project
What are
that
you
past
doing?
to the
No.
future. They'll say, so
Stop
therefore, Black
immediately.
people are 5 times more
Oh,
likely to commit murder.
God.
No. Then the cops are like, I got to look at every Black guy like he's 5 times more likely. And it's like we're creating a racist
Racial
projection.
profiling.
Yeah, just because it happened in the past doesn't mean it's gonna happen.
Well,
again.
I'll tell you a funny story out of New York.
Okay.
And then I want to go back to the point I was making. But there was a Black cop who went to Central Park and started giving tickets to white couples drinking wine. And he said public drinking is a citation
Unforced
in New York
error
City.
in 3,
And they got
2,
all bent out
1.
of shape and angry and started complaining. And they were like, we are having wine at our Central Park picnic. How dare you? And he said, white cops come to the Black neighborhoods and give young Black men tickets for drinking 40s on their own stoops. And you're mad at me
Cheesecake
because you
flavored
were
beer is
publicly
not
drinking
racist,
in a
Murphy's
park,
Pool. You're
and the city
racist.
admonished
Cheesecake
him,
flavored
and he
beer is
got in
the
trouble
best.
for it.
What are you
I'm like,
talking
that's
about? We can't be
remarkable
friends
bullshit.
anymore.
Get me swearing on the live show. But I wanted to go back to that point because I'm curious as to your reaction of, what we see out of Chicago, for instance. It's not improved. So I used to live, where I lived was 49th and Laramie. Are you familiar with the LeClaire courts?
No.
It's fascinating and horrifying at the same time.
You familiar with Marquette Park?
Oh, yeah.
And the history of Marquette Park?
Oh, God.
It depends on the history, I suppose.
God.
I don't know.
Marquette Park was originally very racist. Nothing but neo-Nazis and KKK people lived there. You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah.
The
American Nazi Party was headquartered there.
Wow. That wasn't that far away.
Right. It wasn't that long ago either.
Right. There's I live on 49th and Laramie. If you walk north 2 blocks, you get to 47th Street, which as soon as you crossed it, it was a hard racial segregation. Everybody who lived north of 47th was black. Everybody south was, for the most part, it was mostly white, like kind of redneck. You know, we had Stickney, the suburb, and so everyone there was kind of just like low income, you know, white people. And then you had Mexican, and
you should get some local. No, IPs are gross.
No, Polish. Okay. So
IPs are pissing contests for men to see how bitter they can go with beer.
We weren't
and
allowed to walk north of 47th because the police would detain us. They would say the only reason you're here is for drugs. Get in the car, and they would take us back. And so it was fascinating to me that there was this kind of soft enforcement of segregation. That there was two things happening.
Victor just offered to bring me up a drink.
People chose to racially segregate. People who moved to the area wanted to live near.
Guys, did you know that Tim is from Chicago? I had no idea that Tim is from inner city Chicago, the south side of Chicago. I had no idea.
Which it's actually not necessarily from that one point. There's obviously blockbusting and redlining before that. But then you'd end up with police doing profiling. They'd see you and say, "What are you doing here? Get out."
I have been exceptionally fair to Tim in this stream. Exceptionally fair to him.
Young girls.
I've actually been more on Tim's side than I have on anyone else's side.
Cross 47th, and they would say, "Young woman, you best not come here. You need to turn around right now."
Because they would be in trouble, the black people.
Well, no, because they were worried about what would happen to the white girls for coming into the black neighborhood. They were like, the segregation here, it was violent.
Back in the 60s, Martin Luther King himself said, Chicago was the most segregated city in this country.
I think that's still true.
I've had that pecan porter, and it is a quality beer. It is quality.
They destroyed the project housing. They just flattened it. Now it's
Rainy Green.
No, this was I don't know if this is specifically the LeClaire courts, because the LeClaire courts I think are a different. There's a bunch of project housing off of Cicero going all the way down to Central Avenue in Chicago, and I don't know if the entirety of that was called the LeClaire courts, but there's an area of it. But
well, than anything, we don't have a lot here that aren't local.
One day I decided to look at a Google map.
I'm not inclined for beer right now. I'm going to be drinking beer in about an hour and a half at Strange Brew in Manchester with Jeremy Kaufman and all the rest of the libertarians.
But all of the project housing was flattened, and they're
all right. Let's see. I might have to speed this up because I do have an event I need to get to a little bit later. But we're going to go for right now. Toffee Nut, tip my hat off to Karlyn. I don't know how she can sit through this. The cringe factor of that podcast was through the roof, dude. I'm having some feelings. I mostly think it's Daryl's fault. I do not think it is as much as Tim's fault. Tim is trying. He's doing his best. I'm going to speed this up a little bit just to hopefully get through a little bit more, because I do actually need to be somewhere in a little bit. And that's not speeding up. Where is the speeding up of the thing? Playback speed. There it is. Let's go 1.5 and see how this goes.
Empty fields with fences saying no trespassing.
Oh, now Tim sounds like a chipmunk. Excellent.
So, when people look at that and they see the self-segregation, and they see that it works, they think it's the only way. There's no way people can integrate. And this is not true. It's because of the racism that has been perpetrated and promulgated by this country. It works in other countries.
Oh my God.
I was living 10 years ahead of my time when I was overseas, living in integrated communities, going to integrated schools in the 1960s, not in my country, but overseas. Okay, I was living 10 years ahead of my time because 10 years later, there was diversity in my classrooms here. I know it can work. But when you don't travel, you're not exposed to different things. You think the world, everything around the world is the same way it is in your neighborhood. My favorite quote of all time.
Well, we're getting almost to 2 hours and 9 minutes, so we're getting there.
Mark Twain said, travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. And many of our people need a story on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime.
It's so true, man. I went to South America I was there for like five months or something, and I got a taste of what it felt like to be the other for the first time in my life. And I don't know if it was my race or just the fact that I looked different, but I was walking, people kept looking at me and watching me, and it was like unsettling. And I was like, wow, this is like what people in the United States maybe feel like when they feel like in the minority of the amount of people with a similar skin tone or something like. And it was just so eye-opening. And I think everyone's got to know. They got to know that feeling.
I want to go to super chats. We'll go a few minutes over because we went a few minutes over. It's Friday. But I'm going to try and just find the good core questions. And I apologize.
They're now getting to super chats. Everyone settle down.
The best questions we can. So smash the like button if you do like the show. I know a lot of people
mouth the like button, guys. Mouth the like button if you haven't already.
If you like the show and you appreciate the conversations we have, we appreciate it. You can support us at timcast.com. But I'll start with this one from Patriot, who said, I'll say it again. The state of Texas isn't who removed slave from textbooks. It was the Board of Education dominated by leftists. I don't think you can answer the statement. I do think it highlights one of the issues is that if you read a cursory story, it'll say in Texas they removed this word from the books, and then someone will say that's not true. It was the other side. How do we navigate when?
Okay, so I'm going to assume that whoever said that is probably correct. Okay, I don't live in Texas, so but the fact of the matter is, in the state of Texas, the word slave was removed from textbooks. But whether the state did it or whether the Board of Education did it, it was done in the state of Texas.
But it does matter who did it and why they did it.
Right. So
no, I'm talking about as far as my point goes. The state of Texas removed the word slave from textbooks in Texas public schools. Now, who did it?
You know what I especially appreciate about this show? How Lydia has said a grand total of nothing throughout the entire show. It's been great.
Board of Education, the state government, whoever, he's probably right. Okay, maybe it was the Board of Education, but it happened in the state of Texas. It didn't happen in California or Nevada or Maryland or New York or wherever.
No, but I think the point is that we agree. The issue is when you mentioned they put back enslaved people, I think that shows...
they replaced it with immigrant worker.
Oh, right.
And then there was an uproar in the Black community. How dare you, water down what happened to our ancestors? They were not immigrant workers. They were slaves.
So, but is it possible that
no, Lydia is there? She's just not saying anything. She's definitely there.
That it was removed and that it was actually removed by pro-critical race theory people. That's the situation. That's the situation. So I think that
like removing master and slave from a coding library, GitHub or whatever, they're getting rid of the word slave because it's defensive to Black people, and it's under the guise of progressivism and critical race theory. They're doing it.
You want to blame things.
All right, Jenny's getting inky with it. Says having boomers on the cast is helpful. It shows that we can't rely on the adults, boomers, to figure this stuff out for us. We have to do the work ourselves. There is no one with all the answers. Jenny, that is a really, really, really important statement that you just made. No one is coming to save us. If we don't understand what this is, what this monster is that we're fighting, then don't expect anyone to do it for you. Do not expect people who are older and have more experience to do it for you, because they obviously and completely are not. We have to do this ourselves. No one is coming to save us.
Things on Democrats, on Republicans, on critical race proponents. Listen, at the end of the day, you got to understand something. This country was built on racism. Racism still exists. When I was in elementary school, we had slave auctions. But you would never do that today.
They do it today. Progressive teachers. A progressive teacher just got fired for a white progressive teacher held a slave auction amongst his students. You meant like mocking schools, right?
Yeah. No.
We did a crazy.
No. Not mocking. Okay. Yeah. I think I read about that. I didn't read all into it.
Not mocking it. A mock as in they practiced.
Yeah.
And they shackled the Black
seventh grade.
Right. Exactly. They were demonstrating something. Okay. But I'm talking about they did it in my school. I participated in it. Okay. As a kid, it was a regular thing to raise money. For whatever school trip or whatever. We would have slave auctions where kids would bid on other kids. It wasn't like white kids bidding on Black kids. I could bid on some white kid or whatever. All right. And you paid 50 cents or whatever, and you bought that person, and that person had to carry your books around all day.
Well, that's not the same thing.
Yes, it is. It was called a slave auction.
No, I'm saying what I was referring to.
I know what you're referring to. You're referring to a reenactment of a slave auction.
God.
It was a practitioner of critical race praxis who segregated the kids by race and then made the Black kids wear shackles.
When I was in seventh grade in 1992, seventh grade Ohio, Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, we did this exercise in like social studies class where we were all plantation owners, they were called. And we had to either get slaves or indentured servants, and then there was a third type of worker that you would get. And you put these little stickers on your board, and everyone had their stickers, and you go around, you trade stickers with other people. So I just did the math, and I was like, well, this is cheaper than that, so I got all the indoctrination.
Okay.
And we weren't slave owners, we were called plantation owners.
Right. Lady named Jane Elliott.
I mean, like they do all sorts of weird things to raise money. Like would he consider like auctions where they auction off a date with someone, where someone can bid on someone to go on a date with them, and then they have to go sit with them and make small talk or whatever? Would he consider that offensive? Man.
Brown eye, blue eye. Y'all never heard of that experiment?
I think I may have heard of this.
Okay,
actually.
Jane Elliott, she's a friend of mine. She's still living, a lot older now. Back in the 1960s, she's a white lady. She took her class of white kids, and she separated all the brown eyes from all the blue eyes. I'm
kind of jealous you're at the Crawfish Festival, Savrats. I'm jealous. I'm going to go drink some beer in about an hour and a half.
And guess what? The brown-eyed people started acting. These little kids started acting superior. All right, and you would see this.
Yes, it's the Stanford prison experiment.
And the blue-eyed people were feeling inferior.
Daryl, you are literally describing the Stanford prison experiment. This has been proven over and over and over again. It has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with any of that. You're literally describing the Stanford prison experiment. If you don't know what the Stanford prison experiment is, look it up. There are movies. You can watch a movie about it. There have been many different variations of the movie made. There is actually a really good, newish movie that came out maybe 3-4 years ago called The Stanford Prison Experiment. That's exactly what Daryl's describing right now.
Superior and being oppressed. The next day she flipped it around. Oh, it's the blue-eyed people who are supposed to be superior, and the brown eyes who are inferior. And they learned more about racism from that. And if you watch interviews with those kids today as adults, they say, I wish my kids could experience that in school. Okay,
Let's-
Jane Elliott.
We'll read some more. The first thing I mention is Trock says, where's James Lindsay? Actually, if you'd be interested, I'd love to have James Lindsay knows more about this stuff than certainly I do. I think it'd be a fascinating conversation if you're interested.
Sure, invite me. I'll be happy to come back.
That'd be great. We should
love
absolutely. I think James is probably.
I'm always ready to learn.
James is going to be listening to this, going, Tim, no, what you're wrong. Oh, you've missed this point and this point and this point. And he's going to be saying things like that. All right, so Dragon.
I actually do not think that James Lindsay would be good to have a conversation on this, because what's going to happen is James Lindsay is going to go uber esoteric with the whole thing. Daryl is not going to understand any of it. Like, I love and adore James Lindsay, and I bow down to his glory and all of the work that he has done. James Lindsay does not understand this stuff from a practical perspective as much as he understands it from a theoretical academic literature perspective. And he does have a really hard time talking to normal people about this stuff because he's so in it. That's not a knock on James Lindsay. I think what James Lindsay's doing is critical. I understand why he's so in it, but there is a loss in translation between James Lindsay level understanding and normal person understanding. Get a pair with Sully says, I met Jane Elliott in high school. I was a lib in those days and I thought she was nuts. I'm an anarchist now since leaving the U.S. Marine Corps. I'm getting closer and closer towards anarchism every day. The libertarians in New Hampshire have radicalized me. Yes, I do believe Chris Rufo would be better. I do.
Stallion says, is that what it says? Dragon's Talon. Oh. Does your guest feel like black families who own slaves also need to pay reparations? John Kasser was the first lifelong slave in the U.S. owned by a black plantation owner, Anthony Johnson.
Do black families need to pay reparations?
Those who own slaves.
I didn't say any families need to pay reparations. I say the government needs to make those reparations. Okay, the people who own slaves are no longer here. I cannot fault you or you for what your great-great-grandparents did. All right, you need to know about it. You need to know it was wrong, but I'm not going to hold you accountable.
Lindsay
right?
is awesome. He is the best. He is critical.
Needs to make those reparations.
He is not as good at talking to normal people.
I know
we're not normal people.
From the United States who did have slaves.
We're not normal people.
Okay, no, I'm not going to hold their descendants responsible for sins of the father.
No, James Lindsay's the fucking king, man.
The government needs to make good on it.
But
they never have.
Listen, just in case there's any confusion about how much I love and adore James Lindsay, I literally have the entire last chapter of my book is called Be Like James Lindsay. Just so in case there's any confusion. He is the fucking king.
That was a straw man. That was a straw man of what Daryl said about reparations. That, it's possible to have a nuanced view about reparations that doesn't involve throwing money around, but does involve something like a major education overhaul. Like
absolutely.
Right. But hold on. I mean, 898,000 people gave their lives in this country to end slavery.
And what's your point?
I mean, you mentioned the Japanese. No one paid. The reason they get paid is because nobody gave their lives to stop it. It was wrong, and they stopped it. This country is the country that won against slavery, that sacrificed nearly 1 million of its children.
That's not why.
Slavery,
Stop spreading fake news. If you keep spreading fake news, I'm just going to ban you from the chat.
In the North,
that's not why. I literally explained this earlier. That's not why.
The Civil War was fought over slavery.
Yeah, I think local distance would be good too.
No.
Local's fucking great.
It was fought over states' rights. Yes, it was fought over states' rights. The state's right to own a slave. They don't put it that way, but that's what it was. It's the same thing. This country is still fighting the Civil War, my friend.
I agree.
Okay,
completely.
Why are they still flying Confederate battle flags? Even most young white people don't even realize.
They don't call it that down there.
I know.
They call it rebel flag.
I know, because they rebel against wanting to give up their slaves.
It's also the Civil War is also called the War of Northern Aggression.
Right, exactly.
And I've heard that Lincoln, it really was an economic war for Lincoln too. He couldn't let the states take all that money away from but he said the best way to rally people is to say it's about slavery. And then he also deep down wanted to end slavery. So he kind of tweaked the message. I've heard that. I don't know.
But they're still fighting that. Flying Confederate battle flags. Okay, the crossbar and stars that you all call the Confederate flag is not the flag of the Confederacy. That is a Confederate battle flag. That is the flag that flew in the Civil War to battle to maintain slavery. The flag of the Confederacy are the red and white stripes with the blue square with the circle of silver stars. That is the flag of the Confederacy. That crossbars and stars is the Confederate battle flag. But a lot of people want to call it the Confederate flag.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's true. I just looked it up.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so
we have. I was gonna say we have a. I don't know if you were done with your point. I was gonna read another comment.
Okay, good.
So we have a few that are bringing up French people owned and sold slaves in Haiti. And Mark says, this man has never heard of French colonies or French Africa. Ask what happened when French African soldiers were brought to Europe in World War I. The accusations made towards them, racism is the unknown.
Okay, let me correct that man right there. I hope you're listening. Listen, son, I lived in French West Africa.
Oh, God, he is
6
so
years.
condescending.
I lived in Senegal, both which were colonized by the French. So yes, I do know about French colonies.
You didn't answer the question.
I'll try to find another one.
You didn't answer the question. That was not an answer to the question.
1900s and before that too. It was just a race to colonize and enslave the entire continent.
So Karlyn Burke says, one of the bigger problems with reparations, that more than 80% of even white people moved to the U.S. much later after slavery, and half near the end of Jim Crow. So do you call them ancestors or?
You call them, listen, like I said, I'll go back to my point. Whether you moved here yesterday or whether you moved here 500 years ago, Nobody is still living today who owned any slaves. All right. So I'm not faulting the descendants of slave owners. I am not faulting people who came here yesterday. I am faulting the U.S. government for not doing what they were supposed to do. They gave Japanese Americans reparations. They gave Native Americans reparations. They promised Black people 40 acres and a mule and have done nothing. They haven't even apologized. That's what I'm holding accountable. The majority. Do you know what without looking it up? Do you know who makes up the majority of white Americans in this country? Of what descent?
Irish. No,
no,
that's my guess.
No, German Americans are the largest white majority, followed by British Americans.
Oh yeah,
I'm German. Well, I'm American, but
yeah,
some drunk boxer was German in my history.
So. I think Daryl's like envisioning of reparations is actually much more moderate than people might think. In terms of
Bruce is making a good point. I think like Daryl is trying to he's trying to be like the sage that's like holding court to teach all these young whippersnappers the way. And the problem with that is that Daryl does not understand what is currently going on. And again, that's no shade to him for his past efforts. But I really think that Daryl has checked out of what is actually going on. But he doesn't realize that, and that's part of why this is frustrating. Because if you're watching this and you understand what is actually going on, then he seems really and grossly out of touch.
It seems like that's what you're getting at, Daryl. Like you're not necessarily like people like to have different definitions of what reparations are, and you're more so saying you just want clear acknowledgement, which you think.
Well, no, I want an apology, and I think people who have been disenfranchised, held back, and things like that should get something. I'm not saying throw money to them. I'm saying there should be government vouchers for education, for college tuitions, things like that. That we were denied in the past. Well, even after slavery, we couldn't go to Princeton. We couldn't go wherever.
So you're saying based on race?
Based on race.
So what happens in, say, the mixed race areas of Southside Chicago when all of a sudden half the people get vouchers and the other half don't? They're all in the same neighborhood, same economic status.
If you are the descendants of slaves, you should be entitled to that. Okay, like if you are the descendants of Native Americans, you got 1/8 or 1/16 of Native American blood in you, you can get something. If you are a survivor of the internment camps, or your descendants are of the Japanese internment camps, you can get something. Okay, so descendants of slaves should be entitled to what they were promised and they never received. Just like the courts awarded the survivors of the Tulsa race massacre and their descendants something, and to this day they haven't got it.
So my question was, what do you think would happen to the mixed race neighborhoods when only half the people get vouchers, get some kind of benefit or resource?
Nothing would happen. Why would anything happen?
What are you talking about? That makes no sense.
They're not entitled to it. Should
I suppose it's like
Daryl has some narcissistic tendencies. Yeah.
Okay, he looks the same as I do, but he's not entitled to what I
don't know that I would call it narcissistic.
His ancestors didn't go through that. Okay, so it's just like somebody comes over from Japan.
I don't know if I would call it that. I can't put my finger on what I would call it.
To the survivors and descendants of the people from the Japanese internment camps. No.
Let's say somebody is the descendant of a man and woman come from Afghanistan with a child after their country was completely just destroyed, and that kid is living in poverty in a neighborhood, and then all of a sudden the government comes in and hands out checks based on race that they're not entitled to, and they say, well, your oppression doesn't count because we're only talking about other oppression. The issue I have with race-based distribution of resources, one, the resource has to be paid for by somebody. The government doesn't have money. The government taxes the people, and then it uses the people's resources to distribute where it wants to. I think the problem is if we use race-based programs to give people money, it's just still racial segregation.
Why is it, Tim, that you haven't said anything about that as far as Japanese people go? Okay, they're still getting. They're still entitled to money, and
but I did.
Yeah, hold on. They can still get money. Yeah. Native Americans to this day can still get money. Okay, how come I can't get money? Okay, not that I'm going to go look for it or whatever. Okay, we have been denied it. So you're okay with this group getting it. You're okay with that group getting it. But now when it comes to Black people, now you come up with all these excuses about so and so died in the war. Isn't that enough? Or no, they should not get money because this person isn't getting money.
No, I didn't say it was okay that we're giving people money based on race. I think it's wrong to get. I literally said it was wrong to distribute
No. Listen, I'm not saying give people money based on race.
This is so frustrating to watch. I feel like you were watching them go like this, and Tim is trying. He's trying, and Daryl is just not interacting.
Are they entitled to it?
I would say so, yeah.
So you'll end up seeing a lot of white people get those vouchers.
Huh?
You'll end up with a lot of white people getting those vouchers.
There weren't that many white people who were enslaved.
No, but there are white people who are the descendants of slaves. Like if there was a Black slave who found themselves in an interracial relationship, and now this person is 1/64 Black or 1/8 or one. I mean, there are people who a famous actor, I'm not gonna use their name, who is I think 1/8 Black, and no one realizes it because he just looked like a white guy, but he'd get one of these checks, and he's a rich white dude.
That makes sense. In order to be consistent, it would have to be like that.
Yeah, the rich white guy gets his check too.
To truly repair the system, if the idea is reparation, which means to repair, then I don't think haphazardly handing money at people, but we need to build holistic systems that lift everyone up together, like decentralized technology. And I'm not going to derail guys into that. Don't worry about it. But I feel like when you can do things that everyone benefits from, clean water supplies,
Ian, you can't help but derail. I'm sorry.
Stuff like that. Then everyone has an opportunity to better themselves. You can't throw $80,000.
Strawberry flavored beer is not xenophobic, Murphy's Pool.
should
That
get
is
money from the government.
incorrect.
I just don't understand it.
You're
If
the
he-
one that
if-
wants
if
me to
Will Smith's
mix
family
pink
were descendants of
Moscato
slaves,
with
yeah.
vodka,
I do.
okay?
And I think
You
so
are
should
not
my
opposed to
family.
pink
We
drinks.
should receive something for the crime that was perpetrated upon us that split my family apart. My ancestors were you know, we don't have nuclear families. Okay, well, your name is Tim Pool. Where does that name come from?
It's fake.
Okay, well then I
So
want to
it's
know what your real name is.
the lore of my family is that they were bandits who created a fake name after getting into a train robbery that murdered somebody.
Okay, so
That's
so,
awesome.
okay, so all right, so we won't go there. All right, so Mr. Ottman here, okay,
Riverman.
Riverman, okay, Riverman Ottman. Where does the name Ottman come from?
I actually, well, I can tell you one interesting lineage fact. I'm actually, so my mother's name is Ball, middle name, maiden name Ball, George Washington's mother, Mary Ball. So I'm actually, George Washington is my direct cousin, 7 generations removed. So
Rufus
that is what it
Putnam's
is.
brother.
It's a British, Ball is a British name.
Yeah, but I'm
Okay,
a
so
mutt.
now,
I'm a mutt of all of
whatever. Okay, so this man right here can go to Britain and find some balls and find some people, some balls who are related.
Oh, you know he will.
We're kids, we're children. We're all
Lots of
laughing.
them. There's a lot of them out there.
I'm sure there are.
Oh, Lydia
I gotta
speaks
go.
up
Now,
for the first time in hours.
He can go there and find some balls that he is distantly related to. All right. My name is Davis. Do you know where the name Davis comes from?
Jefferson Davis. I have no idea.
Okay. Davis is a Welsh name. All right. Do I look Welsh to you? No. Okay. The name, okay, slaves took the names of their plantation owners, their owners, okay? Because the plantation owners could not pronounce their real names, number one. All right. So, you know, the name Davis came from the Davis plantation in North Carolina. All right. Now, if they did not like their plantation owner, and most of them didn't, they took names, when slaves were freed, they took names of people that they did like, or people who had higher positions, like presidents.
Or Freeman, right?
And freemen. Okay. Now, most people that you find,
I've
that you
had
see today
banana bread
who are
beer. It's
named
okay.
Jefferson,
It's
or who are
okay.
named Washington,
It's
or who are named
legit.
Lincoln,
I've
are
had it
mostly black
before.
people. Yes, there are some white Jeffersons. You know, if you white people
I
named
haven't
Washington,
seen it
I'll
around in a
guarantee
while,
you, 9
actually.
out of 10 people you meet with the last name of Washington or Jefferson is going to be a black person. Okay, and they took that name because their names were stripped from them. All right, their mothers and fathers were. We didn't have nuclear families. Okay, I cannot. You know, I lived in West Africa. I lived in Senegal, where Gorée Island is. Gorée Island was where the slaves came from.
Oh my God, I cannot even. I can't. Mr. Scott J, thank you for the super chat. Watch the Michael Woods podcast, Changing Minds interview with Daryl about crime in Black community. Woods was so esoteric. Daryl went off the rails. It's a little bit. I mean, listen, man. Like what this teaches us is that people have multiple sides of themselves. I don't want to discount any of the work that Daryl has done. Daryl is a very successful musician. Daryl has de-radicalized hundreds of people from extremist ideologies. You don't want to discount any of that. But what we're seeing in this podcast is a very real kind of illustration of the fact that all idols have clay feet, man. People have multiple sides of themselves. We can have the empathetic side, the kind side. We can also have the dickish side. We can also have the shadow side. I mean, it's just like people are multifaceted, and you should never. Your idols will always disappoint you in some aspect or another, because guess what? They're all human beings, and they are all imperfect. They are all imperfect. But I think, you know, as we're watching this, and as some of us are starting to get like more and more frustrated with the tenor of this conversation, like I don't think, like, try to, like, if your expectation is that your idols are always going to say exactly the right thing in exactly in any given circumstance, I promise you they will always and forever disappoint you, because they are human beings first and they are idols second. And try to be forgiving when it happens, because even if they screw up and say things that sound very boomerish and out of touch, that does not discount any of the good things that they've done. It's just showing you multiple sides of themselves.
They were locked up and chained in Gorée Island, put on the boat. All right, I've been to Gorée Island. I've seen those slave quarters. All right, I cannot go to Senegal or West Africa and find somebody named Davis. I can go to Wales. I played in Wales with my band, okay? And just for fun, I said, anybody out there named Davis? Half the people started screaming. The name Davis in Wales is as popular as the name Smith is over here. So I'm like, hey, cuz, how y'all doing out there? You know? So we were stripped of our identity. We can't get that back. But we are owed something for the crimes perpetrated upon us.
I'm gonna read some critical ones. I think some of them were already critical, but this one's just overtly critical. Ellie Opla says, this conversation has been really effing disappointing. Daryl's antics today have done more to radicalize me than de-radicalize me.
Well, apparently he's already radicalized.
I think that it's undeniable that this is exactly the type of conversation that needs to happen. And the fact that, you know, Tim, you're getting, like, I saw the SPLC thing coming out, like for them to accuse your show.
Oh yeah, that SPLC thing on Tim is bullshit. That's ridiculous. I'm going to cover that on F.News
well, that's
tomorrow.
why the smear was like, he gets bad super chats sometimes. And it's just like, the Southern Poverty Law Center tried
They don't like me either.
Yeah.
You know, did you ever see my documentary, Accidental Courtesy?
No.
Oh, you should check it out.
I know.
I'm going to be covering the SPLC thing on tomorrow's stream at 5 p.m. We do Effed Up News on Sundays. I think that's incredibly fucked up what they did to him. Incredibly screwed. So for everyone saying that I'm just a Tim hater, I am not. I am actually completely on his side in the SPLC thing. Murphy's Pool, thank you for the super sticker. We're still best friends, Murphy's Pool. It's okay, even though you don't like my beer, that's fine. HGTH Productions, I've watched enough of your videos now. It's time I pitch in. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Guys, if you're enjoying the stream so far, please mount that like button for me. I do produce daily content, whether it's on this channel or my second channel, Actively Unwoke, or on Odyssey or Rockfin or Rumble or in my locals. So if you're enjoying this, I do content every single day, pretty much of the week. If I'm not doing content live, I'm doing clips and stuff like that. So make sure you're subscribed if you have not subscribed. If you think you're subscribed, just do a double check for me because YouTube unsubscribes hundreds of people from my channel literally every night. It's super fun. Yep, mount that like button because we don't smash on this channel. We mount on this channel.
That there are a lot of people on the left who don't like you.
Yeah.
And I think it might be because you've actually helped to de-radicalize people. I think these nonprofits that make money off racism don't want racism to go away. Here's what I think. I think there's a generational difference between us. We've talked to a couple other boomers, you know,
Tim is correct
in the past, and
yes,
it seems like
that is correct.
the way we consume as millennials and younger information.
You should ask that guy, why is he radicalized in the first place? I'd be interested in his response.
Well, it's because when you look at the older generation, it seems like they've abandoned millennials. That's how it feels, I think, to a lot of millennials. We recently had a guest who said feminists are not pro-war. And it's like, here we are as millennials online talking to millennials.
Yeah, join the
feminist millennials are
Mises
all
Caucus and the Free State Project. Yes, I'm going to an event with the Libertarians in about an hour. So we're going to have to wrap the stream up in about an hour. Because I've got an event to go to for Jeremy Kauffman for Senate in New Hampshire at Strange Brew in Manchester. If you are in New Hampshire and would like to come out and have some beers with libertarians, specifically Jeremy Kauffman, head over to Strange Brew. We're getting started at about 6 o'clock tonight. I have to go a little earlier because reasons. But it's going to be started about 6 o'clock tonight. It's going to be great. I haven't been to Strange Brew in about 3 years, so I'm really looking forward to it. Great beer selection. Great beer.
The Ukrainian flags, defending intervention, defending NATO's intervention, and we're like, we don't want this. The boomers in their world is completely different. Little stink bug.
Yeah.
So I think for a lot of people, it feels like when we hear from the older generation, they're detached from the world we live in, and they don't understand what we're experiencing. And so,
frustration.
Frustration.
It's funny because you say that, but I can say the same thing. Being the older generation from you guys, you have no clue what we went through.
Yeah, I feel like what's happening is you're exposing a sort of truth, a perspective truth. And I'm reading this Galileo quote, the truth. All truth passes through 3 stages. First, it's ridiculed. You'll see that in the super chats. Second, it's violently opposed. Usually you see that in the super chats. Then it's accepted as being self-evident.
Okay, so let me tell you about Galileo. And I'll tell you about, but before Galileo, his mentor, his person that he looked up to.
I am the chaotic ANCAP of the LP Minnesota Mecox Free. Yes, you guys are doing good, huh?
The Earth
that who's in Minnesota? Okay? That high school kid, David.
Heliocentric.
He's in Minnesota.
The world said no because we were.
Are you coming to Reno? I'll be in Reno in a couple weeks because I'm a New Hampshire delegate.
A heretic, and they locked him up in prison for saying that. Guess what? He was right. 100 years later, Galileo comes along, and he had studied Copernicus, and Galileo came to the same conclusion that we are not geocentric, we are heliocentric. All right, and the Earth revolves around the sun. All right, they called him a heretic, but guess what? Galileo was right.
I want to read the super
chat.
What
is he talking
about? Funky Fry says, I think my great-great-grandpa who was blown apart to free the slaves was payment enough, especially considering I or no one in my family has ever owned slaves. So there's a couple of questions I get out of this is interesting. So if this man is telling the truth and his ancestor died to end slavery and his family never owned slaves, if we do reparations, should we also create an exception that anybody who is not descendant of slave owners is exempt from the tax that would fund the reparations?
Anybody who is not a descendant of slaves
would have a tax credit exemption from any taxes that would go towards reparations.
I'd have to think about that. But it doesn't matter. I'm not saying it doesn't matter that his ancestors died.
That's a good question.
Fighting in the Civil War.
That's a good question.
You go and you fight for your country.
I'll try to do national delegation next time. Well, we'll hold it down for you this time, Sully.
That was his choice to go there and fight. All right. So
taking over the party in a couple weeks.
I don't think so. Okay.
It's gonna be rad.
We fought against Japan. Do these people still get reparations? Why is it cut off when when black people don't get any reparations, black people who are descendants of slaves. That is the racism, and I'm calling that.
Daryl, you have
racist.
literally said the same
Why is he
thing
racist?
about
Why is he
15
racist? Because
fucking
he does not
times.
see the racism that was perpetrated by his country against people like me and my ancestors. Thank you for your great grandfather's service for fighting in the Civil War against slavery. But if you can't see that black people in this country have not received the same apology for one and the same reparations for another that Japanese Americans have received and that Native Americans have received, something is wrong. You're blind.
I don't think he's saying that. I think he's just saying that for you to say that he should pay.
I didn't say he
Matthew,
should pay. What did I say?
agree.
I said the government should pay.
But the
I
government
agree
takes
with
money from
this.
him.
Listen, we all pay taxes.
Right. So if we all pool our money together for, say, the common defense and services, and then you step up and say, I want to take from that pool because of reparations, he says, okay, well, hold on, my family member died for you. Is that enough? You say, no, you're a racist. I think that's.
I mean, you also just because you're anti-reparations does not mean that you're racist. There are many black people who are not.
He didn't say anything.
No, I'm not talking about him. I'm saying
for you to call him a racist when he's simply saying, don't take from me.
I'm not taking from him.
I don't think you can call someone a racist over
listen,
like
that. I'm calling him a racist.
But you don't know him, Daryl.
I'm calling him a racist, and I'm standing behind what I say. And listen, we all have to
What?
pay taxes. When you drive down the road, you are not allowed to use.
Pro tip: if you are on a highly watched show on the internet, it might be best to not call the audience racist. Pro tip: I imagine that this is about to go exceedingly well with Daryl calling the audience racist. Let's watch what happens now.
The HOV lane if you don't have 2 people in your car, or HOV 3 people in your car. If you're riding by yourself and you drive down that lane, you will get a ticket if a cop sees you. All right, I've done that. I've gotten a ticket. All right, not because I'm black, but because I was driving down the HOV lane with one person, me, in the car. All right, guess what? I pay taxes, and my taxes built that road.
What if he said,
why can't I use that lane?
Can he get reparations for his great grandfather dying? Should the government pay him for the loss of his grandfather?
Right now, I'm talking about black descendants of slaves. Okay, now if he wants to get reparations from the government because his great grandfather died, that's his fight. Convince me, and I will stand behind him.
Would you think that if he went to the government and said, I should, and the government said yes, and they took tax money and gave it to him, tax money that you pay, would you be okay with that?
Not if I'm not getting any reparations, no.
Well, then why should he, after his great-grandfather died, think that he should get his tax?
You're missing the point.
Well,
because when it comes to giving black people something, you all are saying, no, cut it off here.
No,
Stop here.
That's not what any of them are saying.
You've already acknowledged
that's
Japanese
not true.
Americans
That's not what they're saying.
Native Americans are getting it. So what is the problem?
I said it was wrong.
Well, whether you say it's wrong or not.
I said racial disbursement of money.
Hold on. Whether you say it's wrong or not, it's happening. What are you doing to stop it?
I do a show where I say it's wrong.
Oh, that's not stopping it, is it?
I mean, I vote. It
Oh
inspires other
my
people to vote.
fucking
There's
God.
an influential impact on people, sharing ideas.
Well,
we allow people
the
to
point
talk
is,
to us.
Daryl, Tim has literally given you a massive audience. He has given you a massive audience. This is the height of ungratefulness. What has Tim done? He has given you a massive audience with which to say exactly what you want to say. He has given you a gift. Tim can't change everything on his own. No single person can change everything on their own. Tim has talked about Daryl. I mean, I haven't even barely watched Tim in about a year and a half, and I even remember that Tim used to talk about him all the fucking time. Are you shitting me? This is the height of there are very few things that piss me off more than absolute lack of gratitude. Oh my God. Let me see. I'm just waiting for the super chat to come in. There it is. Your pal. This part irritated me the most. It's like citizenship, freedom, liberty, soldiers dying for you were not enough. How about a thank you? The Union was under no obligation to end slavery. I mean, listen, like I agree with that, but it's also like we can't live in the past. This is why my stuff is so focused on what's going on right now and why, like, how these things are being implemented right now, because there is absolutely nothing we can do to change the past. All we can do is change the way we move forward. And if you're constantly going to be bitching and complaining about the past and complaining that people aren't doing enough, it's like people can only do so much, man. Daryl, you were given a massive platform with which to make your point. That was a gift that he gave you that he didn't have to. My God.
Once everybody should the people who
first of all,
should the descendants of the Tulsa race riot, the Black Wall Street descendants, should they get reparations?
From the people who committed the atrocities, maybe people in that.
The people who committed the atrocities are dead.
So then, what do? Do you punish the living, the sins of the father? See, the issue I have with this is that
did I say punish? What did I say?
Well,
I said specifically the sins of the father.
Who is paying for it?
Based for Life says there are currently 306,000 views of this stream. That is a massive platform. You're going to tell me he isn't doing anything? Listen, man, I have my issues with Tim. I've said some of those issues on this show, but I will not take anything away from him in terms of the audience that he's built, the platform that he gives to people. And if you aren't going to be appreciative of that, if you're going to look him in the eye on his own fucking show and tell him he's not doing enough, Tim Pool killed himself to build what he built now. No one can take anything away from what this guy has built on his own. That was like that pisses me off. Daryl, what Tim just did, or excuse me, what Daryl just did to Tim, it felt like Daryl was spitting in Tim's face when Tim has been incredibly gracious throughout this entire conversation.
Who takes
The U.S. government pays for it, whether it comes out of your taxes or whether it comes out of their Fort Knox or wherever it comes from. The U.S. government pays for
It
it.
would be the Federal Reserve. They'd print a bunch of money and then it would cause inflation.
Right.
That's, I think, why they haven't done it.
Yeah, well, you know what? Why didn't people think about that before when they were murdering Indians and murdering?
But those things are all bad. Like,
but
they
the
should never
point is, you keep driving home. This is where I draw the line. You know what you're saying, Tim, is racist, whether you are or whether you're not.
Did he just call Tim a racist?
I don't care. My point is, when it comes to uplifting black people,
what
the line
the
is drawn.
fuck?
Nobody said that.
Did I say anybody said it?
You said we all did. Several times.
I said what you're saying is wrong. I said when it comes to uplifting black people, the line is drawn. When it comes to uplifting this person, that person, it's already been done.
I wasn't alive.
Done.
I wasn't
It
alive.
doesn't matter whether you were alive or not. It happened.
So I wasn't alive when they interned Japanese people.
Oh my
family actually
God.
suffered because I come from an Asian background and they were spit on and treated horribly.
No doubt.
And the only thing I can say is that I was born into a world with problems and we advocate for solving those problems. But I don't think that racial policies solve those problems. I think that's what we're fighting against.
Yeah,
we're fighting against the government creating racial segregation because we want people to come together and live together and work together. And so what we end up seeing is
okay. So how do people come together when this person has $10 and that one only has 50 cents, and this one keeps getting $10 and that one only gets 50
this is
cents?
why I said I think it's a problem that they disperse money based on race. I wasn't alive when they
I
started.
didn't say disperse money based on race. I said disperse money based upon those people who suffered from crime due to racism.
Okay, but that means white people, a lot of white people
committed those crimes.
No, they'll get the money. A lot of white people who are overtly white with blonde hair and blue eyes still have slave ancestors. I'm not saying millions.
Then fine.
But I just don't agree with giving.
Do you guys have any question about why I don't get involved with the shit show of the internet anymore? Why I just do my own thing and I work with people in my own way and I don't get involved in any of this nonsense? Because it always turns into an epic shit show every single time. And it is completely counterproductive to actually changing things.
White people reparations.
No, you want to give people opportunity, not money. Money could be part of it.
Did I say money?
No, you said it doesn't have to be money.
Resources. The idea that we're going to try and you're going to see some, rich white family who's like, actually one of our ancestors was a slave. We're 164th, and that person was a part of our family. And then all of a sudden, this
I don't have the patience for this. I don't
that's
have
what I want to
it.
avoid. I think that the only way to do is uplift everyone together. I think if you can create software or some sort of technology that allows people with or without money to create a business, to start their own entrepreneurial ship and get subscriptions from people, then you're uplifting everyone. Because a lot of times it's the poor that are suffering right now. It's like you said, you wouldn't take money if there was a system like this where they're handing out checks, or you just said earlier you wouldn't. I don't know, because you don't need it. But these people that need it, they need opportunity.
Well, what about tax credits? What about like a tax break or something like that?
There are many different things that can be given in lieu of money. Maybe a tax credit, maybe a tuition. I'd have to think that through, or have other people who have more intelligence than I do think it through. All right, but something needs to be done, and nothing has been done for the descendants of slaves. That is my point. Okay, something has been done for the descendants of Native Americans. Something has been done for the descendants of Japanese Americans. But when it comes to people who look like me, the line is drawn. We have never even received an apology for slavery. Telling me slavery is wrong, well, shit. So what? Okay, yeah, it's wrong. But telling me,
I'm sorry, Daryl. Has that changed anything? Did that apology just change anything? No, it changed nothing. We could talk about the fact that Donald Trump was the only president, not Barack Obama. Donald Trump was the only president to permanently fund historically black colleges and universities. He did that without even, they used to have to go back to the government every couple of years to ask for funding. Donald Trump was like, no, you guys don't have to keep coming back. Donald fucking Trump did that. This is exactly what Daryl is talking about. Daryl has said on multiple occasions that he would like the government to invest in college education for the descendants of slaves. Fine. Donald Trump literally permanently funded historically black colleges and universities, and Daryl has called Donald Trump and his supporters racist in this very podcast. Daryl is not keeping up with what's going on in the world. That is the problem. That is the problem. He thinks he knows what's going on, and he does not know what is going on. And he is not, I think he's moved on from trying to actually like bring people together or like sorting over these things. I don't know what he's doing now, man, but like this is not it. This is not it at all. And no apology, let's be honest, no apology will ever be good enough. It will always be something else, and then they'll want something more, and then they'll want something more after that. That is exactly what the woke do. Sorry, I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting really annoyed, obviously. And in this case, I'm not annoyed at Tim. I am annoyed at Daryl.
We're sorry it happened is a whole different thing.
Is affirmative action something to assist in this way? It's overtly
He's
race-based.
woke. Daryl is
Affirmative
fucking
action
woke.
has many different definitions, just like critical race theory.
No, it doesn't, Daryl.
Affirmative action. I do not believe in lowering the bar of standards. I believe in keeping the bar up and people aspire.
Sorry,
to
I
hit
shouldn't
that
be
bar,
yelling.
not
I
lower
shouldn't
the
be
bar so
yelling.
people
I'll
can
try to
reach it.
not yell as
Keep it
much.
up. I believe in affirmative education, where everybody has the opportunity to better themselves and go out and get better jobs. Okay, as you mentioned, give people opportunities. They don't have the opportunities if they're not educated.
When I think about,
And even those people who are educated, like myself, okay, I still experience discrimination when it comes to jobs.
yeah, people need to learn how to run their own business as a young kid, regardless of where they go to school or their age or any of that stuff. People need to learn that stuff.
Yes,
when I think about apologizing
agreed.
for slavery, I have a hard
I
time
agree with that.
doing it for real because it's horrible. Like to enslave humans is horrific. The Uyghurs in China, it's horrific that this computer was made by slaves in part. But like, if it hadn't happened the way it
What
happened,
the
we wouldn't
fuck?
be here. And that I like that we're here.
Ian was literally like, it's horrific that slaves made my fancy computer. Don't buy the computer if you think it's horrific, dude.
So I wouldn't change it. I mean, maybe if I could go back and say, no, it wasn't a slavery. Maybe it would have been conquered by, the Mexicans or the Portuguese or like, who knows where we'd be. So that's why I have a hard time just outright giving like a genuine, like, I'm sorry it happened because it didn't happen to you. So I want to apologize to, if I saw somebody, I don't know, man.
All right, let me give you an example of something, okay? True story. I was giving a lecture at Michigan State University some years ago in Lansing, Michigan, all right? And this white girl, we're talking about apologies and stuff. And she says, why should we apologize? Now, she was not a racist, okay? What she was saying was racist, but she was not a racist. I could see that. She's like, why should we apologize? I mean, I wasn't around when slavery was happening. Nobody in my family owned slaves. Why should I apologize for what my great ancestors did? I wasn't responsible for that. And I said, the apology is symbolic. Nobody is around, all right? Just like, you give medals posthumously. It's symbolic, all right? People cannot move forward until they have received an apology for wrongdoing to them. And I said to her, I said, listen, it was in November when I was lecturing out there. I said, okay, let's say I'm a student here at Michigan State. I said, and I live in the dorm, and I live, on the East Coast. You live here in Michigan, and you said, and you and I are friends, and you say to me, hey, are you going home for Thanksgiving? And I say, no, I can't afford to go home for Thanksgiving. I'm going to save my money and go home for Christmas vacation. Okay, and then you tell me, oh, well, my grandparents told me, if I wanted to, I could ask some of my students, who weren't going home if they want to come over for Thanksgiving dinner. Would you like to come? And I said, sure. Okay, so now I'm invited to her grandparents for Thanksgiving. So she comes by my dormitory, picks me up, takes me over to her grandparents' house, along with some other students. Now, let's say her grandfather didn't realize that she was going to bring a black student home. This guy's a little older. He makes some racist remarks or whatever that offends me. I said to her, what are you going to say to me on the way back to the dorm? And she said, I'm going to say, I'm sorry about what my grandfather said. I said, but you know what? You didn't make that remark. Your grandfather did. You are apologizing for your ancestor. I said, I can't change how your grandfather feels. Okay, but I appreciate the fact that you acknowledge that it's wrong and you say you're sorry for it.
A real apology would be to confront the grandfather as it happens and be like, dude, we're in the 21st century. Grow up. Look at the eyeballs.
I want to read some more super chats. So there's a bunch that are saying very similar things. So I'm not going to read. I'm just going to give the general ideas. There's two interesting ideas. Many people have said that they think you're racist.
Fine.
And a couple right here. We have one from Kyle. We have one from Kevin D, who both said, I'm white. Kyle says, white dude, I've had the talk. I'm pretty sure everyone has the talk. Kevin says, I'm white, grew up in the middle-class family in a suburb in Los Angeles, and I had the talk. And others have said that they think your view of the talk being explicitly a black thing shows that you've been.
I didn't say explicitly.
Kyle, thank you for the super chat. Daryl gets triggered again not long after Tim reads my super chat at 12. Oh, Kyle, I think this is you right now. I'm pretty sure, Kyle, this is you right now. Saying I'm white and I've also had the talk. Thank you for the support. Incognito says, will he demand apology from Africans whose ancestors conquered, butchered, enslaved, and sold other Africans into slavery in the Americas? I'm betting not. Kyle, we're at your moment. Perfect timing on the super chat, Kyle. Let's watch what happens now.
You said something that black families do.
I said black families do it. I didn't say explicitly. That's your word.
Well, so the general idea that I guess people absorbed by that is that you think it's exclusive.
Listen, I never said it was exclusive. But I didn't use the word exclusive. I didn't use the word exclusive.
Well, so we can clarify.
I said black families give their boys, when they turn 16, something called the talk. I said black families do that. Did I say black families do it exclusively? Well, no, did I say black families do it explicitly? So no, I did not. So that guy is putting words in my mouth.
Well, no. I guess the idea they're conveying is that when you say black families do it, they interpret you as saying as if it's not happening elsewhere.
Guess what? Black families listen to James Brown. Does that mean no white people listen to James
I
Brown?
listen to James Brown.
So the black families exclusively listen to James Brown?
Well, so you're clarifying.
I'm clarifying.
What
I'm
the
clarifying
hell?
his BS. That's what I'm calling BS on him. Now, white.
Well,
Hold on. Let me tell you about the
What?
talk. Okay, the talk that black kids get is the one that I described, about the same one that you described about keep your hands on the wheel, don't argue, sign the ticket, we'll fight it in court. Okay, otherwise, you could come home in a box. All right.
Well, so
Now, a lot of white people get the talk, but most of the white people that get the talk is a different talk.
how do you know?
Because I have a lot of white friends, okay, who tell me.
So
all right.
I have a lot of black friends who tell me.
Well, that's
something.
fine.
I mean,
Okay,
that makes no
but
sense.
hold on.
That makes no sense.
You haven't even heard what I said. You're
You're
cutting me off
generalizing
already.
based on race.
Huh?
You're generalizing based on race.
You said you had a lot of black friends.
I was making a sarcastic point to counter your racist point.
You haven't even let me finish my point.
And now
So-
Tim is
Hold
calling
on,
him a
I'm gonna
racist.
finish my
Oh,
point.
good.
Okay, a lot
Oh,
of white
good.
kids get the talk, but it's not the same talk as the black kids get the talk because they don't have the same experiences. The talk that a lot of the white kids get is when they start driving, don't get pregnant, don't come home pregnant, use condoms. I don't want to be a grandfather or grandmother before my time.
Well, I mean,
That's the
yes,
talk
that
that a lot
talk
of white
does
kids get.
happen,
Now,
but that's
now,
not
I
what
challenge
Tim is
you.
talking
Hold on,
about.
I challenge you.
That's not what Tim's
You
talking
say you have a lot of
about.
black friends.
No.
Hold on. I know well, maybe you don't have any, but find some. Okay.
What?
Hold on.
I'm
What
going to
the
clarify that.
fuck?
When you made a racist generalization, I made a sarcastic point.
What was
not
my
about
racist generalization?
that you have a lot of white friends,
Oh,
therefore you know what white people in
God.
general do.
Did I say I know what white people in general do?
Yes, you did.
I said most white kids get this talk.
No,
I didn't
they
say
don't.
all white. Yes, they do.
You don't know
Yes,
that.
they do. Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
Did you grow up in a white family in a suburb?
What
I grew up
the
in white
hell?
neighborhoods. I went to white schools.
When we have
I know.
people saying to us right now, it's not their experience. You say, well, they're racist and wrong.
I didn't
I
say
need
they're
a
racist and
drink.
wrong.
Called the guy racist. You
I
overtly said this man was racist.
I said what he said was racist. I didn't say he was a racist.
Well, that-
No, but this is
Hold on.
no, Daryl, I haven't spoken about
Oh,
anything.
God.
Seriously. We need to stop overtly calling people racist.
I will call a person a
Thank
racist if I
you,
see
Bill.
that
No,
they're racist.
well, I'm
Overt or
just
invert.
saying at this table,
Bill
I
is
know and love you
correct.
all, and I know for a fact that nobody at this table is a racist. 100%. Maybe certain racial comments can be made, but I know that for 100%, like 100%. So the fact that like these names are
Bill
getting
is
thrown around,
correct.
I don't think it's really productive.
Well,
I'm not saying you can't
look,
call someone racist. I'm not saying racists don't exist. But I think we need to be very careful.
All this dude said is, as a white dude, I've had the talk. I'm pretty sure everyone has the talk.
Well, see, he's pretty sure everyone has a talk. Oh, so now you're going to defend him. He's pretty sure everyone has a talk. But yeah, you accuse me of saying all white people, and now I'm a racist and I don't know shit. But he says everyone, and you're not defending him.
my
Well, let me explain.
God.
When he says everyone, he means you two.
Everyone has a talk. I know a lot of people haven't had the talk.
Well, sure.
A lot of white people haven't had the talk.
Well,
the
sure.
talk.
But now you're just getting semantics.
No. I'm reacting to what he said.
So this
he
started-
said everyone, and
so-
you didn't get on him, but you got on me for saying a lot of white people.
Because I don't like the racist generalizations. Like I don't like
Listen,
it when someone
this
says one
country
race
is
does
based
one thing.
on race. Okay, I believe
No.
there is only one race. It is a human race. Okay, one race. You and I are the same race. Ian and I, Bill and I are the same race. We all are the same race, the human race. But this country has divided us by color. And if you don't believe that, you need to go back and learn your history, which you apparently have not learned if you don't see that. And if they don't see that, this country is predicated on race.
But we
This
agree
country
with
was
you.
built on
Like,
white supremacy
We're
and slavery at the bottom.
So I think a lot of people, especially me, we agreed with you with like so much of the historical problems and racism and civil rights and all that stuff.
But you think it's all over.
No, I literally said that wasn't.
So what's your point?
So when you say something that is dividing people,
This is proof of what I said earlier, that they're just going like this. And this is, again, I do not blame Tim for this. I blame Daryl for this. Daryl is not listening to what Tim is saying. Tim is listening to what Daryl is saying, and Tim is responding to what Daryl is saying. Daryl is not listening to what Tim is saying. There is a huge difference between listening actively to what someone else is saying and waiting for your turn to talk. What Daryl is doing is waiting for his turn to talk. He is not interacting with the points that Tim is making at all. This is a problem of active listening.
people based on race, and people take issue with it, you recoil, you call them
Do
racist.
you not see this country dividing people based on race? You think we live in a post-racist society because we had a black president?
He
or
has
something?
literally
A lot of
not
white
said
people
that,
don't understand.
Daryl.
I've heard white people say racism is over. We had Obama.
Well, but we're not saying that. I'm saying, one of the things that I'll just say triggered me was this idea that there are certain things you've suffered that are either described only as a black experience, or in this instance, when people felt, when you said black families give their kids the talk, the response was them saying, I'm white and I've had the talk. And some people saying they feel like that was you showing you're radicalized to a racial, as a racial
Daryl
component.
is
Well,
actively
stupid, and that's pretty
unlistening.
racist.
That is
so I just called
correct.
somebody stupid. I just called them racist.
So-
now, hold on. I can speak as a black man. So why is it when I say I as a black man got the talk, I am racializing something? I am
Because
black. That is
then
my
said
experience.
white people do X and you're not a white
I
person.
didn't say white people do X. I
You
said
did.
I'm black.
And you said white people have a different talk. They do
Yes,
this.
they do.
You can't speak as a white person, can you?
I can speak. I can repeat what white people have told me.
But you
Are
don't.
you denying that white?
Oh my God. Brian says Tim talked Daryl Davis up for a long time, and I'm thinking Tim may be regretting bringing him on because it's hurting the image Tim built Daryl up to be. I mean, listen, again, people have different sides of themselves. All idols have clay feet. And I want to really encourage everyone not to allow how Daryl acted on this show, which I do not think is good. Don't let that cloud over all of the good that he's done, because he's done a lot of good. All idols have clay feet. They're all human beings. We are all imperfect. We all should be allowed to have imperfect moments. Jenny's getting inky with it says, another takeaway, even though he uses some woke points, Daryl isn't truly woke. When you get pushback but still agree, break convos into bits and allow time to digest it and overcome discomfort. I don't think Daryl is truly woke. Well, no, that's not true. I think Daryl is spouting woke talking points, but I don't think he's a true believer. There's a difference between true believers and useful idiots. In this case, and I would not call Daryl a useful idiot generally, but in this case, he is being a useful idiot for the talking points of the critical race theorists, of Kimberly Crenshaw, of Ibram X. Kendi, of the 1619 Project. He is being a useful idiot for the critical race theory talking points. He is not a true believer in this, because I don't actually think he really understands it. That's the problem. He's just a boomer, man. He just hasn't kept up with what's going on. That's all it is.
People have told me that. Are you calling them liars?
That's not.
No,
that's
I'm
not
asking you that question.
There's nothing to do with
No, answer yes or no. Are you calling my white friends liars?
I'm calling them anecdotal.
Anecdotal. So you're saying that they did not have the talk that I told you that they had.
No, anecdotal means you heard.
I know what
stories.
anecdotal means.
Right. So the issue is, if you have your stories and they have their stories, it's a moot point. Meaning,
no, it's not a moot point.
Some white people experience the talk in great degrees.
Have you experienced everything I've experienced?
No, it's no. What you're saying,
and vice versa.
Yeah, dude, it's evidence. What you're saying is evidence, and then what these guys saying is evidence. None of it proves anything. But we're all given our anecdotal evidence.
What do you mean it doesn't prove anything?
Well, like our statements today.
Brian says, I agree, but this is the image of Daryl Davis is giving to 300,000 plus people. They have currently viewed this. Well, like I said, this is why I will always encourage people to have a much more nuanced view of these things, because it's like, I do think that Daryl looked a gift horse in the mouth with this opportunity. I think that Daryl is not grateful to the platform that he's been given, and like his behaviors are showing that he's not grateful to that, and that's a shame, because he had an opportunity to reach a whole lot of people last night, and instead he just pissed a whole bunch of people off. It's a shame. It really is. And I say that as someone who I am not opposed to being confrontational. Spoiler alert, I am not afraid of conflict, and I'm not opposed to being confrontational. I know this will be shocking to anyone who watches my content on a regular basis, but it's like when you're doing stuff like this, you have to at least don't tell the host of the show that he's a racist. Like, there's a very minimal level of understanding here that I think needs to occur. Daryl is not stupid. Daryl is just being stubborn. He's being very, very stubborn. He's digging his heels in.
Whatever you say, whatever I say, doesn't prove it. It's just a piece of evidence towards the postulation.
I don't understand what you mean. It doesn't prove anything. Okay, so he tells me that he got pulled over at gunpoint and he got handcuffed and some guy tried to plant Adderall in his car. I just said, it's a moot point. It didn't happen.
Oh, no. Well, that would be evidence that there is more crime towards people like him in that area. Or
no,
something like that. It wouldn't prove that it's always more crime towards people like him.
Fair
sucks. But it's evidence suggesting that
fair
it's real.
is bad.
Suggesting that it's real.
Thumbs
it is real.
down to fair.
I don't doubt
it's
that
actually on video. It's actually on
video.
Whether it's on video,
no one believes that
video
I'm
not,
confrontational.
I believe it happened to you because that crap was happening long before you were born. So I don't need the video to know that. You know why I know it happened? Because it happened to me, not at gunpoint. Similar things. I've been hearing about that shit long before anybody had video cameras other than TV stations.
When you say you experienced something like the talk, or a white person told me the talk, and then a white person from their own personal experiences say that this is what happens to me, why would they be wrong or racist?
Did I say they were wrong? Listen, there are white people, yes, who get to talk, keep your hands on the wheel. Don't argue with the cops, whatever. All right. But there are also plenty of white kids who get to talk, don't come home pregnant, use condoms. All right. We get to talk when we get stopped by the police, when we start driving, obey the speed limit. Don't do anything to raise suspicion to cause somebody to pull you over. Because hold on. Let me say
that doesn't happen to other people.
It has not happened.
They have literally had this conversation 4 or 5 times already on this show. Sully, my coworker who is black, was shocked by how bad Daryl Davis portrayed himself in this show. He was a fan of Daryl Davis and is now saying he can't be one. Again, guys, I really want to encourage everyone, do not allow someone having a very human moment to deter you from supporting the good work that they've done. People can be stupid. People can make mistakes. People can have a bad day. People can say things that they don't mean. People can have moments where they're not actively listening to what's going on in front of them. I just think that Daryl has done a lot of good work over a course of years, and a single appearance on a single show should not deter people from from acknowledging the positive work that he's done. Maybe he was having a bad day. I have had a lot of bad days in the past week and a half. Maybe Daryl was just having a bad day.
Frequency. Like I told you.
If you want people to be forgiving when you make mistakes, you have to be forgiving of other people when they make mistakes. I think that Daryl's made a lot of mistakes on this show, but like that doesn't mean that he is a bad person. It doesn't mean that he is not worthy of praise and admiration for the good work that he's done. Anthony says, I'm Mexican. My native land was taken by the Spanish. So the Mexicans demand reparations from Spain. They never recognize when it comes to reparations that other cultures are also enslaved. I agree with you, Anthony. I agree with you.
Hold on. I'm telling you, the frequency, okay, what you debated with me and was the first time you called me a racist. I told you that I have been pulled over more times than you have, and I have. Whether you want to accept it or not,
no, that's objectively true. You're older than me too.
It doesn't matter. I still have, even if you and I were the same age. Okay.
In the last 5 years.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Now I want you to do something, both of you, and you too, if you want. Here's an experiment. Okay?
All idols have clay feet, guys. All idols have clay feet.
I want all of y'all. Ask 10.
Your heroes
of your
will
friends,
always disappoint
male
you.
Friends. What is the first thing? And you people out there listening, you do the same thing. Ask 10 of your white male friends, what is the first thing that goes through your mind when you're driving home late at night, let's say 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever, from a date or from getting off work, whatever, and you see those lights come on in your rearview mirror, those flashing lights. You're being pulled over. Maybe you were speeding, maybe you weren't, maybe you cross swerved, whatever, maybe you didn't, whatever. You're being pulled over. What's the first thing that goes through your mind? I will bet you 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 of those white males, your friends, are going to say, I hope I don't get a ticket. I hope I don't get points on my license. I hope my insurance doesn't go up. You ask the same question to 10 of your black male friends, they're not going to say anything about a damn ticket or points on the license or insurance. They're going to say, I hope I don't get shot. I hope I don't get beat up. Because there is a more frequency of violence against black male drivers than white male drivers. Okay? Just like there is more of a frequency of blacks being sentenced to death and whites for the same crime get to go to prison for life or life with parole. Okay? That is called racism. And that's why black people get that talk. I'm not saying white people don't get the talk, but black people's lives are more in danger. And that's why Black Lives Matter was created. Okay?
No.
I'm not saying I'm a proponent of that movement or whatever. I'm just telling you why it was created. Okay, because of the things that were happening to black people where they were not having the white people in the same situation.
Well, Black Lives Matter was started over Trayvon Martin.
That's right.
And Zimmerman's a Hispanic guy. And the
Zimmerman, he is of Hispanic descent, but Zimmerman enjoyed what is called white privilege.
Oh my God!
The idea that
that's your definition of critical race.
Are
theory.
you shitting
pull it
me?
right here for you.
Listen, that's your definition of
whiteness
race
as property, in which he described how passing led to benefits akin to owning property. Yeah, this is Cheryl L. Harris in the Harvard Law Review, and citation for it is Crenshaw et al. 1995. So this idea that because Zimmerman, I mean, I disagree. I don't think he looked white. I think he looked like a Mexican guy. And further, the news lied about what Zimmerman did. NBC edited his phone call to make it seem like he was racially profiling when he wasn't. So the narrative that emerged from that was actually fabricated.
Okay, do you remember? Well, you're probably too young for that, but you know about it. The O.J. Simpson trial.
Yeah.
Do you remember O.J.'s picture on the cover of Time magazine and Newsweek?
No.
Okay, well then you guys need to research that. Okay.
I do.
Time magazine and Newsweek magazine came out the same day. Time magazine intentionally darkened O.J. Simpson's picture, darker than his skin tone, because the blacker you are, the more evil you are. There you go.
Wow.
Voila. That is racism.
Yeah.
I don't give a damn what you all say. You can call it critical race theory. You can call it whatever the hell you want to call it. That is racism. That is what this country is predicated upon, to turn white people against people of darker skin. And that's why I get pulled over more than you and more than you and more than your 10 white friends.
But Newsweek didn't darken his skin?
Well, I can't tell.
Listen, you can argue all you want. There's your picture right there.
One is showing
one is showing O.J. Simpson in his real skin tone, and the other one is showing him darkened. And Time magazine did that intentionally.
But Newsweek didn't.
I don't know if they did or not, but look at that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's how I know O.J. Simpson. I don't know him personally.
I think the media is garbage.
Huh?
I think the media is overtly racist and trash. I think they employ some of the most vile racists.
The most racist people are liberal white people. It is not surprising at all that Time magazine darkened the color of O.J. Simpson's skin. The most racist people are liberal white fucking saviors. Joshua, I have the hope that I don't get shot when I get pulled over because I legally conceal carry, and big city cops don't like that no matter what your race. Well, I hope you don't get shot too, Joshua. I hope you don't.
Oh, whoa! You're saying all media? Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
Oh no.
Well,
no,
it's like
no.
this Council on Foreign Relations.
You're the media. You're the media.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not calling you a racist. I don't think everybody here is racist.
No, I'm just so disdainful of corporate press. So we usually the colloquial
So
definition.
is everybody at Time Magazine responsible for that?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I'm not gonna swear.
Even the peons?
Yes.
No, not the cheap workers. It's some brainchild.
If you guys listen to this show, you know my position on all of this. If you stand beneath the infrastructure, holding it up as they do things that are wrong, and you know they're doing it wrong, I will hold you responsible.
You know, the Chinese have this term called white swa, which means white liberal. Like that's
White left.
white left,
Yeah,
which
white
is
left.
inherently. I feel like a lot of this racism is being seeded. Like it didn't up until. I'm not saying it didn't exist, but in like the early 2000s, it felt like we were coming together. It felt like it. I felt like it. Did you feel like it in that?
You know, I see progress all the time. Okay, I think right now, there are people who would disagree with me, but I would say right now is one of the best times in our country, even though we're so divided. All right, because the wool is being pulled back, the carpet is being pulled back, and we're seeing all the dirt.
Oh
People
no.
are saying how they feel, what they're thinking, etc. It's hard to address something when people are hiding in the closet or hiding behind a smile and stab you in the back. Right now, people are expressing their views. It's very divisive, but this is the best time because now we know what people are thinking. We know how to address them, rather than be what do you call it, a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Okay, YouTube literally just deleted all of the super chats.
Oh.
Yep. No kidding. The only ones that are up are the ones that are in the active chat. So I'll see what I can.
Whoa.
How did I delete them?
No,
Well,
YouTube
YouTube
just went.
They were probably too
Has that ever
racist.
happened to you before?
No.
Wow.
What happened?
So the paid comments where people were asking questions just crashed. They're gone.
Why?
I don't know.
I've never seen.
I'll just say it was a browser error, I suppose. But
I'm still seeing them come in.
I can see them come in, and I can see the ones
Yeah,
that are over the
the
chat,
ones.
but I can't see any of the other ones. And I don't know how much more time we have.
I don't have a whole lot. I got to go out of town tonight.
All right.
Nice.
So sorry guys, YouTube just nuked your super chats. I suppose we'll just read a couple more, but I think people are unhappy with your views. Just
Well, you know what? People have been unhappy with my views for 400 years.
so we'll read this.
You know,
Black Rock Beacon says Daryl is done. He has abandoned nuance and critical thinking and has become emotionally defensive and lost empathy. He is literally starting to rant when pressed with logical arguments.
he's entitled to his opinion, and that's fine.
I think that people need to recognize that the conversation is happening and everyone's in a different spot on it. And Daryl is extremely pro free speech, vastly more than many people sort of in the critical race theory realm. And that I absolutely appreciate that. And a lot of people won't come on the show to talk. So that matters.
Someone just mentioned that the chat was gone too.
Oh, it's bad. I'm watching it live.
Even
right now, so
Malcolm
see
X
chat
said to
disappear?
watch out for
Someone
white
said YouTube went the whole
liberals.
chat, not just
Most
super chats.
racist
Okay.
people.
yeah,
I
this
wouldn't be surprised.
this kind of conversation is hot. I mean, that's the reason why.
It's
not
spicy
everyone
as
does
hell.
it.
True.
That's why it's good. Because now people like this guy criticizing me. It's free to express his view. I'm free to express my view. He can think whatever he wants to think about me. I'm fine with that. I've been, called every name in the book, and I've been called every name but my own, and that's fine. Okay, he's entitled to his views. I'm entitled to my views. Okay, and like you guys never saw those pictures before. Why is that?
We're too young.
No,
No, I'm not.
not because you're too
I was
young.
like
Because you haven't done the
I had
research.
seen
They're
those
there.
pictures.
They're there.
Well-
Go back and connect the dots.
I
man.
had
You're
seen
talking
them.
from a bubble, man. You're not talking from.
Oh
the
my
past moving forward.
God.
A gap, exactly. So we got to bridge that gap, and that's why I'm here.
But I-
to connect the dots for you.
Daryl just made so many assumptions about Tim, telling him that he's coming from a bubble. Of all people, I'm sorry, Tim is not coming from a bubble. I will absolutely defend him on that one. Tim has some of the most nuanced fucking perspective and a wide array of perspective than most people doing this type of stuff on the internet. So disrespectful, man. So disrespectful.
For you as to why I've arrived at this point.
Right. So I think the issue we experience is that the world and the information we consume as millennials is so vastly different from yours that we see it's literally two different universes.
But you know what?
Figuratively.
Yes,
you are
Tim
here,
is
Figuratively
correct.
different universes.
Tim is correct.
Whatever universe you're in is because of the universe from which it came. But you don't look back to see where you came from.
I mean,
That's
I
a
do.
good point about
But just because I didn't
censorship.
know of the one story doesn't mean I
Talking
don't
about
know
his story. You're talking about history. His story. Like who's controlling his story? Who's writing it?
So
I like your idea, Bill,
I've
about
got
freedom.
a Life
history.
magazine from 1944. I picked up at an antique shop, and I've also got one from the 1950s, and I think it's got who's on the cover? Is it
Winston
Nixon?
Churchill.
Nixon doing a peace sign for a big crowd, and it's talking about the civil rights movement. It's fascinating to read the 1944. It was March, just before D-Day, a couple months, and the explanation for why U.S. forces were in Britain is like laughable. It's like, well, now we know. When you read stuff in the past, it's amazing what people thought about this stuff, how information was being withheld. But I think what's happening is, for most of the people who watch, the bulk of our viewership, like 60-70%, are between 18 and 35. So the news that they're reading is rapid, and they've probably heard everything you've mentioned.
No,
But
I doubt that.
well, when you live in the digital world, and it's
They have access to everything.
100,000 tweets every single day that you're being slammed by, it's very different. So I think we see it with Bill Maher, we've seen it with our other guests who are in the Boomer generation, that the rate of information consumption for the older generation is substantially slower based on just the traditional information gathering practices of the previous generation relative to today. So these younger people right now, as you're saying it, are Googling it in real time, and they're commenting saying you're wrong about this. And so that's one of the challenges we have, why we have to be walking on ice and making sure we're doing the best, is that
Tim
the
is
50,000
definitely
people
irritated. He
watching at
keeps
any moment
fidgeting.
are
Yeah,
all
I
sending
agree
a
with you,
real-time
Brian.
fact check because they can research exactly what we say. So most of these people
Now, as far as them telling me that I'm wrong, I don't believe that they are factual. They're telling me that I'm wrong based upon their opinion and what they think about what I'm saying.
That's fair, but like
They're
a good
allowed
example
to
was
have
the
an
Kimberly
opinion,
Crenshaw thing,
Dable.
who explicitly wrote that race, Marxism, all that stuff.
Now, I don't have a laptop in front of me, okay? But I can send you a link to Kimberly Crenshaw talking about what she means by critical race theory and the same argument that you gave that she refutes.
Daryl, that
I
is
will send you
not
that link.
true.
Like I just read her book. I read the first. I read the introduction to her book.
So what? You know, I mean, I
If she
will show
recanted
you.
That is
her
not
book, I mean, that'd be
true.
fantastic. We can talk about
Listen,
it.
I don't know. She recanted her book. I know what she said on live interview. Okay, you can see her talking. Okay,
yeah.
People say, you know, listen. People have done interviews with me, and have gotten it wrong. Okay. For example, I won't name the school. A very famous university hired me to come do a lecture. All right. And this guy called me before the lecture and wanted to know if he could interview me before I came. Well, when I came down before I gave the lecture from the student paper. I said, sure. I said, but are you going to stay for the lecture? Because I want you to see the lecture as well, and then you can interview me after as well. He said, okay. So he interviewed me when I came down to the university. Good guy, good lecture, good interview, and he stuck around, watched the lecture, asked me a few questions afterwards. The next day, headline in this famous university paper: first Black member of the Ku Klux Klan speaks on campus. Now, he did not write that caption, that headline. That was done by the editor of the paper or whatever. You know, the campus had an uproar, and they had to make them, make a retraction. There are no Black members of the Klan. If there were Black members of the Klan, it wouldn't be a damn Klan. Okay, but people get things wrong in writing. I can show you a link of her talking. Now, whether she wrote it in the book and then changed her mind, or whether the book got it wrong or whatever, I will send you a link to her talking, answering the exact question you said, which is opposite of what the other guy says.
I do think I watched her give a
Spoiler alert, Kimberly Crenshaw is a liar. We have watched Kimberly Crenshaw on multiple occasions on Happy Hour on my second channel, youtube.com/activelyunwoke. We do this every Friday where we watch these full form presentations. We watch Kimberly Crenshaw at least twice. Tim is correct about what Kimberly Crenshaw has said. Daryl Davis is not correct about what Kimberly Crenshaw has said.
a
She's
statement.
given several interviews,
Yeah,
but,
I'm pretty sure I've seen a bunch of them.
Mhm.
I suppose the issue is
But I also have a video literally on this channel. Literally Google, don't Google, but search on this channel, on my main channel, for Kimberly Crenshaw. I have a video on this channel where we have overtly caught Kimberly Crenshaw lying. I fact checked her for stuff she said on MSNBC that was an overt lie, and I showed proof that she was lying based on her own effing words. Kimberly Crenshaw's a liar.
it's just on what she wrote in her books versus what she says today may be different.
Listen, George Wallace. Do you know who he is?
Oh yeah.
Oh my
You know what he
fucking
did?
God.
School segregation and all
Right.
that stuff.
Segregation today, tomorrow,
I'm so
forever.
frustrated by
The
this.
door wouldn't let the Black kids come in.
Yep.
National Guard had to come and pull him out of
Right.
the door. Okay. He got shot. I watched him get shot.
Wow.
I watched him get shot on live TV. Okay. The news was covering his speech. He was in a town called Laurel, Maryland. All right.
We're
It was a
having
gorgeous
an
town.
event for
And he was in the
Jeremy
parking
for
lot
Senate
giving
at
his speech.
Strange Brew. It
There were some
starts
black
at 6
guys in the back
p.m.
of the crowd, and a bunch of white people up front.
You're welcome to come
He was
hang out.
giving his racist speech, and all of a sudden, boom, 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 right on live TV. He got shot. Everybody turned and looked at the Black people. It was a white guy up front named Arthur Bremer who shot George Wallace. Okay, Arthur Bremer just got out of prison a couple years ago. Anyway, he went to Hagerstown prison. Later, George Wallace spent the rest of his life in a wheelchair as a result of that shooting. From the wheelchair, he said he was wrong. He changed his racist attitude. Now, most people don't remember that. They remember him, segregation today, tomorrow, forever. They remember the negative stuff, but they don't remember that Wallace changed his tune.
So I will just say, I think it's funny you mentioned everyone looked at the Black people, but it was a white guy, because
You know why, don't you?
they assumed people who were mad at him were probably Black.
Exactly.
But the funny thing is, today, when it comes to issues of critical race theory, it is white people who are advocating this mostly. And it may be the fact that white people are the majority of this country, so you'll see more white people advocating for critical race theory. But typically, a lot of these progressive ideologies, like gender ideology or race ideology, come from white liberals.
It's also, you say,
True.
more white
Tim is
people
correct.
advocating for critical race theory. It's also more white people advocating to ban critical race theory.
Yes.
Yeah, I think one of the issues is that people are confused and they're not arguing the same thing.
Exactly. That's my whole point. There's so many different definitions of it.
There's not
Like, you have
different
yours,
definitions of it.
Crenshaw has hers. Kendi has his. What's that
No.
lady's name? Robin somebody.
well.
She has hers.
I think critical race praxis should be banned the same as Christian praxis should be banned. We shouldn't be putting ideology in our curriculum, but we can teach about what the ideology is. So the issue is, like, if a Florida school said, Jesus died, and on the third day he rose again. If a day has 24 hours, how many hours was it until Jesus rose again? I'd be like, yo, that should not be in a math book, right? Would you think that's appropriate for a public
That's
school
not what
math problem?
anti-racist math is, by the way.
Well, you got to understand something.
And I just want to call it because people earlier in this stream said, Karlyn, they're going to explain what anti-racist math is. They have not explained what anti-racist math is at all. Not at all.
And was going to school. First thing we did.
Tim is not wrong in what he just said, but I just said something
You
on
would pray
a
as well.
different topic.
Yeah, we all said a prayer.
But based on today's standards in which we don't allow prayer in public schools, do you think prayer should be in public schools?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
And, however,
No.
I think people, if it depends on the classroom, okay? If there's an a Muslim person in the classroom, and there's a Jewish person, and there's a Christian person or Hindu person, I think they each should say a prayer. If someone is an atheist, then they can opt to leave the room or remain seated or do whatever they want to do. Chris, they should be respected as well.
Have no.
Chris H just said Congress officially apologized for slavery in 2008.
No,
they didn't.
No.
You want to look it up, somebody?
Yeah, what was the statement?
Congress officially apologized for slavery in 2008.
Yeah, but were they legit? Let's find out first. Official apology.
I think we've gone way long. I know you got to go, and we got to wrap. So I'm going to read. We'll just read one more. We'll read two more, actually. The first one will come from Maltese. As a black man, I disagree with quite a bit of what Daryl said, but I will forever respect this man's action, better than any Antifa thug has done.
Yes.
And then there's another really good one that we need to read because it's the most important one. Where did it go? Oh, there we go. Andrew Lance says, thank you, Daryl. This has been a really good conversation that reminds me of many I have had with various black friends I've known. I think people, I just got to say for everybody who watches or listens to the show, we are trying to have more discussions over ideas that we disagree with. We're trying to make more of that. We routinely invite people on the left or progressive or whatever. They just don't want to come on the show. Some are, and we have a few booked, and it's good to have these conversations. So,
well, I want to say this as well. I appreciate everybody who has put in their chat, whether I agree with them or not, whether I call them a racist or not. I appreciate their expressing their viewpoints. Okay, and I think we should have more of these discussions. So I hope we can do that. Now, to your point about these people who are on the left or whatever who don't want to come, I was invited a couple years ago to this lady called me up. She's a sociologist professor, and she wanted to know would I consider coming to a dinner gathering with some people on the left and some people on the right. And she named a few white supremacists, one being Richard Spencer. And I said, sure. So, they didn't reveal where the dinner was to be held until the day of, and because they wanted to keep it secret or whatever. So on the day of, I got the email as to what address to come to, et cetera, what time. And I showed up, and there were all these people over there on the right, Richard Spencer, some other neo-Nazi type people, and this, that, and the other, and we had dinner together. No one from the left but me showed up. And they backed out at the last minute.
That's exactly what happens.
Yeah. Well, I'm not one of those who back out. I will stand up to anybody and everybody. And you're welcome to agree with me. You're welcome to disagree with me. But let's have the conversation.
I agree, man.
And I appreciate you having me on the show.
Oh, I appreciate you coming, man. I thought this was fantastic. If people don't get along or if people disagree or even if they agree, I think we agree on a lot more than we disagree. And I think we just highlighted disagreements because we disagree. We want to express those the most. I think often the conversations we have an agreement, it's like, well, yeah, of course we agree on those things. But then
let's move on to the things we don't agree.
Right, exactly.
Let's get hot.
So, considering we've gone way too late tonight.
I want to point out you were right. Congress apologized for slavery. There's a lot of NPR stuff from 2008. Apparently, the U.S. House of Representatives issued an unprecedented apology to Black Americans for the institution of slavery and the subsequent Jim Crow laws for years of discrimination. Steve Cohen, Democrat from Tennessee, drafted the resolution. Now, to be honest, my personal opinion, platitudes. You want a real apology is fixing the system.
How do you do that?
But thank you for at least putting forth an official apology, Congress, at some point.
Here's what we got to do. Yet. So everyone is actually saying, who do we have to bribe to have you have a conversation with Thomas Sowell? Which would be
that'd be amazing.
So
I don't know if we can.
Make it happen. Of course we can.
All right.
Thomas Sowell, John McWhorter, a lot of other people. They have their opinions. Some I agree with, some I don't agree with. It doesn't make them right. It doesn't make me wrong. It doesn't make me right and them wrong or whatever.
I think people would just love to see the intellectual clash, as it were, like the ideas presented.
Yeah,
maybe we'll do that this summer. In June.
People get a kick out of seeing Black people fight each other for whatever reason. White people get a kick out.
Oh my God.
Get the movie. Go on, it used to be on Netflix. It's not on there anymore. Amazon Prime or iTunes, okay? It's called Accidental Courtesy. And they followed me around the country when I was interviewing KKK and neo-Nazis, et cetera. And they set me up to interview some people, a faction of Black Lives Matter. And there was a major clash between me and Black Lives Matter.
It happened at our event. And
but you're gonna see this on film. And you're gonna see about 8 minutes. This went on for about an hour and it almost erupted into violence. Wow. Okay? Take a look at that. They did not respect, what I stood for, what I did, et cetera, et cetera. Now, a year later, they reached out to me and said, we've been seeing you, we've been reading some interviews, and we sort of get what you're doing. We want to try to work together. We don't agree with everything, but we think we can find some in common ground. So we met and we had dinner, and we started working together. And then one of them fell off the wagon and reverted back to himself in the film. But you will see, in the whole movie, everybody talks about that particular scene because for whatever reason, now you're gonna call me a racist again, and that's fine if you want to call me that. A lot of white people try to put Black people in one box. We are not monolithic. We are as individual as white people. Okay. Just like people say, well, your Black leaders, should do this and do that. Who are my Black leaders? Is it Sharpton? Is it Jesse Jackson? Is it Obama? Is it Thomas Sowell? Is it John McWhorter? I mean, who are my Black leaders?
That was not fair,
who are your white leaders? Is it Donald Trump? Is it the Imperial Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan?
I'm my own.
It's leader. Obama.
Well, exactly. You have all your own people. Your leader might be different than his leader. So
we don't have white leaders. We had an orange leader for a little while, right?
Yeah.
Technically.
He thinks he's still the leader.
Now let's get specific about skin tone color.
He thinks he's still. Well, you know what? The best thing that I saw. I'm still doing this. I still go to Klan rallies and all that kind of stuff. But one of the best things I saw, I went to a Klan rally, and it was held on the lawn of the governor's mansion. All right, and in the state capitol. And there are all these protesters and all the state police keeping the protesters at a distance from the people in the robes and hoods. Well, these people showed up who had painted themselves green, and they were yelling, "Green power, green power." That was the best thing I'd ever seen.
Yeah, because I'm kind of pink. Your skin tone's a little auburn.
Yeah.
Now I like the specifics. Now we're nuanced.
We went way late for Friday, but it was really good. Daryl, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for coming. Not everybody liked the show.
Right.
88% liked the show, and I think people should expect two things. We are going to have conversations with we'll disagree on, people will not agree, and I am not a master debater. I'm not a debater, but we'll have conversations. And so if the issue is you feel like I don't do a good enough job, well, maybe we should actually do like what we did with Charlie Kirk and Vosh, and we'll have people who actually want to have a debate here. But don't expect me. I'm not that kind of guy.
Charlie Kirk doesn't know what critical race theory is. Vosh doesn't know what critical race theory is. Tim doesn't know what critical race theory is. No one knows what critical race theory is. My God. All right, guys. Well, we're pretty much at the end of this stream, and I got to get heading. Jenny's getting inky with it. Says, it saddens me that he thinks we just want to see blacks fight each other. I just want to see a good faith, rigorous conversation to flesh out ideas. Jenny, I agree with you. Well, that was an interesting experience for me. That's the first time I've watched Timcast since Jeremy Kauffman was on it. That was not quite what I was expecting from that particular experience. I think that Tim did a really good job. Is there a reason to finish it? I mean, I gotta go, guys. I gotta go. I actually have someplace I need to be. So I've got to wrap it up for right now. But that was a really interesting experience for me. I think that Tim did a really good job. I think that Tim still does not know what critical race theory is. He still needs to understand a definition of critical race theory. I don't know why he hasn't done that yet. That's probably my biggest criticism. Tim doesn't understand critical race theory. Tim doesn't understand anti-racist math. I don't know that I'm not convinced that Tim fully understands what's going on in schools. I'm not convinced of that, but it's also not necessarily his job to know any of those things. It's not. So I have to acknowledge that as well. But no, I do think that the biggest problem with all of this was Daryl not listening to what Tim was saying. And I think it was a shame that it went that off the rails. And again, I want to encourage everyone to remember that human beings are imperfect and they can do imperfect things and say imperfect things. And, I can vehemently disagree with the way that Daryl handled this conversation. But I also don't think that should overshadow any of the good work that he's done. Because we need to allow human beings to be imperfect, is my general view. Well, guys, if you enjoyed the stream, please make sure you mount that like button on the way out the door. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not already. I do daily content around different issues. Mostly I focus on the woke stuff. We do daily streams at 5 p.m. on this channel. Saturdays are a little bit different just because it's Saturday. It's usually my day off, or we do Sassy Saturday. But tonight I have to go to an event. If you are in New Hampshire, I am heading over to Strange Brew in Manchester. There's going to be an event that's getting started there around 6 p.m. to support Jeremy Kauffman for Senate. So if you're in New Hampshire, I strongly encourage everyone to come out. And if you're not, what you can do, if you want to know the actual definition of critical race theory, if you want to understand the woke black far better than Tim Pool apparently does at this particular moment, you can order my book, Actively Unwoke, The Ultimate Guide for Fighting Back Against Woke Insanity in Your Life. It officially comes out on Tuesday. Some people have already gotten their copies for reasons past my understanding, but it officially comes out on Tuesday. It is a book where I try to decode the woke ideology in plain English so that it's easy to understand for everyone. I present case studies and actionable strategies that every single person, regardless of where you live or whether you want to be anonymous or not, every single person can use to fight back against woke insanity in their lives. I also have a chapter on what to do if you're canceled, because I've been through it once or twice. Once at least at the hands of Cassandra Fairbanks, which is why I will never, ever, ever go on that show, because Cassandra Fairbanks is a psychopath who has created a lot of problems in my life, and it has created has put a lot of roadblocks to me actually fighting back against the woke left, so fuck her. But I can still do my stuff on my own and not involve myself in internet insanity unless I absolutely have to. All right, guys, I gotta head out. Thank you for spending tomorrow at 5 p.m. Up News. Bye.